By order of the Konoha Council, Uzumaki Naruto, you are hereby banished from this village for your crimes. A voice resonated in the darkened room where the council convened for shinobi and civilian trials. The clan heads were seated, and the two elders sat in front. Tsunade, looking dejected, sat off to the side of the elders. Danzo was conspicuously absent. Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox, the strongest of all tailed beasts, stood before the elders with his head bowed. How could a mission to save Sasuke have turned out this way? He'd gone out of his way to try and bring Konoha's prized Uchiha back. Yet, the Nine Tails had its own plans. Naruto and Sakura managed to get information from an Akatsuki member, Sasori of the Red Sand, regarding Sasuke's whereabouts. Tsunade helped them prepare the mission, appointing 2 replacements for the team. Sai, a ninja the same age as Naruto, was assigned to the mission and struck Naruto as very strange. The mission leader, Yamato, was brought in to replace Kakashi. Naruto thought he had a scary look about him. It didn't help that Yamato would pop out of nowhere to try and frighten him. At the Tenchi Bridge, Naruto, overcome with rage, activated the Nine Tails chakra and soon grew 4 tails. Sakura, unaware that he was not in his right mind, tried to help him, but he lashed out and injured her arm. The injury wasn't fatal, but when the council learned of the incident, they turned against Naruto. Koharu and Homura glared at the young Jinchuriki with their infamous stares. Homura had always been against the Kuwabai brat. He was the one who ensured Naruto didn't get a proper education, telling teachers not to do their jobs when it came to him. The civilians helped, as they hated the Nine Tails anyway. Homura secretly smiled to himself, feeling he and Konoha were finally rid of the fox. For assaulting your teammate, you've been charged with attempted murder, Koharu said. But it wasn't my fault. I had no control. Naruto shouted back. Then it is your fault. You should have controlled your emotions. Homura yelled, giving the boy a cold, menacing glare. The clan heads exchanged worried looks. They were all wondering how they would explain to their children that Naruto had left the village. We don't believe the charge warrants attempted murder, Shikaka stated loudly. The 2 elders shot him a glare. And you have no say in this trial. You are neither the boy's parent nor guardian, and no one from the legal council will help him, Homura said with a little too much confidence in his tone. In truth, he was the one who had ordered them not to take the case. Tsunade had heard enough. She stood up, slamming her hands on the desk in front of her. This trial is a sham. You just want Naruto out of the village because the people complain about him, even when he doesn't do half the things they claim. She then looked at Naruto, who seemed sad and defeated. Do you dare call the civilians of Konoha liars? Homura yelled in return. Tsunade glared and gritted her teeth at him. Of course. They've been against him since he was a child, and this is no different. You two are taking this incident completely out of context. Of course he can't control the Nine Tails. He's only 15 years old. Having control of the most powerful tailed beast would be impossible without years of training, which he only began about 2 years ago. Tsunade's chest rose and fell rapidly. His fate is sealed. A voice emerged from the shadows. An elderly man with most of his body covered in bandages, leaning on a walking stick, came into view. Tsunade immediately recognized him as Danzo. He held up a scroll and unrolled it. By the Fire Daimyo's orders, Uzumaki Naruto is to leave the village in exile. He can never return as a Konoha shinobi or citizen, he said, trying to conceal a smile. He knew the Nine Tails Jinchuriki would one day become a nuisance, so he had persuaded the Fire Daimyo to banish Naruto from Konoha. Thanks to the Sharingan under his bandaged eye, it had been quite easy to convince the man. Tsunade was shaking with anger. She couldn't stand this. Her grandson was going to be forced to leave even though it was an accident. This isn't right. She sat back down, trying not to cry. Her fingers were curled into fists, and she closed her eyes. None of the other council members, or even she, the Hokage, could do anything to help Naruto. If the daimyo's signature was genuine, then Konoha had just lost the one thing that had brought her there. So this is it, then? Naruto asked the council, his expression full of anger, but his eyes remained blue. After everything I've done for this village, this is what I get? His chakra started to become visible. Koharu and Homura gasped, thinking the Nine Tails was attempting to break free. I've nearly died for this village on multiple occasions. No matter what anyone thinks, this is my home. I've forged bonds here that are too strong to just let go. I don't care what the Fire Daimyo wrote on some worthless paper. I'm not leaving. Danzo chuckled at the sight. The boy was trying to maintain a tough facade. He knew he could have made Naruto into a weapon, an obedient one at that. But the boy's foolish belief that anyone can change was not something Danzo shared. In his mind, a murderer is a murderer forever. You can never change something like that. It was unfortunate the boy had been a bit of a pain since he became a genin. First, he defeated Gaara during the attack on Konoha in the Chunin exams. Second, he brought Tsunade back to be Hokage instead of him. Danzo knew he couldn't risk a third incident that would foil his plans for Konoha. No matter the cost, Uzumaki Naruto had to go. Even if the old war hawk knew it had all been an accident. The clan heads looked at Naruto with smiles on their faces. They respected that he wanted to stay in his home, even if none of the villagers liked him. Homura, however, was not so pleased. His wrinkled face became even more so as his expression turned to anger. "This is no longer your home, you demon," he yelled, and everyone in the room looked at him. Tsunade glared at him with killing intent. Naruto's head dropped as soon as he heard the word he had heard his whole life, demon. He couldn't get past it. He was the prison, not the prisoner, but apparently, that's what the old man thought of him. He clenched his fists and looked at the spectacled old man. "You can kiss my ass for all I care." Naruto grinned. It was the next day, and Naruto had finished packing. He sat on his bed in his apartment. While making sure he hadn't forgotten anything, he found something incredible. There was a trap door in the wooden floor of his room. Naruto had discovered it when he tripped on a piece of the plank that stuck out a couple of inches from the others. Stupid wood, he thought as he read the scrolls. There were 3 in total and a chest with even more scrolls with the same orange swirl he always wore. He opened the first one to read its contents. "Dear Naruto, if you found the trap door, then you must be around 15 or 16 by now. That's when the seal I made to keep it hidden would wear off. I'm sure you've noticed the other 2 scrolls along with the chest. Well, they are your parents' scrolls." Naruto's eyes widened when he read that part, but he kept reading. "I'm not going to tell you who they are because, what's the fun in that when you can read and find out? I know you hate reading, but I know you won't pass up a chance to learn about them. I was supposed to give you these when you became a Chunin, but I had a bad feeling on the day of the Chunin exams, so I hid them here without you knowing. I don't know if I'm dead or not, but if I am, then I'm sorry for keeping this a secret from you. I also hid a little present in the floorboard under your bed. I'm sure you'll like it. It belonged to your father. I hope you can forgive this old man, Naruto. Be strong and keep the will of fire burning. From the old man." Naruto's eyes welled up with tears upon seeing a late present from the third Hokage. It was a shame he was about to leave the village. Forgetting the other scrolls for the moment, he set down the now-read scroll and moved his bed. He carefully removed the floorboards piece by piece and stacked them. In the small, hidden space was a single seal. "This is Gramps' present? A seal? How thrilling," Naruto thought with sarcasm. Then Naruto remembered something about scrolls from the Pervy Sage during their trip. "I'm supposed to add chakra to it," Naruto said triumphantly. He put chakra into his right palm and placed it on the seal. The seal radiated a mix of red and yellow, and something appeared in front of him. It was a piece of clothing that Naruto thought he had seen somewhere before. He picked it up while standing and unfolded the white piece of clothing. It seemed to be just about Naruto's size. It had red flames that licked at the bottom of the cloak. Naruto put it on and went to his mirror in the bathroom. "You know, this is strangely familiar. I feel like I've seen it somewhere before." Naruto then went back to the other scrolls. He opened the scroll that had a golden color on the outside. He opened it and began to read. "To my son, Naruto. Naruto, if I know the old man as well as I do, and that's pretty well, if you ask Maya then you know nothing of me or your mother. Hopefully, he's told you about your tenant. Well, enough of that. My name is Minato Namikaze, or you may know me as the 4th Hokage." His mouth agape, Naruto stared at the scroll, dumbfounded. He couldn't believe it. Now he knew where he'd seen that cloak from. It was the Hokage's, or apparently, his father's. He felt happy to know that his hero was his own dad. The blood of the strongest Hokage ran through his veins. But then, he realized something. His dad was the very person who put the damn demon in him in the first place. He read on, hoping to find a reason for his father's actions. "I'm sure you're angry at me for giving you the burden of being a Jinchuriki. But I told Hiruzen to tell the villagers that you were a hero and not a monster. I wanted you to be happy, I still do, even though I'm dead. I don't know what your life has been like, but I hope you are happy. I'll haunt every villager from the grave if they hurt you." Naruto laughed at his father's joke. "Be strong, my son. I know you will become a great shinobi someday. It would break my heart if you didn't. But I digress, I'm leaving you my cloak so that it can make you look as cool as me. Heh, hopefully, you didn't get my horrible sense of humor. I'm sorry I couldn't see you grow up, but know that I love you very much, and so does your mother. You'll see her last words next to mine. Oh, before I forget, I left a chest filled with scrolls containing jutsu from my home village before I came to Konoha. That's Kumagakur, by the way. If you're my son, you should have an affinity for lightning and maybe water from your mother's side. I was also able to use Ranton, Storm Release. It's a mix of both chakra elements. Along with that, I'm leaving you the instructions for the technique that made me known as the Yellow Flash. The Flying Thunder God technique. It is space-time ninjutsu at its finest. Well, almost, anyway. I have to use a seal for it. Maybe you can master it without one? That should be it for what I've left you. I hope you're doing well, Naruto. Your mother and I love you very much. Your father, Minato Namikaze. Naruto, without hesitation, went to the scroll he now knew was his mom's. The scroll was orange. He opened it and quickly read it. Dear Naruto, my name is Kushina Uzumaki, and if you are reading this, then your father and I are dead. We wrote these with our chakra before we died. I'm sorry we didn't get to raise you, or watch you grow into a fine man, and maybe a shinobi. My dear Naruto, I hope you grew up happy. I'll never forgive Konoha if they harm you for something we put on you. You see, on the night of your birth, a man tried to kill me. He had an orange mask with a swirl on it. Minato tried to protect me and you, but somehow the bastard got past your father and, in my weakened state, released the 9 tails from my body. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that I was the previous Jinchuriki, didn't I? Sorry about that. Naruto's sweat dropped at that. I wonder if I took after her. He said to no one in particular. Due to our clan's ability for long life, I was able to live. Our clan originated from the land of whirlpools before it was destroyed during the Third Great Shinobi World War. We happened to be masters at Fuinjutsu and were pretty good at it, if you ask me. I was the one who taught sealing to your father. Somehow, Naruto could see the image of a woman pumping her fist in the air at her skill and accomplishment. Naruto laughed at that. Anyway, the 9 tails began to wreak havoc on Konoha due to the masked man's influence. He possessed the Sharingan. That's probably how he controlled the tailed beast. Your father fought the man off, and the man retreated. But the 9 tails still raged. So, we used a last resort. We used a sealing jutsu called the Dead Demon Consuming Seal to seal it into you. Your father died immediately after he wrote his letter. Using chakra, it didn't take him long. I don't have long either. My eyes feel so heavy, but I don't want to close them. But I'll have to soon. I'm sorry, Naruto. Please forgive me. I love you and stay healthy. Find a girl just like your mother. We leave our will of fire to you. Your mother, Kushina Uzumaki. Naruto began to cry at his mother's last words. He didn't hate them at all. He was happy to know that they loved him. And now, even if he didn't meet them, he loved them as well. For they were his parents. He put the 3 scrolls away and placed them into the chest. He unrolled his own scroll and put the chest on it. Naruto made the ram seal and contained the chest inside the scroll. Something he had learned on the trip, since it did come in handy sometimes. He stood up and made one last check before he left the room with a saddened look. He made his way through the streets of Konoha. He expected the glares but shrugged them off as always. You'll be happy to know that I won't be here any longer, the young namikaze thought as he saw the village gate. He did notice some gasps from the people, saying something about him looking just like the 4th Hokage. He grinned as he kept walking. He guessed the cloak's cool look power was already working. He saw people in front of the gate and stopped just a few feet from them. The blonde saw Tsunade, Jiraiya, Kakashi, Guy, Sakura, and teams 8, 10, and Guy looking at him. Most of them had astonished looks, most likely at Naruto's new attire. Tsunade gasped when she saw her fellow blonde wearing that all too familiar cloak. Naruto, where did you get that? She asked him. She wondered if he had found out about his parents somehow, but she quickly dismissed the idea. There was no way he could have. She shook her head, chuckling. This? I found it in my room. Turns out, I'm the son of someone famous. Naruto yelled loudly, grinning. Jiraiya was aghast. He looked like the spitting image of his student. Except for the whisker marks and shorter hair, he could have been a carbon copy. The perverted sage looked sadly at Naruto as his friends gathered around him, asking who had left him the cloak. He guessed they knew but were confirming it. He knows. Jiraiya looked at Tsunade. I wonder how he could have found out, she mused. Jiraiya shrugged. He certainly lives up to his unpredictable streak, the sage said with a smile to her. After Naruto was done telling them, they were all shocked, and yet, happy for him. Hinata and Sakura especially. They felt sorry for the way he was always looked at and for being without parents. Naruto went around saying solemn goodbyes to everyone. He hated having to see their saddened faces. I guess a spar would be out of the question, huh, dope? Kiba asked jokingly. Naruto shook his head sadly. Not this time, Kiba. But if we do meet again, you can bet your ass that I'll win. He yelled, hitting his chest with his right fist. Puffed. In your dreams. Naruto laughed and continued on. He stopped in front of Hinata. And Naruto-kun? Is there something wrong? She asked, blushing slightly as he looked at her with his blue eyes. Those eyes always made her look away, fearing that she'd get lost in them and faint. Naruto suddenly hugged her, and her face went redder than Jiraiya's cloak. Naruto let go and smiled at the Hyuga heiress. I know I never show it to you, Hinata, but you're a great friend. Always there when I was a kid and crying when the villagers kept calling me a demon. You're one of the reasons I didn't hate everyone in the village. Thank you, Hinata, he said, scratching his cheek and blushing a little. And no, it was nothing. You've always been a good friend as well, Naruto-kun, she said to him, successfully not stuttering more than one word in a sentence when talking to Naruto. She saw him smile back, and she returned the smile with her own. It tore her heart that she'd never see the boisterous blonde or find the courage to finally tell him her feelings. Naruto finally finished his tearful goodbye to Sakura. Both of them were sad, but he knew Sakura felt worse. She was now the last original member of Team 7. I'm sorry, Sakura-chan, he said to her sadly. Idiot, it's not your fault. She hugged him and was now staring at Tsunade and Jiraiya. He took off his headband and handed it to Tsunade. I'm really sorry about this, Naruto. If only the council would get those sticks out of their asses. Naruto laughed at Tsunade's statement. It's not your fault, Grandma. Those old bags were looking for anything to kick me out, Naruto complained. He hugged her for the last time and faced Jiraiya. Don't be a stranger, brat. Jiraiya said, trying to ease the atmosphere, but it didn't seem to work. Tsunade hit him on the head. Ow! He clutched his head, trying to soothe the pain. Is that all you have to say? Give him a proper goodbye. She yelled at him, and he sighed. Naruto chuckled at the silver-haired pervert, getting his attention again. Where are you going to go, brat? The Sand Village? Jiraiya asked with a raised eyebrow, curious. Naruto shook his head. Gaara's probably still recovering from having his demon sucked out of him, so they don't need me bothering them right now. Naruto smiled. Then where? Maybe the Cloud Village. Jiraiya smiled at his student. Your father's homeland, eh? Not a bad choice, kid. You take care of yourself, alright? Jiraiya's expression became serious. Of course. Who do you think you're talking to? A loud-mouthed brat. Jiraiya snickered as his student's eyes went white with anger. Naruto was about to say something when Tsunade hit Jiraiya again. What was that for? He asked. Stop messing around. It's bad enough he's banished. She yelled with tears in her eyes. Jiraiya sighed again and put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. He looked into Naruto's eyes and smiled. Don't get yourself killed out there. Your mom would have killed me if she found out. Jiraiya laughed. Sure thing. Naruto pumped his left arm at his side. Now that Naruto was done, he exited the gate and looked at everyone. Thank you all. I'll miss you, he said to them with a sad smile. He saw Hinata crying. He didn't know she cared so much about him. He turned around and headed in the direction of the Cloud Village. With a body flicker technique, he was gone. Naruto Uzumaki was now gone, and the quietness began to settle in quickly for his friends. Sakura started to cry as well. Kakashi put a hand on her shoulder to reassure her, but she kept crying. Her friend was gone, and she could do nothing to bring him back. Hidden Akatsuki hideout. The members that were still alive were in a dark meeting room. The platforms they were standing on were made of stone and looked like fingers. The fingers were from the hands of what looked like a petrified demon. It had 9 eyes, and only 8 were open. This statue was where they kept the souls of the tailed beasts that they had captured. The one they did capture was the one-tailed Shikaku. They were lucky they got that. Since then, it's been tough to get any of the others without their home villages knowing. The increased security since the Shikaku's capture has made progress, less than extraordinary. Leader-sama, I've got news on the 9-tailed fox kid, a plant-like man said in a holographic form. He looked like a humanoid Venus flytrap. He wore the same Akatsuki cloak like the other members around him. What is it, Zetsu? A man whose eyes had a ripple-like pattern around each of his pupils and had a light purple iris and sclera. His hair was similar to Naruto's but was a little longer and still spiky. He hid the bottom of his face under his holographic cloak. He was the leader of the outfit known as Akatsuki. It seems that he's been banished from the Leaf Village, one half of Zetsu said. Good. Now we can take him, the black half said. The leader closed his eyes to think about who to send. He figured Deidara and Tobi still needed work as a team, so maybe Itaki and Kisame? Itaki was very proficient in fighting the 9-tailed fox's container while they were extracting the Shikaku. He nodded to himself and opened his eyes, showing those same, mysterious eyes again. Itaki and Kisame, observe him for now. Is there anything else? Itaki just stood like the statue he was standing on, stoic and quiet. He had his eyes closed as if he was meditating. He really had nothing against Naruto, but he had no choice but to keep following Pain until Madara said not to. And then there was his little brother, Suzuki. He still had to deal with him. I think our fight should be somewhere we've both known, but where? I need to plan every detail. Kisame, on the other hand, looked excited to finally get some action. His same Hata had been itching to get some chakra from a tailed beast for a couple of weeks now. He wondered just how much stronger the 9-tailed fox kid had gotten in the past 2 years since he last saw him. He chuckled to himself at the thought of defeating him. Yes, it seems that he's heading to the Cloud Village, a masked hologram said. He adorned the cloak as well and seemed to be very dark-skinned. His name is Kakuzu. The Cloud Village? Why the F*** would he go there? The silver-haired Haydn spoke. He was the most religious one of the group, even though his religion involved killing people for a god named Jashin. Who knows? The blonde Deodara said. He's always been one that's unpredictable, right? Why should this be any different? Leader nodded and looked at the two he was planning on sending. Don't engage. I want to know why he was banished and, if you can, see if he's gotten stronger than before. If he has, report every detail, and watch for his friends. We don't need any more distractions. Yes, Kisame said. Let's go, Itaka-san. He formed the ram seal, and they both used the body flicker technique to disappear. The rest of you are dismissed. Find any information on the other Jinchuriki you can. We need what we can get, leader said, and his hologram disappeared. The others followed soon after. A dirt trail just nearing the mist village. Naruto was walking carefully on the dirt beneath his feet. He tried not to get his new cloak dirty since it was his father's, and he didn't want to ruin it on the first day. He looked up at the sky while holding his backpack straps inside. I wish I was never a Jinchuriki to begin with. He then stared back ahead of him and passed some merchants who were on the same path. They looked like they were headed to the Leaf Village. Walking a few kilometers ahead, he came across a fork in the road. He bent over and read the sign. 2 days to get to the land of rice fields. 3 days to get to the Mist Village. He went onto the right path and headed to the Mist Village. It was the country he had to get by first on his way to the Cloud Village. But something was sort of bothering him, like he was being followed or something. Naruto quickly turned around to see if he could catch the stalker, but to no avail. He just saw an empty dirt road in front of him. He returned to walking the path to the Mist Village and shrugged off the weird feeling he was having. It's just my imagination, I guess. After a few hours, he decided to rest. It was nighttime now, and he didn't want to risk traveling at night. He set up camp to the side of the trail. He sent a clone, who quickly returned, to get some firewood and used flint to make a campfire. The blonde Jinchuriki sat in front of the fire, trying to keep warm. He let his mind wander as he gazed at the flames. He wondered if the Raikage would let him stay in the Cloud Village or even let him become a ninja there. Even if he did become a ninja there, he wondered if he'd be accepted. He'd hate to have to live in yet another village that loathed him. The blonde Jinchuriki was brought out of his musing when he heard the bushes behind him rustle. He quickly got up with a kunao drawn in his right hand. Who's there? For the next few minutes, he heard nothing, but he wasn't one to just let things go. Then a rabbit jumped out of the bushes and ran across him to the other side of the trail and disappearing as it dived into the greenery. He smiled and shook his head. He put his kunao away and sat back down in front of the fire. He sighed happily and heated a cup of instant ramen. Within minutes it was ready, and he put the cup to his nose and smelled it. Itadakamesu. That was cut short when a kunao went to his throat. Ninja should never let their guard down. Naruto froze. Was the rabbit a distraction? Or was the assailant lucky to have a rabbit running around at this hour? The blonde namikaze quickly forgot about the rabbit and focused on more pressing matters. Who are you? Naruto asked. That is none of your concern, demon trash. Naruto's blood began to boil. He hated being called something he was not. And this guy was going to learn that the hard way. Die. The assassin plunged his knife into Naruto's throat and watched him bleed. He smiled beneath his mask. He threw the body to the ground, and it popped into white smoke. What? Naruto had used the replacement jutsu to escape just before he was killed. He replaced himself with a clone he secretly created when the assassin got him. Naruto may not be book smart, but in a fight, he can be a certifiable genius. The assassin smirked beneath his mask. He's not that bad after all. He got out another kunao and waited for his foe's move. He was looking around slowly and keeping his senses sharp. Meanwhile, our lovable blonde was watching the man from the trees near the trail. He noticed the man was wearing an umbu mask but didn't recognize the animal. What's even more confusing, these guys answer to Granny. She wouldn't send one out to kill me, so either he's working by himself or someone else is pulling his strings. Shadow clone jutsu. Naruto yelled, putting his fingers in a cross form. Soon the clones surrounded the masked assailant. The man laughed. I heard about your extraordinary chakra reserves, but this is incredible. You might just be a challenge for me. He got into a fighting stance. The clones charged and dogpiled him. They stayed like that for a while until each one started to disappear. One by one, they were all gone, and the man stood in a cloud of smoke made from the shadow clones. He began searching for the real one. His eyes widened and suddenly looked up. Naruto was free falling down at him with a Raiznan in his hand. The clone that made the Raiznan grabbed Naruto's arm and threw him towards the man, gaining incredible momentum. Raiznan. The jutsu crashed into the land as the assassin dodged by jumping away. Naruto stood in a small crater in a ready stance, anticipating any attack. Earth-style, rising spikes. Naruto felt the earth beneath him begin to rumble. Out of nowhere, spikes made of earth protruded from the ground in an attempt to skewer him. The assassin appeared in front of his work. He began to laugh at his victory. Now I can report back to Danzo-sama. The man's eyes widened when he saw Naruto in the middle of his jutsu in an awkward position. Naruto was barely able to escape death by being flexible. He twisted his body in places he didn't know he could just to dodge the attack. Naruto's eyes went white, and he yelled at the man, "Hey, shithead. I'm not out yet. And if you think I didn't hear that, you're badly mistaken." His face looking more serious than he usually is. With just a small burst of the nine-tailed fox's chakra, Naruto was able to break free from the spikes and dashed at the man with blinding speed. But the man foresaw his attack and parried a punch by Naruto. But what he didn't know was the clone Naruto made behind him. Shadow clone without seals? That's right. More Narutos appeared as the man found he couldn't move since the original had his hand locked in tight with both his hands. Time to finish him off, guys. They all nodded, and each made a raise non. They smiled victoriously at the man because they knew they had one. I don't know who you are, but prepare to die. The Narutos uttered a battle cry and drove their jutsu at the man. He screamed in pain and flew away from the crowd, hitting tree after tree along the way. When he did finally stop, his eyes were rolled to the back of his head, and blood flowed down his neck. His mask was cracked, and the man's identity remained a mystery. Naruto walked closer after dispelling his clones. Now to find out who this bastard is. Maybe he has something on Danzo too. He was now inches from the assassin. He took off the mask, and as soon as he did, his body combusted from blue flames. What the F*******. Naruto blinked. Danzo's secret hideout, in his office. Danzo sat in anticipation from the Umbu route he sent to dispose of the nine-tailed fox container. He knew the man to be a skilled Chunin-rank ninja. He believed that he'd be more than enough to handle the talentless brat. He was broken from concentration when his door slammed open and another route operative stepped into the office that mimicked the Hokage's. The operative kneeled in front of the old war hawk. Danzo-sama, we've got bad news. The tracker we've placed on Ryusuke has gone off the grid. Maybe the nine-tailed fox brat got lucky. And no, his chakra signature is gone as well. I think he's gone, sir. Danzo gritted his teeth with his mouth closed to make sure he didn't show any response. He nodded to his operative, telling him to leave. Yes, the man disappeared. The old war hawk then slammed a fist onto his desk. Damn that brat. I underestimated him, and he makes a fool of one of my ninja. I'll make him pay dearly. The next day, Naruto was walking very slowly. He had bags under his eyes from lack of sleep. He was afraid to, just in case he was attacked again. He yawned into his hand and smacked his lips together a few times. I'm getting tired of wasting time. Let's pick up the pace. He began to concentrate chakra into his legs and sprinted ahead. Now that's more like it. He laughed. Thanks to his stamina, he was able to keep up his pace for hours. He stopped when he finally reached the village he helped save from Gato's evil clutches. He breathed in the fresh air and exhaled in a relaxing manner. He crossed the bridge that was named after him with a smile. Once he read the sign before crossing it, he was happy that something was named in his honor. Once reaching the village, he stopped at an inn. He didn't go inside, he stood in front of the building. Should I? Nah, I can probably stay a couple of days with Tsunami-chan, the old man, and Inari. He smiled. He walked on and soon found his way to the seasoned bridge builder's home. Naruto knocked on the door a few times and waited for an answer. The door opened to reveal a raven-haired woman who stepped out of the house. She wore a green, loose shirt and loose black khakis. On her feet were heeled shoes that were nearly as black as her hair. She looked at the young man in front of her with a raised eyebrow. Can I help you? Naruto just grinned at Tsunami and poked his chest with his thumb. Don't you recognize me, Tsunami-chan? She blinked and thought she heard that voice somewhere before. She looked closer at the man. Blonde hair, blue eyes, lots of orange. Wait, orange? She gasped. Naruto-san? She asked, surprised. He rubbed the back of his head, laughing and grinning. Yep, long time no see. She smiled and hugged him. It's good to see you. Inari would have been glad to see you. She looked sad. Would have been? Is he somewhere out of the mist village or something? Naruto asked with his own brow raised. She shook her head slowly. Come in, I'll tell you. Naruto followed her into the house and took a seat along with her at the dining table he remembered eating at all those years ago with Sakura, Suzuki, and Kakashi. Back when Team 7 was complete. Tsunami looked at the table with a sad expression. Inari, Heichi died a year after you and the rest of Team 7 left us. He suddenly got an illness that not even our best doctor could have cured. She began to cry. Naruto was heartbroken. He had missed the little kid that was so innocent. Heck, he was even younger than Naruto when he got here. And he was gone. That was something that Naruto could not comprehend. He kept wanting to live another day so that he could see his big brother again. She began to sob. Naruto hung his head. I am so sorry. What about the old man? Tsunami sniffled and regained her composure while wiping her tears. He should be back in a few minutes. He just had to do some business, she said, trying to sound not so sad. But she couldn't help it. Inari was her son, after all. He was all she had left besides her father, and he won't be around forever. She missed the boy that would play with her and make her laugh. She couldn't help it now. She could only let time heal her deep wound. Naruto sighed in relief. That's good. I'm really sorry about Inari, Tsunami-chan, he said with sadness in his voice. In the short time he was there, the kid had grown on him. He did feel like an older brother to the little guy. Inari was the closest thing Naruto had to a little brother at that. It's okay. You didn't know. He would have been happy that you came. Now, why are you here in our little village? And where's your headband? She asked, changing the subject on purpose. Naruto sighed and looked at her. Let's start from the beginning. After explaining the whole thing to her, she offered Naruto a room, and he tried to refuse, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. So the blonde namikaze stayed in the village for around 3 days before he left. He got to meet a lot of the villagers and saw the old bridge builder again. They were happy to see each other. He also visited the grave of Inari, which was made right underneath the great Naruto bridge. Seeing it made him cry. During those few days, Naruto noticed that the village placed a monument at its center. The statue displayed Team 7 in their glory days. When Naruto asked who made it, he was told an old stonemason made it before he left. Apparently, the stonemason was around when the village was saved. So, in honor of the shinobi team, he made the statue. Naruto was happy about that. When it was time to go, Naruto was left with the whole village waving at him with smiling faces. I wish I got this when I left the Leaf Village, he thought sadly and pressed on. 3 days later in the Cloud Village, Naruto was now in front of the gate that blocked him from either becoming a ninja again or living there peacefully. He hoped for the shinobi option. He had too much energy to just sit around and do nothing. He almost walked in when he was stopped by 3 ninjas. 2 were female, and the last one was male. The obvious leader of the group, a blonde woman with a long ponytail held by a tight bandage, studied Naruto with a confused expression. Her black eyes fixed on him, but he felt no hostility. Dressed mostly in black with bandaged arms and a kumo headband on her forehead, she completed her look with a pair of fingerless gloves. What's your name, kid? She asked. Naruto remained calm, not wanting to provoke any ninja, especially when he was outnumbered. He smiled. Namikaze Naruto. Oi, are you sure the sensor was right? A silver-haired ninja asked, his relaxed demeanor evident as he sucked on a lollipop. He said someone with even higher chakra than B-sensei was headed for the village. The blonde in front of Naruto blinked a few times before walking back to her group to talk. Naruto couldn't hear a word. So, who is he? The red-haired Karui asked. A spy. Yujito shook her head. His smile was genuine. He didn't lie. I was told to watch for a Naruto Uzumaki, not Namikaze. Maybe we should take him to the wreckage just in case, Amwa suggested, making Karui shake her head at the ridiculous idea. Otherwise, he might get so mad he'll level all of Kumo with a blinding rage. Yujito nodded at the suggestion. She walked back to Naruto and looked at him again. You're coming with us, she stated. Naruto's momentary panic was clear. Hold on. What did I do? Nothing, she replied casually. We're taking you to the wreckage. Naruto sighed in relief, wiping sweat from his forehead before smiling at Yujito. That's great. I was going to see him anyway. She gestured for him to follow, and he eagerly obliged, walking slowly through the village with them, excited by the prospect of finally living in peace. As they walked, people looked and whispered, but the gazes weren't filled with hate or malice, just curiosity and questions. He even saw a few old people bow to him, which made him blush with embarrassment. He wasn't expecting that. They finally arrived at the Raikage's office, where they found him signing stacks of papers, one after another, until his brow twitched with annoyance. He slammed his large fists on the desk and stood up. Enough. I'm taking a break, but Raikage-sama, these need to be filled before tomorrow morning. I don't care. And stop calling me that. He then noticed his Kumo ninja and a stranger enter. He sat back down, studying the stranger, who looked vaguely familiar to the dark-skinned Kage. Who is this you brought, Yujito? He demanded. We found him about to enter the village. He only told us his name, Namikaze Naruto-san. A's eyes widened at the name Namikaze. He hadn't heard that name in over 20 years, not since before he was even Raikage. That's impossible. The Namikaze clan was eradicated here during the IWA attack that was one of the catalysts for the Third Great Shinobi World War. It's impossible for one to be here. Naruto clenched his fists at the revelation. So IWA is responsible for my clan's destruction? They're going to pay for that. He relaxed his anger and looked at the muscular cage. I am Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. I'm a former konoha ninja who came here to stay in the birthplace of my father. And who was your father? A asked. His name was Minato Namikaze, but you all know him as Konoha's Yellow Flash and the Yondaime Hokage. Everyone gasped. A smirked. I thought you looked familiar. I forgot there was a kid the clan sent off to help relations with Konoha. He began sifting through the mess of papers on his desk. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the Raikage's actions. By the way, kid, don't call me Sama. A-san is fine. I never really liked the formal name anyway, he laughed. Naruto laughed along with him. He liked this guy, who didn't seem to care about the formalities of being the Kage of Kumo. Naruto had figured all Kages were supposed to have a diplomatic disposition. Tsunade wasn't really like that, but she did like being called Sama all the time. Aha! Here it is, A said, holding a paper with the Konoha leaf symbol. He reread the letter from his fellow village leader. To the Raikage, I am Tsunade, the Hokage of Konoha. This letter is to inform you that due to recent conditions, one of our shinobi, Uzumaki Naruto, will be heading to your village. He was banished by our council for a tenant problem. This was not my decision but that of the fire daimyos, and you know a daimyo's decision cannot be changed. So, since he is no longer on our roster as a shinobi, he had told us that he will be going to the place where his father was born. Please take care of him. He is like a grandson to me, and I'd hate to have to go over there if he's being mistreated. He should explain any details that you may have questions about. He's got blonde hair, blue eyes, and 3 whiskers marks on each cheek. He is wearing an orange/black jumpsuit under a white cloak with red flames licking the bottom of it. I don't know when he'll get there but be expecting him within 2 weeks at most. Please let him stay, he doesn't have anywhere else to go. From the Hokage. I looked at Naruto. Yep, definitely the kid she described. He set the paper down in the messy stack. Now, you've got to answer me a few questions, A said seriously. He saw Naruto straighten up. What is this tenant your Hokage mentioned in her letter? Naruto hung his head before looking back at everyone. The ninja he met were suddenly standing next to the Raikage. Well, how do I put this? I'm the container of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. He closed his eyes, expecting to be thrashed. He knew Kumo didn't have anything against it, but he didn't know how well they liked demon containers. When he heard the Raikage's loud laugh, he looked at the dark-skinned man in confusion. That makes 3 for our village. I don't fucking believe it. Raikage-sama. Language, the assistant scolded. A just laughed. 3, Naruto wondered. What was the Raikage talking about? So I guess we have something in common, Naruto-san, Yujito said, smiling at him. She hadn't known she'd meet the container of the most powerful demon in shinobi history, but now it got her interested in the younger blonde. So you're... Naruto said to her. Yujito nodded. I am the container of the Nibi no Bakuniko, Yujito nii. Good to meet you, she said happily. You'll meet our other Jinchuriki soon enough. But when you do, be careful. He can be a little hyperactive, A told Naruto, trying to describe his brother. Naruto laughed and rubbed his nose. I'm a pretty hyperactive guy, too. I'll be fine. The others just sweat dropped at that statement. They wondered if another hyperactive container would cause them more trouble than he was worth. Now that that's over with, what rank were you in Konoha? Naruto hung his head again. Genin, he said in a low tone. Really? Yujito yelled, surprised. Naruto nodded. I failed the first Chunin exam I took, and I was out of the village on a training trip with my sensei for 2 years, so I stayed at Genin, he explained. I thought about this for a few minutes. He could tell the boy was at least a high Chunin or low Jonin level, but should he make the kid a Chunin or a Genin? He rubbed the bridge of his nose in frustration. He finally sighed and shrugged. He was going to give him the test. Alright, Naruto. Here in Kumo, we have a test. I want you to fight against one of my Chunin and see how well you do. Winning or losing won't matter. I want to see your ability. Deal, Naruto grinned. You got it. I'll make Chunin for sure. That made us smile. The boy was confident, a good trait, sometimes. He hoped Naruto wasn't the overconfident type, but A didn't think he was. Yujito found the potential new shinobi amusing. He had a spark that was different from B. Maybe it was because he didn't rap? I'm sure you'll be living in your clan's estates, so I'll have these 3 show you to it. But, can you please do something about those clothes while you're out? A asked, pointing at the jumpsuit. Naruto looked at his clothes. What's wrong with them? He blinked. They practically screamed, here I am. Come kill me, Karui said abruptly. The statement made the Raikage laugh. Naruto hung his head. Alright, I guess it's something I'll have to deal with if I'm living here. He sighed and straightened up. Let's go shopping, he yelled, a little too excited. Oi, Wait up, Amwa yelled, trying to catch up. Karui and Yujito stayed behind. Karui sighed. Yujito, give him this. I'm sure he'll need it, A said, handing her an envelope. She smiled and nodded. They left to catch up with the boys. Do you think I made a good decision, Haruna-san? A asked his assistant. She only smiled at him. I think he may be useful to Kumo. He doesn't seem the type to betray the village he belongs to, but I do worry what side he chooses if we get in conflict with Konoha. Besides that, no, I don't think you did, Reikage-sama. I told you to stop calling me that. Call you what, Reikage-sama? She raised an eyebrow, looking like she hadn't done anything wrong. That, I don't follow. A was sweating now. He couldn't tell if she was joking or not, but he started laughing anyway. He loved how many different people there were in his village. Kumo, Shopping District 1, Clothes and Accessories. Are my clothes really that bad? Naruto asked as they walked through the bustling streets of the shopping district. There were many people and stores on either side of him. He was amazed they had more clothing stores than Konoha, and what was better was that none of them even glanced at Naruto. He liked not being glared at. It felt good. Of course. We'll have to do something about the cloak, too, Yujito said as they walked into a store. This store was for Kumo Shinobi, but they also had civilian clothes. Yujito began looking around for clothes that would suit Kumo's new shinobi. No way. I'm not getting rid of this. It's my father's. Naruto yelled a little angrily. Relax, we can change the color. White is too noticeable, so we'll ask a tailor to do that. It'll still be your father's, but with your own style, the older blonde said, smiling. Well, okay, Naruto was defeated. Yujito began looking around the store and slowly picked out a few clothes. Soon, she had a small pile in both of her arms. Here, try these on. I don't know your sizes, so I don't know if they'll fit, she giggled. Naruto nodded and went into an unoccupied changing room. He tried on different clothes, most of which were small, until he found some that actually fit. He looked at the mirror in the room to see what he looked like. He wore a black muscle shirt that hugged his build tightly. He also wore white armbands that covered his forearms. They each had the Kumo symbol on the back of the protective armor. Naruto chose the loose-fitting black khakis as his pants since the others were too small. On his feet were the same type of black shoes. I look like I'm going to a funeral. Naruto shrugged. He figured it was better than nothing. He walked out to let everyone see. Well, the others, the girls, had one word come to mind, hot. But they didn't let that show to someone younger than they were. Karui was the first to speak her opinion. Looking good, new guy. Now you look much better without all the orange, she praised, and he blushed at the compliment. Thanks, but what about my cloak? We have to buy these first. Come on, Yujito said, and they all went to the clerk. Naruto was surprised he got all the clothes at the same price and didn't get stiffed. His face saddened at how his old village treated him. What's wrong with you? Karui asked. He shook his head. Maybe he's sick? Maybe he caught a virus that'll spread around the village and cause an end to Kaminari no Kuni, Amwa said, over-exaggerating things again. Karui just slapped her forehead. Only you would think up something so ridiculous. Naruto just laughed at the pair's antics. You two make a good couple. Karui was about to hit Amwa when she heard that. She glared at Naruto, and he was scared of her gaze, to say the least. We're not together, you baka. He's my cousin for Kami's sake. Naruto just scratched the back of his head and laughed nervously. Sorry, didn't know. But what's wrong, Naruto-san? Yujito asked, remembering his look of shock and then sadness. It's nothing. Oh, I'm going to go look over there. Naruto ran off. Yujito sighed. He remembered something that made him like that. I wonder what it was, though. After Naruto was done browsing, they went to a store mainly for shinobi. When they entered through the cloth of the store, their first sight was large weapons hanging off the walls. Axes, hammers, swords, kamas, sai, and many other types were everywhere. Naruto was amazed at all the weapons. But his natural senses went back into gear, and he stayed on his toes. Being thrown out of stores kind of does that to someone like him. But after he followed the Kumo ninja around the large interior of the store, he relaxed. Maybe I'm overreacting. People here don't know me, so how would they know what I am? He laughed to himself quietly. Here we are, Yujito said as they were now in the katanas section. What are we here for? I thought I was going to get my cloak tailored, Naruto asked. We're getting to that, too, but we need to find you your sword, she said, smiling at him. Naruto merely tilted his head to the side with a raised eyebrow. But I don't use swords. You will if you're going to be a ninja here, Amwa said and showed Naruto that they were all carrying swords. It's optional to carry, but you still need to learn the style. You'll find it's very useful. Well, okay, I guess. So which one do I pick? Naruto asked. He began searching through the selection of swords. There were many different types of them. buken, for practice, katanas, nodoki, a two-handed long sword, and others. Naruto stopped in front of one of the katana swords. This one seems different, he thought as he looked at it in its glass case. The black blade still looked durable and deadly. The handle was a dark red with a shining gold tip. When he looked closer, he saw that the blade had kanji written on it. He couldn't tell if it was a seal or not. It's kind of hard to read on black. Looks like you found one, Yujito said, and he nodded dumbly as she walked up to him. Karui and Amwa were looking at possible replacements. She saw the sword he was looking at and was surprised at his pick. That belongs to one of the namikaze elders. He was said to have been a very proficient kenjutsu master. Yeah, but I don't think I can afford it. I'm using reserves right now, Naruto laughed, scratching the back of his head. She put a hand on his shoulder, and he looked at her. You didn't think that the money we're using is our own personal money, did you? It's all paid for by the rakeage. Naruto smiled widely and yelled to the clerk to get the sword. The man walked up to him, and the closer he got, the taller and bigger he became. When he got up to Naruto, he towered over both blondes and looked to have as much muscle as A. He had a long ponytail of black hair and a short beard. His glasses shimmered, so his eyes weren't visible. Ah, Goro-san. I thought you gave the store to your brother, Yujito said, smiling at him, not intimidated at all. The man named Goro just laughed at what she said. And miss being able to scare the shit out of non-shinobi customers? Forget it. He then turned his attention to the sword the young namikaze wanted. Sorry, kid, but that glass is seal protected. Only the clan from which it was made can open it. What clan is that? Naruto asked. The namikaze, of course. They were some of the greatest kenjutsu masters in all of lightning, Goro said proudly. Maybe because he actually sold some of the swords they used to the clan. Oh, Naruto bit his thumb and wiped it over the glass and then placed his palm on it. The glass glowed and, in a bright flash, the protection was gone. Naruto looked at Goro, who had an astounded look, and smiled widely. Looks like I'm one of the clan. He laughed and picked up the sword to check if it suited him. Goro and Yujito gave him some space as he did so. Naruto swung it, sliced the air, and found that the sword was perfect for him. It was just the right length and was light enough that he only needed one hand. I'll take it. Goro put the sword into its sheath, which was black with bright yellow kanji that said namikaze, and brought it up to his counter. The price turned out to be about 100,000 ryo. It would have been higher, but he wouldn't let the boy buy his own clan's swords at full price. He couldn't have that at all. Naruto and the other kumo nin thanked him and left the store. Come back soon. I get new weapons every couple of weeks, they heard just before walking out. They waved back and now headed to one last spot, the tailor's. When they walked across the district, Naruto looked in amazement at the many more shops around. There were places for, well, anything. The only thing that was missing was a red light district, and it would have been just like Konoha. Hey there, handsome, want to have some fun? A woman in a low-cut kimono asked Naruto, her ample cleavage on display. Naruto's brow twitched as a bead of sweat rolled down his face. Yeah, just like home. Damn it. I need to stop thinking that. It's not home anymore, not after what they did. He shook his head at the woman, who pouted and puffed her cheeks. Clearly, she wasn't used to being rejected. They finally arrived at their destination, and though it wasn't Kumo's largest shop, it had a nice look to it. Inside, there were various styles of clothing, dyes, and books on the art of dyeing fabric. All in all, it was the perfect place for the namikaze's cloak. Welcome, the bald clerk said as they entered. How may I help you? We need this punk's cloak dyed so he doesn't get killed, Karui said, jabbing her thumb at Naruto. Great, now she sounds like Baa-chan, he thought, crossing his arms. The clerk came around the counter and carefully examined the cloak. He placed a hand on his chin and walked around Naruto. This seems very familiar. Where did you get it? He asked. My dad gave it to me before I was banished. Who was your dad? The fourth Hokage. He was a namikaze, Naruto replied simply. The clerk blinked, then shouted a namikaze. His voice was nearly as loud as A's, which was really loud. Is there a problem? Yujito asked. Suspecting the clerk had an issue with the clan, she put a hand on her kunao pouch, just in case. Right away, namikaze-sama. The clerk yelled, almost tearing the cloak off Naruto before rushing through a door behind his counter. Black with red flames, please, Yujito shouted after him just before he vanished. Naruto simply stared, confused at being called Sama. He had never been addressed that way before, especially not by an old man. What just happened? He seems to be a fan of your clan, punk. You didn't forget your clan was really famous here, did you? Karui asked, her hands on her hips, raising an eyebrow. A few minutes later, the tailor returned with Naruto's newly dyed cloak. The white had been replaced with black, and the flames were now a deep red. Naruto put it on, thinking it suited his new outfit. Anything else I can help with? He also needs to be fitted for a flak jacket, Yujito said, and Naruto looked at her as if she'd grown a second head. I'm not even a certified shinobi here yet. Why do I need a flak jacket? Naruto asked. Think of it as an incentive to work hard and pass the test, she said with a smile. Follow me please, Namikaze-sama, the clerk said, and Naruto followed. You can just call me Naruto, you know, the blonde said to the peculiar clerk. Sorry, but I can't. Your clan helped me start this store and even saved my daughter from enemy ninja during the last war. It's the least I can do to repay your clan, he said, holding a measuring tape to Naruto. Now hold still. It didn't take long before Naruto was wearing a new white flak jacket under his cloak, with the straps going over his shoulders. As he walked out, many of the civilians looked at him. Naruto just smiled, waved, and rubbed the back of his head. The girls his age were blushing, whispering to each other about the new boy in the village. For some reason, Yujito felt a pang of jealousy but quickly shook it off. She noticed a blushing blonde beside her, giggled, and placed a hand on his shoulder. Come on, lover boy. We need to take you to your estate. Naruto's blush deepened at the lover boy comment, and he nodded in a Hinata-like manner. He quickly regained his composure and followed his companions to his new home. He started to wonder what it would be like, how big it would be, and what it might have inside. As they walked, Karui and Amwa kept talking about their leader, someone named Samui. This caught Naruto's attention. Karui smacked Amwa for commenting on the significant difference in their cup sizes. Idiot, was all she said to him, hitting him on the head again. Who is Samui? Another kumo ninja? Naruto asked curiously. Amwa nodded, rubbing the bump on his head. She's the jonin of our team. We're only chinin, so the Raikage made her our leader. I can't believe she became a jonin before us. Maybe she has some secret bloodline and is as powerful as a tailed beast, he began to rant. Naruto laughed at the slightly older man. Kumo had some interesting characters, and he liked them. It'd be boring if they were all like Sai, he thought as they strolled through town. Shut up, Amwa. We'd know if Samui-sensei had one. She's definitely skilled though, Karui said, striking a thoughtful pose. She recalled all the times the busted blonde had helped her train in Kenjutsu and Raitenjutsu. Then she remembered how Killer Bee-sensei would always outshine her, but she'd use her frustration on him to get stronger. Yeah, you'd like her, Naruto-san. She's from an unknown clan that came to Kumo. Hey, who wants to bet the first thing he notices are her breasts? Yujito asked Amwa and Karui. The two of them bet 200 ryo, and Yujito bet 200 that he wouldn't. Naruto just laughed at the whole thing. That's when they arrived at Naruto's new home. To say the estate was huge would be an understatement. It seemed very spacious and cozy. They toured the house, and Naruto liked what he saw. It had a fully stocked kitchen, a large training ground, and it even had its own onsen. There were doors with seals that read, namikaze only, and appeared to be trapped if anyone from another clan entered. He decided to check them out after the tour. After a complete tour of everything in the estate, except for the sealed rooms, the Kumo nin bade him farewell and left. But not before Yujito took the flak jacket from Naruto to give him an incentive to pass the test. You'll get it back when you pass, she said, and they all disappeared with the shunshin. Naruto turned back to the inside of his new mansion and sighed in contentment. Finally, a place to live where I'm not nearly killed. Huh, I wonder what she meant by when. He laughed and went inside. Konoha, council's courtroom. Tsunade was in the middle of the courtroom, being questioned by the civilian council. She sighed, knowing this was about Naruto's heritage. She folded her arms under her breasts and glared at the old geezers. Let's get this over with. Homura and Kohara stared down at the blonde Hokage. Homura was especially furious that a demon would dare wear the cloak of the man who defeated it. We want to interrogate Uzumaki Naruto about him wearing the cloak of the fourth, he said to her in his professional tone. The man was not pleased. Not one bit. Mostly because some of their ninja patrolling the border found a dead, masked shinobi near a campsite. He knew the demon was responsible. It's simple why he's wearing it. It was given to him by his father, Tsunade said with a smile that was nearly a smirk. The rest of the civilian council gasped at what they heard. Impossible, one of the lower clan heads, a ninja named Jin, yelled. There's no way that demon is the son of the fourth. Blasphemy, shut up, Tsunade yelled at them angrily. You're all blinded by your conceited and misguided views that you can't see the fact that Naruto is in fact Minato's son. Minato would never have asked someone else to give up their child and live the way you all treat him slasher. So he used his own son for the jutsu that cost him his own life. If it wasn't for Naruto, then you'd all be dead, and I'd be sitting in Tanzuka town drinking sake and gambling to my heart's content. You will not speak to the coup Homura was about to say when he was hit by a wave of killer intent from the busty Hokage. No, you shut up, Homura, she yelled and then pointed her right index finger at both Koharu and Homura. It's because of you two that he was never allowed to have a family. It was you two who made him a pariah and would take any chance to have him either assassinated or banished. Unfortunately, you succeeded in the latter. And even if he did get a home, she turned her attention to the other council members. You all would drive him away, beat him to an inch to his death, overcharge him, sell him lower quality products, and the list goes on. If I were Kami, you'd all be damned to the deepest level of hell I could think of for what you all did to that poor boy. He had no choice about becoming a Jinchuriki, and neither did you. Tell me, Yukari-san, she said to a man with a white robe and a large shuriken insignia on the front. He had short, combed dark brown hair. Yes, Hokage-sama. If the Nine Tails attacked the night of Tenten's birth, and you agreed for the fourth to use her, would you do everything in your power to help her live a normal life? For her not to become a pariah of Konoha, she asked with a serious expression. Why yes. I would never allow that. She's my daughter. Then why should Naruto be any different? Because he was cursed to have the Nine Tails in him? You should all know by now that he could not control the beast when Sakura got hurt, and when he came back to the village, what was he like? The Hokage asked as she scanned the faces of the council members. That doesn't matter. That demon deserved what he got. And I say that if he truly is of namikaze blood, then all of his belongings should go to the village, namely the Uchiha. When he gets back, a white-haired man yelled. This man, named Hakido, was a very profound demon hater. Come back? You honestly expect him to return after all this time? He went to Orochimaru. No one leaves when they join that snake, Tsunade said with gloom in her voice. Then it should still go to the village, Homura yelled. Then all you'll get is an empty apartment and some instant ramen, Tsunade laughed. The mansion the fourth used to live in with his wife is locked by blood, and he's not here to open it. Why is that? Oh right. You banished him. Now see here, what right do you have to keep the place locked up? The ninja Jin asked. What right do any of you have to take it away? You know what, I'm tired, and I don't have time for any more of this bullshit. Here is Naruto's birth certificate and who his parents were. If any of you need me, I'll be in my office drinking sake. And with that, the blonde Sunin left the council chambers. That bitch. She thinks that just because what she says is true that I'll go ahead and change my mind? Not even close. If he returns, his throat will meet the end of my blade. Then I'll be renowned as a hero in Konoha, Jin thought, chuckling to himself evilly. Homura was having a hard time with Tsunade. He clenched his fists under his seat so as not to show his anger. But he quickly calmed down. Just wait until Danzo's plan takes effect, you demon-loving whore. Then you'll not be a problem in Konoha's new regime, where I am a trusted advisor and Danzo reigns supreme. Meanwhile, Orochimaru's hideout. You seem to be doing well, Suzuki-kun, Orochimaru said as they had just finished their training fight. They both stood in the darkness of the training room. They could barely see each other, but they could sense each other's presence. HN. The raven-haired Avenger grunted and dropped out of his fighting stance. He heard Orochimaru coughing as the snake slithered away for an unknown reason. Now that he was alone, he began planning strategies he could use against Itachi, his traitorous older brother. But no matter how many times he came up with something, he found that Itachi would counter it with his Mangekyo. The only way to be equal to him would be to get the next stage of his own Sharingan. But to do that, he would have to kill Naruto. And that would mean having to go back to the village he no longer cared for. Sasuke was brought out of his thoughts when Kabuto and Orochimaru came back. The snake looked even paler than usual, if that was possible. Sasuke just crossed his arms and waited for what they had to say. It seems we've discovered something quite interesting, Sasuke-san, the four-eyed Medicnin said. Your old friend, Naruto, was banished from Konoha a couple of weeks ago, but now he resides in Kumo. Sasuke smirked at that. He had nothing against Kumo, so that would mean it was the perfect chance for him to try and kill Naruto to get the Mangekyo and get even more powerful. Something you want to tell us? Kabuto asked, adjusting his glasses. I wish to go to Kumo, Sasuke said in a monotone voice. And why is that? Orochimaru asked with curiosity. Because that is where Naruto is. I need to kill him to get stronger. The snake's mouth stretched into an eerie grin that would give anyone else a chill. He knew his new vessel would be even more powerful if he had the Mangekyo. Very well, Sasuke-kun. We'll leave in a week. Why are you making me wait? Sasuke asked with anger. It takes time to enter a country with as many military forces as Konoha. We need to be prepared for anything, Orochimaru said and then disappeared into darkness. Sasuke was left alone since Kabuto had gone too. He went to his room and sat on the edge of his bed, thinking about how much stronger the blonde might have gotten. But then he just smirked confidently. It's just the dobe. It'll be easy to kill him. 3 days later, Resident District. Naruto sneezed. Someone must be talking about me, he thought as he rubbed the bridge of his nose. He was walking around the village to get a feel for it and know the layout. The people were very nice to him, which was a bonus. He knew their kindness wasn't false since they didn't even know him, so there was no way they would hate him. He was taking a break from his training, much to his own irritation, but he couldn't keep hurting his body every day. Even ninja need to take breaks after all. He noticed that girls his age would always come up to him and try to flirt, but of course, he was oblivious to such things. And people wonder why Hinata and him never got together. Then his thoughts changed to his training. He was making progress on learning the Flying Thunder God, but he couldn't seem to manage to get exactly on the spot of the seal. After days, he needed a break, hence the walk. But there was another reason why he was walking around. The Raikage had finally called him in for the challenge he was to take to become a shinobi in Kumo. When he got there, he had just witnessed the dark tan cage break his desk in half with one arm. "Enough paperwork. Can't you do anything else besides bring me papers?" he yelled at his assistant, Mabi. "Sorry, sir. But there are a lot of mission reports to be looked over, as well as the documents for the possible alliance with one of the lesser nearby countries," she said to him in her businesslike tone. Just sighed and sat back down. He saw the blonde in front of him and smiled. "Well, hello there, Naruto. How are you doing today?" "Good, I guess. Could be better if the fangirls don't chase me today." The Raikage laughed at that. "Now then, it appears we have two things to talk about. The first being your opponent for your initiation into Kumo as a ninja, and the second being what you did to the training grounds of your estate." "What the hell happened?" A yelled. "I was training, of course." Naruto grinned widely, causing A and Mabi to sweat drop. "But if you want specifics, then I've been training in both my mother's and father's jutsu. I understand the Flying Thunder God, but what about you cutting a mountain that nearly took out the shopping district?" Mabi asked with a raised brow. "Ah, that. I was practicing to master my affinity. My dad's scrolls mentioned that if I couldn't train near a waterfall, I'd have to use a mountain instead." Naruto laughed awkwardly, rubbing the back of his head. "You're lucky it was just the tip of the mountain and not the whole thing, or it might have fallen over. How have your other jutsu been progressing?" A was curious. Coming from namikaze lineage meant you had to be powerful, and he wanted to see if that was true for Naruto. "Not much. I've learned a few wind and lightning jutsu, plus a water one. My dad mentioned he was skilled in storm release, but I'm not sure if anyone here knows it. I could use some help with that." The blonde Jinchuriki crossed his arms in frustration. Chuckled a bit. "You're in luck. I know someone who can help you, but you have to pass my test first." "Bring it on. I'll take down anyone you put me up against." Naruto yelled confidently. A let out a loud laugh. "Confidence is an admirable quality, but it can also be your downfall if it goes to your head," he said to the blonde with a serious tone. "I've decided that your opponent will be." Just then, the door opened to reveal a bald man in sports sunglasses. He wore a headband with a white cloth wrapped around his forehead, a black shirt, and a one-strap Kumo flak jacket. His pants were a dark gray, almost black, and he wore regular shinobi sandals. "Ah, Jei." The Raikage got up and his giant hand hit Jei's back, causing him to cough. Jei laughed while trying to catch his breath. "You called for me, A-san?" "That's right," A said, sitting back down. "I need you to fight this kid right here." He pointed to Naruto. "Kid?" Jei looked at the spiky-haired blonde next to him. He then looked back at the Raikage with a raised eyebrow. "Why?" "I want to see if he has what it takes to be a Kumo ninja. You're a proficient shinin, so if you win, I might consider promoting you to jonin," A offered. Jei's eyes immediately lit up at the idea. "I accept. I won't let you down, sir." "Good. Now, let's head to the fighting grounds." I led them out the door and to the Kumo Coliseum. It was a massive, wide circular structure with no roof, supported by pillars that circled the entire monument. $5 to see who can guess what this is in real life. When Naruto walked in, he saw a crowd of people cheering from the seats inside the Coliseum. Most of the population was dark-skinned, which didn't surprise him. What did surprise him were the signs some people held. Some were for him, while others were against him and for Jei. He smiled at that. Oh, and just a note in case anyone asks, the Raikage didn't tell Jei so that he would be surprised. But the people found out and got prepared. There you go, people of Kumo. You are here today to witness a rare event. A namikaze in action. I yelled after the crowd grew quiet. This young man is the last living member of the clan and has decided to make our home his home. But, he also wants to be a ninja here as well. The crowd began to whisper and murmur. "So, I've set up a little test. He will fight my top shinin to gain acceptance. Now, let's get this started." A yelled, and the crowd cheered. He disappeared, leaving the two alone. Naruto stared at the man in sunglasses. "Good luck, Jei-san," he said before getting into his fighting stance. The dark-skinned man smiled, nodded, and assumed his own stance. "Begin." As soon as they heard that, they ran at each other with kuno. The blades clashed, and they were inches away from each other's faces. "You're pretty strong for a kid," Jei said to the blonde. Naruto just smiled. "Deception is a ninja's greatest asset," he said, and then he poofed out of existence. That shocked Jei. When did he have time to create a shadow clone? I didn't even see him use a hand seal. I'll have to watch out for this guy, he thought as he stood in a ready stance, his eyes darting from side to side. The crowd grew silent, waiting to see what would happen. The Chunin had no idea where his opponent was, it was as if he had just vanished. But that thought was shattered as soon as he heard a sound. Raise Nan! Naruto yelled, coming at Jei from both sides and above. Shit! Jei said as he barely managed to dodge by jumping forward. He quickly turned and began making hand seals, ending with the snake seal. He then took out his sword, raising it into the air. Ninpo, Lightning Dragon Tornado. A bolt of lightning struck Jei's sword, and an electrical current flowed around him. Then, the chakra around the sword became dense. He slashed his sword toward the falling trio of Narutos, and a dragon shot out from the blade. Naruto saw the attack coming but couldn't do much about it. Damn it! I should have attacked from all directions so he wouldn't have had a chance to do that. Well, I guess it's time to bust a new move. Naruto, the one who was aiming for Jei's back, dispelled his clones and began making seals. Lightning release armor. And lightning flowed around Naruto. It became dense, but Naruto was still visible. The dragon went ahead and attacked Naruto, and an explosion occurred. It shook the arena, and the people nearly fell out of their seats. Hey! I told you to fight, not break the arena. The Raikage yelled at the standing Jei, who just rubbed the back of his head. Sorry about that, Raikage-sama. Stop calling me that, damn it. The smoke cleared, and Naruto was still standing. The lightning that flowed around him crackled, and he just stood with his arms folded and a smirk. Is that all you got? Not bad with the lightning release armor, kid. Almost as good as A-Sans. How about we switch things up? Jei said as he got into a Kenjutsu stance. He simply held his sword at the handle with both hands, held in front of him. He then separated his legs, almost like a squat, and waited for Naruto. Kenjutsu, huh? I'm not that great at it, but I'll give it a shot, Naruto said as he pulled out the black blade he had gotten just a few days prior. The crowd was excited, to say the least. Most of them hadn't seen a namikaze in battle for years, and they had never seen that sword before. Those who were new to the clan were eager to see the fighting style of the legendary lightning release users. Naruto lowered his stance and bent his elbows until the side of the blade was parallel to his right cheek. But he didn't end there. A clone appeared on each side of him, which made Jei raise an eyebrow. Ready? Go! They yelled and dashed at their opponent. Jei switched to a defensive stance, and as soon as they were within a few feet, he started blocking strikes that came from all directions. He was barely able to keep up. He's fast. But I have more experience. I just have to wait for an opening, now. Jei slashed and took out both clones as they were in mid-strike, but he missed the real one, who had again disappeared from his view. Where did he go? The dark-skinned swordsman asked. He was wondering why Naruto didn't just get him right then and there since he had an opening. He would have won the match if he had done so. So why did he just vanish? Jei looked around and then looked up, and his eyes widened. Naruto was in the air, making hand seals and ending the chain with the bird seal. Water release, water dragon jutsu. Water appeared around him and soon took the form of his own dragon. It began to crash down at the Chunin he was facing. Not this time. Jei yelled and made the snake seal. Lightning release, false darkness. He held his right arm into the air, and lightning shot out of it. It was the natural enemy of water, so it went right through the dragon and hit its mark. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw the attack coming. He could do nothing as he was now being electrocuted and yelling. When the jutsu was over, he began falling to the ground. He would have landed on his head, but he was still conscious, so he flipped his body and landed on one knee. He was breathing heavily now. Damn, that one took a lot out of me. And using all of this chakra isn't good either. Good thing I still have one more trick up my sleeve, he smirked to himself. Jei was breathing hard as well, but he was still standing. He didn't have a large chakra supply, but he did have incredible stamina. He slowly walked over to Naruto with his blade in hand and held it to the blonde's neck. It's over. Naruto laughed and formed a raise-nan. It's not over until the fat lady sings. And he disappeared in a yellow flash. Everyone, including the Raikage, nearly had their eyes pop out of their sockets. They had just witnessed a legendary technique, and it left them starstruck. Naruto reappeared behind Jei and slammed the raise-nan into the man's back. Jei was sent spinning like a pinwheel from the middle of the stadium and hit the wall in front of him with his chest and head. He was left on the ground, nearly unconscious. Naruto walked over, breathing really hard, and stared down at the Chunin he knew he had just defeated. How? Jei asked weakly. When our kunao clashed at the beginning of the match, Naruto said, remembering the scene. I placed the seal on you and used a small genjutsu I learned to keep it hidden, so it was my trump card in case the fight didn't quite go as planned. He laughed. Jei looked at the blonde in shock. He had it planned from the beginning. All in all, I never really had a chance. He smiled. I admit defeat. And the crowd roared. I appeared behind the two and walked up to them. I guess that makes it official then. Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, you are now a shinobi of Kumo. And your rank placement, Chunin. That made the crowd boo, which caused a vein to appear on A's forehead. Who asked you? Naruto laughed. I can live with that. I know I'm not strong enough for Jonin yet, so I'm fine with it. He smiled. That's not it, Naruto. You have the skills for a Jonin just for your strategic planning and ability to execute, but I want you to get experience first. And when you can put on a good match against my brother, you can have that rank. Hell, I might make you my successor if you're able to do that, A joked. But, of course, Naruto didn't take it as a joke. He now had a determined look on his face and stared at the raikage. Then that's what I'll do. If I can't make Hokage anymore, then I guess I'll have to go for raikage, right? He smirked. He put his blade back and saw the raikage's expression, who was sweat dropping. What? Let's just go and get your paperwork done. Medic, take care of JEI over here. I yelled and walked away with Naruto. Mountain range near the stadium. What is the status of the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki? Itaki heard in his head from the leader, Pain. He and Kisame were observing the match between Naruto and a dark-skinned man. He's officially a ninja in Kumo. What are your orders, leader? Itaki asked with his monotone voice. Capture him. The order was confirmed. Naruto and the raikage were now back at the mansion, and the dark-skinned man was sitting behind his desk. Naruto stood in front of him with a victorious look. I smiled at seeing the boy have a moment of victory, showing that he probably didn't have much of it. Well, that was a great fight, Naruto. Who knew you could take out one of my top chunin here? Sign this, I told him and slid a paper towards Naruto. What is it? It's the document stating your instatement into the Kumo shinobi force. It's all just formalities that we have to do because of our council, I said to him, and Naruto nodded, and then he signed. The Kage picked up the paper, looked at the signature, and smiled. He threw him a Kumo headband with a black cloth and watched the boy put it on. Welcome to our ninja world, Naruto. I'm sure you'll be a great asset to us. Now then, I would like to discuss your training. Naruto looked sheepish for a second. What exactly happened when you decided to try and cut a mountain? A yelled. Raikage-sama, keep your voice down, or you'll break the windows. Mabi, his assistant, yelled at him. Now it was A's turn to look sheepish. Naruto found that funny and laughed. What's so funny, brat? I can have you on D-ranked missions for a while if you want. Now tell me what it was you were doing, A said, calming down a bit. Naruto crossed his arms on his chest and looked at his new leader. Well, I was practicing with my wind element. I found some scrolls my father gave me to practice with. It said that if I couldn't find a waterfall, I should try a mountain and cut deep enough to be satisfactory. He said he didn't want me blamed for crushing a village during training. I laughed at that. But what exactly does cutting a mountain gain you? It's wind manipulation training. If I do this, then I will be able to use the element during battle, and that would be a huge advantage. But it's still slow progress and probably won't be mastered for another few days, Naruto sighed. A few days. But that's impossible. Element manipulation takes years to master, no matter what blood you carry. A was shocked. This boy thought he could do such a thing in a few days. Preposterous. Naruto just shrugged. Not with my method. I recently learned that whatever my shadow clones learn, I do as well. They are able to pass on their knowledge to me. Like, if I send a clone to train in mastering my Raiznon with one hand and I dispel him, then I would be able to do just that. Since I can make hundreds of clones, maybe even thousands, without exhausting myself, then I could learn a jutsu that would take people months in a couple of weeks. Simple as that. It's basically a way for me to get stronger, faster. But the only thing it doesn't work with is muscle memory. So I can't use it to get faster or stronger. I need to do that on my own. A was astonished. The blonde in front of him was definitely more knowledgeable than he first thought. Can this method work for anyone else? It could really help us out, A asked, curious. I think it could work for Yujito-chan since she probably has large chakra reserves like I do. Does she? Naruto asked him and got a replied nod. Then she should, provided her chakra is dense enough to maintain the clones during training. A just smirked and laughed at what he heard. You're more than meets the eye, Naruto. I didn't peg you for the smart type, no offense. Naruto just shrugged and smiled. It's fine. I know how I look to everyone, so I'm used to taking things like that. What changed? Mabi asked. Leaving Konoha for one. But honestly, I'm not that smart. I've used this jutsu for years, so I should be able to explain some things even if I only learned about the memory thing recently. I just don't like to let myself seem this way so that my enemy will underestimate me. Deceptive. Good battle strategy. I'll make sure to keep you out of the bingo books to implement that. Now then, I noticed that you also mastered the Flying Thunder God, very impressive. And what's more, you can do the lightning release armor. How did you learn that one? I asked with a curious yet serious tone. Naruto looked at the man with an impassive face. He didn't want the man to think that he somehow obtained it through illegal means. He didn't actually. Well, first off with the flying thunder god, I kind of got lucky. That caused Mabi and A to suddenly fall on their heads. I got back into his chair and looked at the blonde Jinchuriki with a shocked face. You don't get lucky with jutsu like that, kid. How did you use it? He asked. I've actually been practicing it since I left Konoha. I used shadow clones to train while I was either taking a break or sleeping. I even fought some guy that attacked me one night while they trained. Thank Kami I have large chakra reserves. The guy would have killed me otherwise. Naruto laughed, and a sweat dropped. Only he would laugh at something like his own death, a thought. Continue. The scroll said that it took him about 4 years to create it and another half year to master it. But since my father left me notes, it's taking me much less time, especially with shadow clones. But still, it's going to take a while to master it. When I said I got lucky that one time, I meant it. JEI was at a short distance and didn't have to go very far. If I was any further, well, I don't want to talk about it. I stared at the young namikaze and smirked. Alright. Then what about the lightning release armor? That jutsu was personally created by me, and I don't remember teaching anyone that jutsu. Not sure, Naruto shrugged. It was in the scroll, and it said it was perfect practice for lightning manipulation. But, like the flying thunder god, it's not mastered yet either. It can only withstand one hit before it dissolves. I don't think my dad stole it from you or anything though. That was when A's eyes perked up. He remembered giving some notes to the namikaze a few months before the eradication on that very jutsu. That Minato guy must be some kind of genius to get the lightning release armor to such a level on notes alone. The Cage looked back at Naruto again and smiled. Alright, I believe you. I forgot I gave a scroll to your clan before they were eradicated. The ending made Naruto cringe. Now then, on to other things. You remember when I told you about someone who knew about storm release, correct? Naruto gave a firm nod. Yeah, he could really help me out. I want to be stronger than my dad and become the greatest ninja I can possibly be. A wide grin spread across his face. A nodded. Darui, get your ass in here. Mabi immediately smacked him on the back of the head for that. The Cage grumbled under his breath as the door swung open. A silver-haired, dark-skinned man stepped into the room. He had a lazy expression and wore a high-collared, sleeveless uniform, loose-fitting pants, and a one-shoulder Kumagakure Jonin flak jacket. Naruto couldn't see them, but the man had tattoos on both shoulders. Hey, you called. The man's voice was completely flat. A smiled. Yes. I have someone here who may have what it takes to learn Ranton. Do you think you'd be able to train him? Darui looked at the blonde, raising a visible eyebrow. You're the kid from that fight against JEI. You did pretty well, considering he's a top shinin. Wait, you look familiar, have we met? He asked. Naruto shook his head. I don't think so. This is my first time in Kumo, and I don't think I've ever fought you. He's from the Namikaze clan, Darui, A interrupted. He's the last one alive, didn't you hear me yell that? Darui shrugged. Not really, I thought the talking part was pretty dull. A's forehead twitched, while Mabi giggled and Naruto laughed. But the clan thing changes things. I'll train you if you want, I owe your clan that much for what they did for me, the silver-haired Jonin said. What did they do? Naruto's eyes filled with curiosity. Darui was taken in as a child by the clan and became their protector. Those tattoos he has were created by them to allow him to use the Ranton bloodline and also show that he has inherited the abilities of the third Raikage, the user of Black Lightning. You have your work cut out for you, Naruto, A explained. I'll meet you at your training grounds at 5 in the morning tomorrow. If you don't show up, I won't train you, Darui said, disappearing in a flash of lightning. I laughed at the look on Naruto's face. The boy was completely distraught but quickly regained his composure. Is that all, A-san? I want to get back to training, Naruto said, looking at the dark-skinned man. A nodded, and Naruto left the building. Raikage-sama? Shouldn't you have told him about the Clan Restoration Act? He should know about something like that if he wants to rebuild and revive the Namikaze clan, Mabi asked. Oh, I simply forgot to mention that. Why, are you anxious about being a possible candidate, Mabi-san? I grinned mischievously. The assistant blushed and defiantly looked away. Perverted old man. Naruto was once again walking through the streets of Kumo. He wanted to get back to training, but he was feeling the strain of using an imperfect flying Raijin on his body. It hurt like hell, but the Kyuubi should heal it in another hour or two. Until then, a nice soak in an onsen should be a good stress reliever. He smiled as he walked, kindly returning the greetings of the people he passed. Who knew all I had to do to get respect was leave Konoha? I should have done it years ago, but then he felt bad about what he thought. Leaving Konoha meant that he might never see his friends again. He couldn't go back on his promise to Sakura now that the bastard was a Konoha missing nin. He couldn't hang out with Shikamaru or challenge Koji to eating contests. He'd never really hung out with Ino, so he didn't miss her much. She was just like Sakura, but she didn't hit him over every little thing. That got him thinking, why did he even like Sakura, anyway? He always tried his best to get her to acknowledge him, but she would hit him and say something like, "Get away, Naruto baka. Suzuki-kun is the only one I want." But she hadn't said anything like that since he came back, so maybe she was over the team? Naruto sighed and found himself in front of his house, or rather, mansion. His senses were going crazy. That wouldn't be a problem, normally. But his door was open, and it was quiet. Something he didn't particularly like. He crept inside the house to find nothing but darkness. I need to find something that can allow only people I trust in here. Like a blood seal or something? Taking out a kumo, he walked further. He tried sensing for different chakra signatures, but he was never a sensor type. But his gut told him there was someone in the mansion. When he got to the living room, the lights turned on, and they yelled something he had never heard before as he threw his kumo. Surprise! A small group of kumo ninjas were scattered around the living room, looking at him in shock. Well, only one was, and that was Amwa. The kumo nearly embedded itself in his skull. It was protruding from the wall he was leaning against. Karui looked at her teammate and started laughing her head off. Everyone else followed suit, including Amwa himself, which left a confused-looking Naruto. Yujito stepped up to him, wiping a tear from her eye from laughing so hard. "That was classic, Naruto-san. But didn't the Raikage tell you that we were in here?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. Naruto shook his head, and the kunoichi sighed. She figured something like that. Leave it up to B's brother to try and get one of his own shinobi killed. "What's all this about, anyway?" Naruto asked. "Oh, it's your victory party, of course," she smiled. "A party? For me? But why?" He kept asking questions. He didn't know why people he hadn't known that long would do something like this. No one had ever thrown a party for him, not even on his birthdays. For becoming one of us, brat. It was Jei's idea. He said it would be a good welcoming and says congratulations, by the way. Yujito-sensei was the one who gathered all of us, and here we are, Karui said. Naruto smiled in pure happiness. He rubbed the back of his head and looked at the ground. "Thank you, Yujito-chan." "Chan," everyone yelled. A blonde man was snickering. "Hey, Yujito. I didn't know you like new guys that much. Is it because of your hot attitude?" "Shut it, Etsui," Yujito yelled, blushing. "What's wrong, kitten? You know you just want to get him in bed and just ravish him all night long," the nibby laughed. She always got a kick out of messing with her container. "Nibi. He's not my type. I hardly even know him, anyway." "Oh, we could get to know him, alright." That just made Yujito turn red before she was brought back to reality. "Anyway, Naruto. I'd like you to meet some people. Getting to know your allies is always a smart thing to do." She motioned him toward Itsui and a fair-skinned woman with a very large bust. "These two are Itsui and Samui," she said, pointing at the man and the woman. Naruto smiled and bumped fists with Itsui. And when he turned to look at Samui, his jaw dropped. She was obviously very beautiful. She had straight blonde hair and blue eyes. Her attire was a little revealing. She wore a very low-cut outfit with a mesh top underneath, a short skirt and red handguards, high boots, and what appeared to be a modified Kumagakure flak jacket that only covered her stomach. Naruto didn't see or hear them, but Amwa, Yujito, and Karui were watching the ordeal from a distance. When the blonde Kumo ninja saw Naruto looking at Samui's face, she snickered and held out her palm to the two cousins. They groaned and paid up. "Damn, I was hoping to get more candy with that," said Amwa. Before Naruto was caught staring for too long, he smiled at the woman and held out his hand. "Nice to meet you, Samui-san." She took his hand, and he kissed the top of it. After that, he grinned at her while she just stared at the boy in shock. No man had dared do that to her after she built a reputation for being cold. She wasn't really, but she was the quiet type who only offered insight when needed. "Likewise, namikaze-san," she said to him with her usual expressionless face. Itsui snickered. "Looks like we've got a playboy in our ranks, boys. You've got guts, kid. No man has gotten away with doing that to my sister. I'll let it slide this one time since he was trying to make a good first impression." "Not a bad way, though, namikaze-san," Samui said, still keeping her neutral face on. "Ahem, well, on to the others, Naruto-san," Yujito interrupted with a hint of jealousy in her voice. She grabbed him by his collar and began introducing the others present. After getting to know everyone a bit, they all left, giving him one last congratulations before he was left alone with Yujito. She was smiling at him, and he wondered why she didn't leave. She unrolled a scroll on the floor and unsealed his flak jacket. He smiled at the action, having completely forgotten about it. "Here. It should still fit you," she handed it to him while he took off his cloak. Yujito used this opportunity to get a look at his muscles before handing him the jacket. "Oh, so, kitten likes what she sees?" You could take him now. Just tell him you want to give him another present and lead him upstairs, Nibi insisted. Quiet, you horny feline, Yujito fired back. How's it look? Naruto asked, showing her his look with his arms out. She blushed a bit and smiled. Looking good. But, I've got to go, so I'll leave you with one last present, she said, giving him a peck on the cheek and leaving the mansion. Naruto just stood there, holding his cheek with a blush and an open mouth. I'm really starting to like it here, he laughed. Outside of Kumo 2 days later. I don't get it, Itaki. We were ordered to get the Kyuubi brat, so why aren't we down there? Kisame asked as he sat in a cave with the Uchiha. I received intel that my foolish little brother is coming to Kumo to try and kill him. I wish to see what skills he has gained and to see if my brother's hate is strong enough. Besides, Sasuke can tire Naruto-kun out, and we can get him, Itaki explained. Kisame grinned evilly. And here I thought you wanted to stage a coup against Leader Sama. But now that you mention that, that means I can get a crack at the snake team. Same Hata should be happy feasting on his chakra. Itachi nodded. Don't get overconfident, Kisame. He's not a Sunin just for show, but it should be interesting to watch. Do you think that Naruto-kun has gotten any stronger? The shark man shrugged. Knowing him? He's probably still the same from what you've told me. Then again, he defeated a top Chunin from Kumo, and they don't mess around. I wonder how he got so strong since your last encounter with him. Itachi, of course, knew how, but what was the point in letting his partner know that? It wasn't important anyway. Naruto would get strong enough one day to defeat him if he kept using the shadow clone method. All the boy would need is battle experience, and no one would stand a chance, except for Madara. That would take everything he'd have to stop the former Konoha founder. Maybe one day, but right now, he's far from that level. I give him a few more months of intense training or a few years before then, but that's only if he hasn't discovered the secret to the shadow clone. I wonder how my brother would react to that. Naruto was at his training grounds with Darui. He was working on trying to produce a Ranten ninjutsu. So far, he wasn't having much luck. Even with shadow clones, he wasn't making much progress. The exercise consisted of channeling both water and lightning elements at the same time to make the jutsu, but what Naruto didn't know how to do was channel water chakra into his seals because he had not mastered that part of his training yet. He'd have to start on that soon. Damn it! I can't use water chakra yet. Hey, what if I use my wind chakra? That might do something, Naruto thought and did as he theorized. He pushed wind chakra into his left hand and lightning chakra into his right and began forming seals. Then you exhale and use the right amount of chakra, he thought. Ranten, Riza Sakasu, Naruto yelled, and thin beams of chakra flew out of his hands. But they were not blue as Darui's were, they were black and white. He tried controlling them but found that it would take a toll on his chakra, so he stopped. Darui looked on in amazement. How did you do that? He asked. Well, I can't actually use water chakra fully yet until I master the manipulation training, so instead I used wind and then did what you told me. I'm just as surprised as you are about that, Naruto explained. Darui looked at his palms and found that they were not scarred as they should have been. When he first learned the technique, his palms were smoking for a couple of days before he was able to try the jutsu again. This kid is something else. Making black and white lightning is one thing, but in a Ranten? He's going to be a force to be reckoned with. The silver-haired Jonin looked at Naruto with his lazy expression. Pretty good, Naruto. I've never seen anyone do that before, not even among your clan. I think you're the first to do a different colored Ranten jutsu, but let me tell you what could have happened if you did not do it correctly. He warned. The reason that I use water and lightning is because that's the way the namikaze make the Ranten. I believed that that was the only way, but you proved that wrong. But if your theory had gone wrong, you could have seriously caused an electrical discharge inside your body that would have resulted in death. You're very lucky. Naruto gulped at that fact. I guess I should stop taking chances, huh? No, just tell me your idea first, and I'll see if it is good enough to try. The blonde nodded and began practicing the jutsu until Darui was called away to the raikage. That night, Naruto jumped into the king-sized bed he had in the master bedroom. He sighed in relaxation and pondered the day's events. His bloodline is different from others, his kenjutsu is getting better but still needs work. He's gotten better at the flying Raijin, but the most he can go is about 25 kilometers with about 2 kunao before he exhausts himself. The lightning release armor is taking more time than usual to master. Maybe it was because he wasn't using any shadow clones. All in all, his training was going great. But, for some reason, he couldn't help but feel as though something bad was going to happen soon. His instincts were usually never wrong either, but maybe he was just being paranoid. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean someone isn't out to get you, a booming voice spoke. Naruto shot right up and looked around the room when suddenly he felt dizzy and was met with darkness. He was now in the sewer that was his mindscape, the habitat of the Kyuubi no Yoko, a place he loathed to be in. Naruto sighed and walked down the hall until he was in the giant room that had a huge gaping hole with bars. One had a tag with the kanji 4 seal on it. The blonde walked up to the cage and waited until he was met with a pair of red eyes. "About time you got here." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What? No talk of how you're going to kill me, take control, and destroy Konoha. We're not in Konoha anymore, remember? I hate that place, and now that you're out, maybe we can come to some sort of arrangement regarding how we continue from here," the fox said, and Naruto's eyes scrunched up in confusion. "Arrangement? After all you've done to me, you expect me to just forgive you and work with you? I thought you were the smart one, you bastard Kitsune," Naruto yelled, his own eyes flashing red. The fox sighed. "Look, you know one Jinchuriki who works well with her tailed beast. I suggest we work together if we are to face the upcoming trials against Akatsuki and their true leader." "True leader? What are you talking about?" "As I'm sure you know, a man in an orange mask attacked your parents the night you were born, and when I was resurrected," he got a nod in reply. "But what you don't know is that the man who attacked was none other than an Uchiha. Madara Uchiha." Naruto's eyes widened. "How the hell? I may not be a historian, but I'm pretty sure that guy should be 6 feet under Konoha, right?" Kyuubi only shook its head. In his lifetime, he was able to become partially eternal since he claimed something that allows him to cheat death. The eternal Mangekyo Sharinan. He gained it by taking his own brother's eyes in order for him to reverse the negative effects it had on him. "What are you talking about? How exactly does that allow him to cheat death?" Naruto crossed his arms in confusion. The fox sighed. Why did he have to be stuck with someone who didn't know this already? Oh, that's right, Konoha is responsible for him not learning. To gain the Mangekyo Sharinan, an Uchiha has to pass a special requirement: to kill someone close to them. Naruto's eyes widened. But the negative effects of attaining this eye is that due to prolonged use, the user becomes blind. Madara almost did if he hadn't taken his brother's eyes, and is now the most powerful Uchiha in the world right now. "So, when Sasuke tried to kill me at Orochimaru's lair, it was all just for more power?" Naruto asked, his voice filled with disbelief. He had held on to a hope that a part of Sasuke would turn from this path and return to Konoha, but that hope was gone now. He understood one thing with absolute clarity: the next time he met his former teammate, he would end him. "That's right. But let's move on. The night Madara attacked your parents, he managed to separate me from your mother and set me free. Immediately after, a powerful and deeply layered genjutsu took over me, forcing me to attack Konoha. So you're saying the only reason my life has been hell is because some psychopath went after my parents?" Naruto's anger began to simmer. The Kyuubi simply gave a nod in response to the question. "I don't know his true motives yet, but he made it clear he wanted Konoha gone. He knew a Jinchuriki was at their most vulnerable during childbirth, and he chose that moment to attack. And that's when your life became a living hell. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it happened that way." The Kyuubi lowered its head in shame. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. The Lord of Demons, the most powerful tailed beast in existence, had just apologized to him. He was unsure how to react, but the apology seemed genuine. The blonde sighed. "Look, it wasn't your fault, so there's nothing to forgive. If anyone is to blame, it's Madara. Now, what was the deal you were proposing?" "It's an arrangement that will benefit both of us. I'll help you train within your mindscape and give you access to my power without any negative side effects. What I want in return is access to your senses, so I can finally feel again. And could you please change this mindscape? Living in a SEWER is so dreary." Before the Kyuubi could finish its sentence, Naruto closed his eyes, and the world around them shifted. In moments, they were in a wide, grassy field that looked like Konoha, with a mansion standing just a few feet away. The Kyuubi was out of its cage, now wearing a collar with the same seal tag. Naruto smirked at the fox's reaction. "How's that?" The Kyuubi was utterly stunned. It had wanted a change, but it never expected a pleasant meadow with a mansion that looked just like the Namikaze estate. "I'm impressed, Kit. Truly impressed. Now, about your training. I might be able to help you with your Rantan element. I can give you the knowledge to use the 3 elements of the storm." "3? But I thought you could only combine 2 to create a new one," Naruto said, scratching his head. "Ah, but that Darui guy doesn't have me sealed inside him, does he? There are multiple elements that create a storm, just like in nature. You've already figured out one combination on your own. What if you could control all 3? You'd be able to create and learn more jutsu from your ancestors. Speaking of which, I think it's about time you opened their library. Now that you're settled, you should have plenty of time to read and practice your clan's jutsu." "Yeah, I've been meaning to get to that," Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. "But I've been busy trying to do Rantan, and then there was that test earlier today. So I'll just send clones to the library while I sleep and release them in the morning. I can learn years worth of jutsu in one night," he said excitedly. The Kyuubi nodded. "Get some sleep, Kit. We'll begin your training tomorrow." Naruto woke up in his bed, seeing that only a few minutes had passed outside while he was in his mindscape. He wondered how many years of training he could get in one night but didn't want to get his hopes up. He crossed his fingers and summoned about 100 clones. All of you, go to the library and read for the night. If what Kuwabai said is true, we can't afford to waste time. They all saluted. You got it, boss. Then they left the room and began reading. Naruto lay back in his bed and slowly drifted off to sleep, preparing for the training he had planned for his element with Darui the next day. The next day, Naruto woke up after a full night of mind sparring with the beast known as the Kuwabai. Naruto stood no chance. The fox had lived for thousands of years and likely had an equal number of jutsu at its disposal. He got up and changed into his training gear, determined to make the most of his time because he knew something was going to happen soon. He didn't know when or where, but he felt that something was wrong. Maybe he was overthinking things, but when it came to him, it was probably best to assume such things since the Akatsuki and Orochimaru were still out there. The blonde went into his kitchen and made some eggs with pancakes and bacon, ensuring he was full before heading to his clan's library. Darui-sensei said to meet him at the training grounds inside the Raikage mansion. I wonder why he would build one inside, he thought, and then he went upstairs to find the door that said, Namikaze Library. He placed his blood on the seal and entered, finding his clones still reading books and scrolls. Boss, a clone yelled. Then all of their attention turned to him. Alright, put the books and scrolls away and dispel yourselves 10 at a time with a 10-second interval. They all nodded, and soon the room was filled with smoke. The usual quiet of a library was replaced by loud popping noises every time a clone was destroyed. Soon, he was gaining memories of the scrolls and books they had read. The scrolls contained instructions for many new Ranten jutsu he was sure Darui-sensei wouldn't know. There were also scrolls on Jakukan, Suten, Futon, and many more Raiten ninjutsu. He also found many different kenjutsu styles created by his clan. There were styles for using two swords at once, which appealed to Naruto since he had recently developed an interest in using his new blade. There were many notes on Fuinjutsu as well, including instructions on the basics of sealing arts and how to make basic tools like explosion tags and sealing scrolls. Naruto might know how to put things into a scroll, but actually making them would be a great asset, as he would never run out of scrolls and could carry everything he needed for battle or training trips. Wow, I didn't think they'd learn this much in one night. But what should I start with? Kuwabai started me on the basics of the fox fist taijutsu that he knows, he said to himself as he struck a thinking pose. Suddenly, he snapped his fingers. I'll start with sealing. Learning jutsu will be no problem with shadow clones, but I don't think that would work for Fuinjutsu. Let's get started. For the next 2 hours, he sat in the library practicing the basics of his clan's art. It was not easy. He practiced brush strokes to ensure the kanji seals were correctly aligned and made sure the array was set up properly. But nothing practice couldn't fix. Afterward, he walked to the training grounds where he was supposed to meet Darui. The trip would have been faster, but along the way, he was chased by his new legion of fangirls, and he thanked Kami none of them were kunoichi. That would have been even more of a hassle. When he finally got there, he saw his sensei talking to Samui. He was a little surprised to see her, as she didn't usually appear. Hey, Naruto, Darui said in his usual lazy tone, raising an open hand at the blonde Namikaze. Aheu, Naruto-san. I've been instructed to help you with kenjutsu, Samui said with her usual cold expression, but her voice didn't sound bad at all, at least not to Naruto. He always wondered why she rarely smiled. Hey, Naruto greeted back with a bright smile. He looked at Darui. So which one are we starting with? Ranten or kenjutsu? Samui quickly drew her sword and charged at Naruto. She began slashing, forcing the blonde to dodge until he pulled out his own sword and blocked some of her strikes. Not bad, but he needs to be faster, much faster, she thought. You mind giving me a warning next time? Naruto yelled at Samui. An enemy won't warn you. This is to get you ready, Samui said, her expression unchanged. You need to be faster. I held back, so I could have easily killed you. Naruto took it all in. He gripped his sword tighter and held it, pointed at his new teacher. If that's what you want. He charged. Then I'll give it to you, he yelled as he appeared in front of Samui. Her eyes widened at his new speed, but she still blocked his strikes. She was waiting for a chance to make him stumble, but he wasn't leaving many openings. She had to admit his offense was good, even for an amateur. But, Ken Renden, Samui yelled, and suddenly disappeared from Naruto's sight. She then appeared from behind and gave him barely a second before unleashing a barrage of slashes aimed at potentially dangerous areas. Fortunately for the Namikaze, his reflexes were always good, but he did end up with a few shallow cuts on his arms since Samui had superior speed. When the last, most powerful strike came, he was sent into the wall of the training field, creating a small crater. It knocked the air out of him. He looked at Samui, her cold expression still on her face. He wondered what kind of move that was. It was fast, unpredictable, and damaging. Something he would definitely want to learn. Once he regained his breath, he stepped out of the wall and made his way back. He stood in front of his new Kenjutsu teacher and waited for her to say something. "You were not bad," she said, making him smile. "But not good either. You have a solid offense until you come up against something more powerful. Your defense is poor. We'll work on that until you're assigned a team by Reikage-sama." Naruto nodded and got back into a stance. "I'm ready to go again," he said, determined. She nodded and attacked again. Another couple of hours passed, leaving a tired Naruto and Samui alone. Darui had been ordered to go to the Reikage mansion, so it was just the two of them, training. He made those hours count as he learned new defensive moves and even some of the Kenjutsu techniques Samui knew. He hadn't mastered them, but she was impressed with how quickly he grasped the concept of the techniques. It was as if he was born to be a sword master. He surprised her even more when he came up with moves she had no idea were possible. "He's impressive. If he keeps impressing me, I might just end up flirting with him. As I said before, she only has a cold expression. It doesn't mean she can't have fun. I thought a little bit of a flirty nature would be good for her anyway." Despite always losing to Samui, Naruto was having fun. In fact, it was the most fun he had since the training trip with the Erosenin. He missed messing with the old pervert, but this new training was beneficial for him too. He hadn't even known much about Kenjutsu until he got his new sword. "You're getting better, Naruto-san. You're at least at a low Chunin level with Kenjutsu now. But I'm not stopping until you're at my level," she said to him, smiling a bit. She rarely did that, but somehow, she couldn't help it around him. She now respected him as a fighter, so maybe that had something to do with it. What's more, he hadn't said anything about women not being capable kunoichi. "So, same time tomorrow?" Naruto asked. He really liked sparring with his new teacher. "I'd like that, but I'm still responsible for Amwa and Karui. Training and all that," she told him. Well, how about we all train together? You can use my clan's training grounds. That way, you're with your team and you can show me what I'm doing wrong at the same time," Naruto asked with a grin. It was a brilliant suggestion, if he did say so himself. Samui thought about it. There wasn't really a downside to this, but that didn't mean she couldn't take advantage of the offer. "Let me use your hot spring and give my shoulders a massage every now and then, and you've got a deal," she said back with a smirk. Naruto blushed at the massage part, but if it was for training, it was a small sacrifice. Besides, who wouldn't want to go along with massaging a beautiful woman like Samui? They'd have to be crazy, or a brooding emo with a superiority complex. He nodded, and she smiled at him again. The busted blonde looked good when she smiled. "Well, I have to go. It was nice training with you, Naruto-san. Karui, and I will be here tomorrow at the same time," Samui said and shunshine out of the field. Now the blonde Jinchuriki was alone, left to his own devices. What to do? Well, I could learn more jutsu or work on perfecting the Rasengan. According to Tio-san, it's incomplete. But I want to be able to do it with one hand before I start on that. And then there's the Hiraishin, man, what should I start on first? Then he suddenly smacked his palm on his forehead. "I'm an idiot. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," he yelled. The field was covered in smoke, and his clones, all 200 of them, were waiting for their orders. "Alright, 50 of you work on doing the Rasengan with one hand. Another 50, go look for new jutsu and learn them in the library. Once you find some, come here and practice them. I'll need another 50 to work on more advanced chakra control exercises. Practice them along with the ninjutsu group. And the last group will work on the Hiraishin. Now let's get going," he yelled, but none of them moved. "What are you going to be doing, boss?" a clone asked. "Working on Kenjutsu, of course. You guys can't do it since you can't transfer muscle memory. Now get," he yelled again. They saluted and did as they were told. The real Naruto looked up at the sky. It's still early too. Man, there isn't really much to do anymore. At least in Konoha, I could do missions. Sasuke was sitting quietly in his room, ready to go to Kumo and take the power he believed was rightfully his. Killing Naruto would just be the next step in his quest for vengeance. He would avenge his clan, even if it meant killing the only person who had ever seen him for who he truly was back in Konoha. That thought made him scoff. Naruto was an idiot, and he always would be. The world would likely be better off without him. He was happy to oblige. Then his door opened, and Kabuto walked in. His usual smirk was gone, and he didn't adjust his glasses. This to me is signs that he was not in a relaxed state. "Orochimaru-sama is postponing the trip to Kumo," he said, and that made Sasuke snap his head at him, his Sharingan blazing. "Why?" the Avenger yelled. "What is his reason for this? We are low on forces right now, and going against Kumogakure would be suicide for us, even if we are led by a Sannin. He just needs more time to gain more shinobi forces before we leave. That way, the plan he is working on will be foolproof," Kabuto said. "That, and his health isn't getting any better. If the change isn't done soon, he will die, permanently." Sasuke scoffed. "Very well. But it had better not take long." "I don't like waiting," he said, and the silver-haired medic nodded and left. Once he was alone again, he charged up a Chidori and hit the wall in front of him with it. He needed to let out some of his anger. Hokage Mansion Office. Tsunade sighed as she sat at her desk, sipping her sake. Usually, she would be gulping it down, but she had been a little depressed since Naruto's banishment. That, and Shizun would yell at her again for being irresponsible. She found herself at odds with the council, specifically its civilian arm. They relentlessly demanded that Naruto return to Konoha to restore the Namikaze clan, arguing it was the Yandame's ancestral home. She retorted that as Hokage, she was not subject to their demands and that they held no real authority. This was a mess of their own making, and Tsunade was determined to make them regret it. Konoha was suffering as a whole. Since the blonde was forcibly exiled, the economy had taken a sharp nosedive. The shinobi refused to take on missions unless directly ordered, fearing they might also be exiled for any failure. Trade routes to other nations, including Suna, Nami no Kuni, and several smaller countries Konoha relied on for food and other goods, were severed. A few still remained, but Tsunade was astonished by the extent to which Naruto's banishment had impacted those countries. She began to investigate, as the record she had read indicated Naruto hadn't been a major player in missions to those nations. Instead, the reports credited Uchiha Sasuke with all the work. Upon reviewing the mission reports, she discovered several inconsistencies and summoned the remaining members of Team 7. Kakashi and Sakura were taken aback by the report's contents. The silver-haired Jonin was particularly surprised, as he had written them and noticed names had been altered in nearly all of them, even the D-rank missions. Tsunade called in Shizun to ask where the reports went after the Jonin-sensei submitted them. They are sent to the Shinobi Council for review, then filed in order and kept under lock and key, she explained, receiving a nod from the Hokage before returning to her work. The blonde Sunin sighed, realizing that only 3 people besides herself had access to those files and reports, the elders of Konoha. One of them was illegally rewriting mission reports, a serious offense since the documents were only meant for review, not editing. She was now waiting for the 3 old advisors, whom she affectionately called Old Wrinkles. They were largely unhelpful, while Koharu took her job seriously. Danzo and Homura always seemed to be pursuing their own agendas. Her office door opened, and Shizun's head peeked in. "The elders are here to see you, Hokage-sama," she stated simply. "Send them in," Tsunade replied, nodding her assent. Koharu, Homura, and finally Danzo entered the office, curious as to why the Hokage had summoned them. The 2 male advisors appeared to be impatient. "I have called you here to discuss a matter of security," Tsunade began. "But first, I must address the village's steadily declining economy." She was about to continue when an old war hawk cut her off. "What does our security have to do with our economy, Tsunade?" Danzo asked, causing a subtle vein to throb on her forehead. "That's Hokage-sama to you, Danzo, and I was getting to that." "Now be quiet," she said. He scoffed. "Our trade routes with several countries have been cut off since they learned of Uzumaki Naruto's exile. This made me wonder how one boy could have such an impact on those nations." She pressed on. "That's when I began reading the mission reports and called in the remaining members of Team 7, Harano Sakura and Heite Kakashi. Kakashi read them and said they were not what he had written. I then asked Shizun where the reports went and discovered that only the people in this room had access to those files," she said, and a silence followed. Danzo expertly concealed his unease with a placid expression but was inwardly seething. This was merely a contingency plan to ensure Konoha had a proper weapon. If Uzumaki wasn't performing adequately as a ninja, he could have used it as leverage for the council to hand the boy over to him for training. But it was irrelevant now, as the boy had been banished and was now on the War Hawks hit list. Homura was not as composed as Danzo. He was sweating profusely. He had carried out the edits on Danzo's orders, hoping to secure his place as the most trusted advisor to the new Hokage, Danzo. Koharu showed no emotion, acting almost like a robot, which was unusual for her as she was typically the more emotional of the 3. "Care to explain?" Tsunade asked. "We have no idea what you're talking about, Hokage-sama. None of us have been in that building with those files for quite some time," Danzo said in a convincing tone, but he knew Tsunade didn't believe him. "Yes, that's right, isn't it, Koharu?" Homura asked the female advisor. "Yes, that is correct," she replied in a robotic voice. Danzo and Homura both nodded. Tsunade sighed. "I knew this wouldn't be easy, but..." she began, then summoned Shizun back into her office. "Please bring in the shinobi who guards the mission reports for Team 7. "Yes," Shizun responded, quickly returning with a chinin. About 10 minutes later, a brown-haired man in the standard chinin outfit of umbu-style pants and a flak jacket entered. His name was Taisuke Furukawa. The chinin saluted the Hokage, who put him at ease and asked why he had been summoned. "Have you seen any of the advisors in the past 2 to 3 years?" she inquired. Taisuke raised an eyebrow and then nodded. "Yes. Homura-sama visited a few times, saying he needed to review some of Kakashi-san's reports." The chinin had a perfect memory of who entered the vault and when, which was why Kakashi had chosen him for the job. Tsunade glared at the elder. She then looked back at Taisuke and dismissed him. He saluted and left. The blonde Kage rose from her desk and moved around it, glaring at all the advisors, convinced this was a plot to get Naruto out of Konoha. Boo. Restrain Homura and interrogate him. Have Ibiki handle it. He could use a new toy, she commanded, and a Nico, bear, and hawk masked Boo appeared. They acknowledged the order and took the now struggling elder away. The Kage's attention shifted to the two remaining advisors. You two may go, but if I ever catch you meddling with the reports or any other paperwork again, you had better be ready for the consequences, she threatened with a powerful killing intent. Even Danzo nearly collapsed from the weight of her power. Koharu was also sweating. Dismissed, she said, and the two left. Tsunade sat back down and leaned into her chair. Even when Naruto isn't here, they still try to screw him over. That thought spurred her. She was the Hokage. No one should be able to get away with such things, even if they seemed minor. It was on this day that she resolved to clean house within the council and many other parts of the village. She let out an evil chuckle. Those bastards won't know what's coming. Danzo was back in his office, his teeth clenched in rage. He had not anticipated that one of his pawns, Homura, would be caught doing something so trivial, and he knew that Homura didn't have the mental fortitude to withstand Ibiki. What was he going to do now? He knew his forces were diminished since the Sandaime had disbanded Root, but he was slowly rebuilding it. Still, he needed a few more months to get a sufficient number of ninja under his control. The old war hawk then began to strategize his next move. Maybe he could somehow get Koharu, whom he controlled with a self-made seal, to convince the Shinobi Council that the crime was not that severe. After all, who cared if a few mission reports were edited? It wouldn't be simple, but he hoped they would listen. If not, he would have to start his little coup sooner than he had planned. 3 months later, Konoha. The Konoha 10-1 were currently at a training field, working together to improve their techniques and teamwork in case they were sent on missions together. It was a very clever strategy, thought up by the usually quiet Shino. All of them had been training relentlessly since the blonde known as Naruto was exiled because of the mission to retrieve Sasuke from Orochimaru's hideout. They all believed the reason was foolish, but the civilian council was foolish. Even when the truth of the blonde's heritage was concerned. The truth about Naruto's parents was revealed to the entire village, and to say the civilians were in an uproar would be an understatement. They began shouting that it was a lie when Tsunade made the announcement at the Hokage mansion. A quick but powerful dose of killing intent from the busty Kage straightened them out and made them see the truth. She asked them how they could be so blind. She told them to compare the Yondaime statue to Naruto, without his whiskers, and see the resemblance. A collective gasp proved that they now believed it to be true. Of course, there were still a few who didn't believe and yelled that it was just the work of the fox to make him look like their hero to mock them. Tsunade had never been so furious. When she began to hear the non-believers violate the Sandaime's law, she started imprisoning them for long periods because the last thing she needed right now was more pressure from the council. She made sure they didn't get a trial, which angered the council and made her happy. But back to the Konoha 10. Most were newly promoted shinin, while a few others, like Hyuga Niji, were jonin. They were all becoming stronger, using their loyal blonde friend as motivation. The one who truly used him as motivation was Hyuga Hinata. She had been training since the day Naruto was banished. Even Hayashi was impressed with her progress. She didn't rival him in the gentle fist, but she was now beating her younger sister, Hanabi. She was even approaching Niji's level of chakra control and gentle fist power. Shino always trained hard but honored his comrade by keeping the others safe and mastering his clan's techniques in jutsu. He had even developed some new hybrid insects that allowed him to drain his enemy's chakra slightly faster than normal. His father, Shivi, was stoically impressed with his son's new abilities. Kiba, the self-proclaimed rival of the Dobe, started learning ninjutsu to help him in case his clan's jutsu failed. It was actually a smart move, as the others pointed out. It turned out he was a Doton user, which was common in the Inyazuka clan, but he was still working on mastering elemental chakra manipulation. Shikamaru felt bad about Naruto's departure since they used to hang out at the academy and watch clouds with Chuji. He found it troublesome to train but couldn't help himself. He wanted to become stronger for his friend. He began taking taijutsu lessons with Guy and Lee to address his weakness in that area and created a few of his own shadow techniques. Tsunade was actually considering recommending him for the Jonin exam if he continued. Ino wasn't particularly close to Naruto but still felt bad for her fellow blonde. No one deserved to be wrongly punished like that. By now, she was working with her father in the interrogation department. She got to see some of her father's techniques in action. However, she did not like seeing any of Mitarashi Anko's techniques at all. Some of them really grossed her out. Chuji had actually stopped eating for a while because he was in a state of depression. Naruto was the first person he met who didn't judge him for his weight. It was through him that he met Shikamaru and became best friends with both of them. His family grew concerned and convinced him not to be sad for his friend, but to get stronger for him instead. So he did just that and began increasing his knowledge of clan jutsu and creating some variations of his own. Sakura, the last member of her age in Team 7, was depressed for a long time. She kept thinking it was her fault her friend and teammate was banished. If she hadn't been hurt, the council wouldn't have had anything to use as leverage against him when they banished the blonde. Thanks to Ino and Tsunade, she was pulled out of her funk and began approaching her medical arts in a more productive way. She created her own taijutsu style, which was still a work in progress, that allowed her to break down a person to such an extent that not even Tsunade could heal her enemies. She was able to test this new taijutsu on some enemy Oto ninja who tried to ambush them on one of her missions. That guy was definitely not going to be ambushing for Orochimaru ever again. Lee, also being a rival to the blonde, started training even harder, if that was possible, and began learning Jonin-level taijutsu techniques from his sensei. He was actually becoming a master of taijutsu. Guy was now having a real challenge in defeating his student. Tenten never truly got to know Naruto, but she did admire some of his qualities. She considered him to be a very unique, yet true, shinobi. He had the will of fire deep within him and protected his friends with fierce determination. She only started noticing him after the Chunin exams all those years ago, as it was his fight that transformed Niji into a new man. Now, he no longer spoke of fate and was on good terms with Hinata. However, the blonde didn't affect her enough to go into overdrive with her training. She was pestered by her green jumpsuit-clad sensei and teammate about getting more serious. So, just to shut them up, she began learning ninjutsu and discovered she had a lightning element. This was useful for her weapons, even though she was still working on chakra manipulation training. But now, Kiba and Shikamaru were sparring to improve their techniques in jutsu. The Inyazuka started using ninjutsu in the fight, making Shikamaru dodge left and right from the repeated shots of the Earth-style Earth Dragon Bullet. The Nara sighed. So troublesome. He muttered lazily as he ran around the training field, trying not to get hit by the mud bullets from the jutsu. Hey, what's wrong, Shika? Don't like having mud in your hair, Kiba taunted, but was inwardly sighing as his chakra reserves were getting low. He eventually ran out and was bound by Shikamaru's shadow possession jutsu. The Cloud Watcher walked up to his comrade. Your strategy could use some work, Kiba. Even Naruto wouldn't blindly waste his chakra on a jutsu that would repeatedly miss, he said, unaware of the blonde's rapidly growing improvement. Akamaru barked at his master from beside him. The dog had been staying away from the jutsu Kiba kept using. Yeah, I get what you're saying, boy. I'll make sure to do better next time, Shikamaru, Kiba said, rubbing the back of Akamaru's head when he was released from the jutsu. They walked back to the others, who were mostly standing. Others like Hinata, Ino, and Sakura were sitting and talking. They had grown closer, helping each other with their problems and techniques. You're improving your accuracy a bit there, Kiba-san Tenten said to him with a smile. The dog-like ninja rubbed the back of his head. Thanks, but it drains my chakra too fast. Why can't I have chakra reserves like Naruto? He yelled at himself, crossing his arms. The others just laughed. Kiba was no Naruto, but some of his qualities were in him, and that was a good reminder for the other Chunin in Jonin. Speaking of him, how do you think he's doing in Kumo? I heard he became a Chunin just a few days after he got there, Ino said. Everyone was shocked to hear that, as they didn't get many updates about Naruto since they weren't on good terms with Kumo. Tsunade would just assure them he was fine where he was. Whoa, so the dope finally got promoted, huh? Damn, now I have to train harder so he won't outshine me, Kiba yelled, shaking his fist. He was promptly slapped on the back of his head by an annoyed Niji. You don't always have to yell, Kiba, he said in his usual, but polite, Hyuga tone. Kiba rubbed the bump that had formed on his head to ease the pain. Fine, but what about him being promoted? Come on, you have to tell us, Ino, Sakura said, a little happier at the news of her friend's promotion. I heard from a reliable source that Naruto had to take Kumo's unique rank assessment test and fight one of their Chunin. I don't know his name, but I know that Naruto put on a good show and got promoted. Nothing specific on what he did though, the Yamanaka said, a finger on her lip at the end. She was curious how Naruto had won the fight. YOSH. Naruto-kun's flames of youth are still burning brightly, Lee yelled, and was then slapped on the back of his head by Tenten. The air crackled as the bun-haired Chunin sighed, her brow twitching. Geez, can't you just calm down for a single day? Her teammate, in response, simply offered his trademark grin and a confident thumbs up. No can do, he proclaimed, and a collective bead of sweat trickled down everyone's face. Why did Guy-sensei have to infect Lee with his chaotic youth philosophy? Shikamaru let out a weary sigh. Anyway, if Naruto's doing well, that's all that really matters, right? At least he's being treated better. A chorus of nods followed. I'm still shocked he was the fourth Hokage's son, though. That one really caught me off guard. Everyone in the group agreed silently. While the man had his share of enemies, Naruto should have at least been told about his parents, rather than discovering the truth on the day he was leaving the village. They all wondered why the third Hokage hadn't revealed it while he was still alive. Well, I've got to run. My shift at the weapons shop is starting soon, Tenten said, waving goodbye as she took her leave. The rest of the group followed suit, dispersing to their own activities with a shared understanding to reconvene once their missions were complete. They were the only ones who actively sought out missions, driven by a desire to keep their skills from stagnating. Beep, beep, beep. Naruto jolted upright in bed, sweat beading on his forehead. Ah, damn it. I was just getting to the good part, he groaned, looking around his room. The Nine-Tails voice echoed in his mind. You know, if you're going to keep dreaming about her, why don't you just ask her out? I know you've been wanting to for at least 2 months. But what if she says no and then doesn't want to talk to me anymore? I couldn't handle that, Naruto shouted, wildly gesturing with his arms. He had been having similar dreams about both Yujito and Samui, but he couldn't imagine Yujito having feelings for him. Samui, on the other hand, had given him subtle hints. She would blush whenever he gave her massages, sometimes even letting out a small moan of pleasure. He always felt awkward when that happened. The blonde namikaze got dressed in his ninja gear, preparing for his final training session with Darui-sensei. He'd been training relentlessly for the past 3 months, and the results were undeniable. He had mastered the Fox Fist Taijutsu much quicker than the Nine-Tails had anticipated, thanks to the help of his Mindscape training. The skills he gained there transferred directly to his real body, and he had completely mastered the style last month. He could now confidently say his fighting style was as unpredictable as he was. Naruto was proud to report that his ninjutsu was at an elite jonin level. With his affinities for water, lightning, and wind release, he knew a wide variety of jutsu. While most were offensive, he had also learned a few defensive ones, knowing they would be essential. His kenjutsu was now on par with Samui's. By practicing all the moves she taught him in his Mindscape, he was able to master her techniques and give her a run for her money. She still won most of their spars due to her greater experience, though he had managed to win a few times himself. Naruto had now mastered the Flying Thunder God technique and was working on the Raiznan. He could now perform it with one hand and had even created a wind release variation. Since he had mastered elemental manipulation for his affinities, he also created lightning and water release Raiznans that could be shaped into different weapons. It was a challenge to maintain both chakra manipulation and shape transformation at the same time. As a reward, the Nine-Tails allowed Naruto to sign the Kitsune summoning contract. He hadn't even known one existed, but it turned out the Nine-Tails was the boss and let him become the summoner. The beast told him that he would start his Fox Sage training when he was ready, a day that was getting closer with each passing day. His new favorite art, besides ninjutsu, was fuinjutsu. He had surpassed Jireya's level and could now proudly call himself a seal master, a title his clan would be proud of. He even used it for his own training, using resistance and gravity seals to increase his strength and speed. His speed was now rivaled only by the Raikage, making him the fastest person alive since Minato's death. However, when Naruto used his lightning release armor, he was slightly faster. Speaking of his lightning release armor, he had discovered it was unique. When he activated it a few months ago, the blue electricity turned a brilliant golden color with blue lightning arcing around him. The Raikage was stunned and immediately challenged the younger blonde to a spar, which Naruto happily accepted. All in all, he was a happy and powerful ninja who brought pride to the hidden cloud village. He arrived at his training grounds and saw Darui standing alone. The man simply raised a hand, his usual way of greeting. Naruto returned the gesture with a grin. "Hey, sensei, where's Samui-chan?" Naruto asked, his curiosity piqued. Darui chuckled to himself. He found it amusing how close Naruto had become to the Ice Queen of the Hidden Cloud, a title only rivaled by Konoha's Kurenaui. She had a mission to attend to with her team. She'll be back in a few days. Anyway, it's time for the final phase of your storm release manipulation. Storm release manipulation was the only thing Naruto still struggled with. Since it wasn't an element he was naturally familiar with, he had to rely solely on scrolls and Darui's guidance. But today, he was finally going to master it. "You see those dark clouds above us?" the silver-haired Jonin asked. Naruto looked up and nodded. "If I'm right, you should be able to control them and create real lightning, not just chakra-made lightning. Real, natural, and more devastating lightning." Naruto's eyes widened in awe. The blonde nodded and raised his hands, palms facing the clouds. Gritting his teeth, he began to concentrate. Blue chakra enveloped his body, quickly shifting to a golden color as he unintentionally activated his lightning release armor. The clouds above him began to darken, and thunder boomed. Bright flashes of lightning erupted within the clouds. A bolt struck the ground near Naruto, but he remained unfazed, his focus absolute. He didn't even notice it. Another bolt hit him directly, but it didn't harm him. He opened his eyes, which had now turned the same golden color as his armor, and pointed his hands at one of the walls of his training ground. The effect was instantaneous. The same bolt of lightning that had struck Naruto shot from his hands, hitting the wall and destroying a large chunk of it. Darui was amazed. He never expected Naruto to become a living lightning rod, but it was incredibly effective. Naruto's armor faded, and he saw his sensei clapping with a rare smile on his face. Congratulations, Naruto. You have now mastered storm release manipulation. If you learn more jutsu from your clan scrolls, you will truly be a namikaze, he said, bumping fists with the blonde. And Umbu appeared beside Darui. Reikage-sama requests your presence, Darui-san. Please get to the Reikage mansion as soon as you can, the tiger-masked ninja said before disappearing in a shunshin. The silver-haired jonin sighed. Again? Man, this is the third time this week. How dull. Anyway, Samui-san and Yujito-san said to meet them later for a celebration. Said they knew you'd pass. Darui chuckled and then disappeared in a shunshin of black lightning. Naruto grinned, eager to celebrate with his two favorite girls from the hidden cloud. He always met them after missions at their favorite restaurant, which served a wide variety of foods, including ramen. It wasn't as good as Ichiraku's, but it was still good. Time to go then, he said to himself, disappearing in a flash of black and white lightning. He called it his storm release shunshin, a unique version that only he could perform. Orochimaru's lair in Rice Country. The sickly snake Sunin sat on his throne, observing the 350 of the best sound ninja he had gathered from all over the elemental countries. With this small army, he planned to attack the hidden cloud village and get Sasuke to kill Naruto. Then, he would seize the opportunity to make Sasuke his new vessel. His plan was flawless. He sent Kabuto to tell the Uchiha the news, knowing he would be pleased, even if he didn't show it. The silver-haired medic nin opened the door to Sasuke's room, finding him brooding on his bed. He sat on the edge, his elbows on his knees and his fingers laced in front of his face. Always with the brooding. It's almost as annoying as Naruto-kun. What do you want? Sasuke demanded, his onyx eyes shifting to Orochimaru's second-in-command. The forces are ready. We're setting off for the hidden cloud in 2 days, so get prepared, Kabuto said, adjusting his glasses before leaving. The Uchiha smirked and resumed his brooding. In just 2 days, he would finally gain the Mangekyo Sharingan and get the power to kill Itachi. He just needed to be patient for a little longer. Well, there you have it, guys. I know it's not much of a chapter, but I just needed a filler to show where Naruto's skills were, and I decided to have the Konoha 10 give their input on the blonde's banishment. Since there are only 10 members left of the Konoha 11, with Sasuke and Naruto now out, it's now the Konoha 10. I hope you guys didn't have to read all the way here to find that out. Reikage's office, the next day. Are you certain about this, B? I asked the man standing before him, his expression deadly serious. The man had the same platinum blonde hair as A, styled identically. He had the dark skin tone common in the hidden cloud, wore black, oval-shaped sunglasses, and his village's forward protector with a white cloth. His left shoulder was marked with a kanji tattoo that read iron. He wore the standard one-strap flak jacket of the hidden cloud, a long red rope belt around his waist, shinobi sandals, and a white scarf. This was Killer B, the Reikage's brother and the Jinchuriki of the Eight Tails. B nodded, his arms crossed. He, too, was serious, a rare sight for him. His usual demeanor was carefree, filled with his Enka rapping, but this situation was too grave to act that way. How many? And for how long? A asked, lacing his fingers and resting his elbows on his desk. They were separate. The group I saw had at least 10 shinobi. I couldn't tell their ranks from my position in the mountains. There could be more. I estimate them to be about a day away, the Eight Tails Jinchuriki reported. I hummed, contemplating the situation. Why would a squad from the Hidden Sound village be so close to the Hidden Cloud's borders? Were they planning an attack? If so, he needed to prepare the village's defenses. Did they see you, B? The muscular Reikage asked. B shook his head, then grinned. They can't see me when I hide, because I've got ninja stealth on my side, the younger brother rapped, waving his arms for emphasis. The opportunity for a rap was too good to pass up. The blonde Kage's eyebrow twitched. Not a day went by without B coming up with one of his silly Enka raps. Get serious about this, B, he yelled. His brother immediately complied. Get Naruto, Samui, and Yujito in here. Killer B nodded and disappeared in a shunshin of lightning. Once the Eight Tails container left, A sighed and leaned back in his chair. I'd say I'm too old for this shit, but then I'd sound like an old man. He stared at his door. You can stop eavesdropping and come in, Mabby. He smirked as he heard her let out a high-pitched squeak before entering, a blush on her face from embarrassment. He had sent her out when B arrived with that serious expression. The Cage knew she was listening, and he was sure his brother did, too, but since she was essentially his advisor, he let her. This way, he wouldn't have to repeat anything. The silver-haired woman named Mabby took her usual spot standing by his right shoulder. Why did you beget Naruto-kun and the others here, Reikage-sama? She asked, her tone curious. Naruto-kun, is it now, Mabby-san? He chuckled, seeing her blush again. Anyway, I want to get some information from him before I do anything. But I'm also wondering what that snake, Orochimaru, is trying to do with this. For all we know, this could be a full-blown invasion. Mabi nodded. I think it would be wise to assume that, Reikage-sama. I wouldn't put it past the Sunin to try and invade us, just like he tried to with Konoha a few years ago. But I can't think of his motives, she said after gathering her thoughts. She saw him nod and then straighten up in his chair. She knew why. She felt a few chakra signatures approaching. A second later, B appeared back in the office, followed by Naruto, Samui, and Yujito. Naruto and Yujito both wore confused, yet curious expressions, while Samui's face showed no emotion, which was not surprising. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki was the first to speak. What's going on, A-san? I was in the middle of training, he said, tilting his head slightly. Naruto was confused. He was never called into the office without a reason. If he was, it was usually because the Nine-Tails training methods had gotten a little out of hand. This doesn't leave the room unless I say otherwise, understand? The dark-skinned Kage's tone was authoritative. All of his shinobi, except for B, stood up straighter, waiting for him to explain. Sound ninja were spotted by B. Approaching the village quickly, he began. Naruto, Yujito, and Samui gasped, a reaction that surprised him from the cold kunoichi. The group he saw had at least 10 ninja and is about a day away. If B hadn't seen them, we would have never known they were coming. He watched as the three of them fell into deep thought. Naruto had already guessed one reason why Orochimaru would suddenly try to invade the hidden cloud. The blonde assumed that Suzuki had either demanded or convinced the snake to come here so he could try to gain the Mangekyo Sharingan. That bastard of an Uchiha will regret the day he chose to invade our new home for that despicable dojutsu. The Nine Tails roared from behind its seal. Naruto nodded in agreement. Both Yujito and Samui were thinking along the same lines as Naruto, since he had told them both about how Suzuki had threatened to kill him to gain the next level of the Sharingan. It was the only reason they could think of for why the Hidden Sound village would have a squad, and who knows how many more, so close to the Hidden Cloud's borders. The blonde namikaze was the first to speak his thoughts. I think I know why the snake is attacking us, Reikage-sama. Raised an eyebrow, both bewildered and curious. He was bewildered that Naruto had used such a respectful title and curious about what the blonde thought. Go on. I think it's because of Uchiha Suzuki, Naruto said, and heard the Reikage groan in annoyance. Suzuki has always wanted the power to kill his brother, and to do that, he needs to kill me. It's the only way for him to get the same eyes as his brother, Itake the Mangekyo Sharingan, the blonde explained. If that's the case, then we need to strike before they get to us, Yujito interjected. Samui nodded in full agreement with the strategy. Letting them destroy our village wouldn't be cool, she said, her tone and expression unchanged. The Reikage seemed to disagree, gritting his teeth at them. And how do you expect us to do that when our censor ninja haven't even reported anything to us yet? We're lucky we were even informed of this attack, he yelled, and watched them lower their heads in thought. He took a few moments to calm himself down. The last thing he wanted was to lose his head before an invasion. Samui-san, what level do you think Naruto-san is at right now? B asked, breaking his unusual silence. He was laughing inwardly at the shocked look on his student's face. Well, she said, propping her chin on her hand as if in deep thought. I'm a high umbu level kunoichi and he gives me a pretty good run for my money when we spar, so he's probably around a low to mid umbu level at the moment. Why do you ask? B-sensei. Samui finished, her voice tinged with curiosity as she addressed her teacher. B smirked, then flashed a wide grin at everyone. Then why don't we just take the fight to them before they get to us? We take them out now and they won't be a fuss, he rapped, and almost everyone broke out in a cold sweat over the terrible rhyme. The only one who didn't was Naruto, who just laughed in amusement. But when they had recovered from the awful rap, the meaning of his words dawned on them, and their eyes went wide. I was the first to speak his mind on what his brother had just said. Didn't you just hear what I said, B? We have no way of knowing how to find their numbers, the Kage said to the guardian of Kumo, expecting to see that foolish grin vanish from his face. But he was taken aback when B didn't so much as flinch at the comment. You won't have to send a huge force at the snake, bro. Just send us 4 to take out the leaders, yo. We can use our tailed beasts to find their chakra signatures quicker than you can say no. The Haxabee's container rapped again to the Reikage, who hummed to himself, clearly considering the plan. I actually thought it was a good plan. Take out the leaders of a large force, and the subordinates would fall into disarray. He was sure that B could take on the Sunin and was also confident that Naruto, Samui, and Yujito could hold their own against the snake subordinates. As he thought of Orochimaru's subordinates, he pictured the Uchiha traitor who was among them. Suzuki was an unknown to him because he didn't know how strong he was at the moment. He sighed to himself, realizing that it couldn't be helped for now. I'll just have to rely on them to be able to handle themselves for once, the Kage thought, then looked up at the 4 blondes. All right. You have my permission to go along with B's plan. Be ready to leave within the hour. And if any of you die, I'll drag you back from the Shinigami himself and kill you again. Dismissed, he yelled, and they all saluted him and vanished in a shunshin. Naruto took a little longer though, because Mabi gave him a quick peck on the cheek for good luck, and then he disappeared in his lightning-style shunshin with a slight blush on his cheeks, which made us smirk at him. He waited until he was sure everyone was gone before deciding to tease her a bit. You know, I was just kidding when I said you could be a possible candidate for Naruto in the Ninja Registration Act 6 months ago, right? The Raikage said with a playful tone to his silver-haired assistant. Mabi blushed a little, then quickly returned to her desk outside his office, her eyebrows twitching at how A was laughing at her. Stupid old man, she thought to herself. 20 minutes later, Kumo front gate. B had been waiting for at least 5 minutes for the rest to show up. The others were most likely getting into their stealth gear for the mission, which was a smart move. He would have changed gear, too, but he considered himself too much of a badass to do such a thing. That overconfidence of yours is going to be the end of you, B, the Haxabi wisely said to his container. Yo, it's not overconfidence, cause I am a badass, FO show. The guardian of Kumo rapped in his head, but on the outside, he was still using his arms to make the rap look more official. He was lucky that people saw him do that whenever he was in town, so they paid it no mind. Anyone else, and they would assume he had just broken out of an insane asylum. B got an annoyed groan from his tenant. The Haxabi wasn't a fan of the dark-skinned Jinchuriki's Enka-style rapping. It annoyed the tailed beast so much that he had to maintain his own mental block so he wouldn't have to hear his container's incessant thoughts about new raps. It was all the man thought about. He only talked to B when he needed to and nothing more. That was their relationship, and it worked for them. The Haxabi's container was interrupted from thinking of new rhymes by the three presences that made themselves known behind him. He knew who they were because he had been waiting for them to start the mission. B turned his head with a grin across his face. They had indeed put on some new gear for the mission. Naruto had chosen to wear a Kumo-style umbu outfit that consisted of a loose, black long-sleeve shirt and matching loose-fitting pants. He wore the white, one-strapped Kumo flak jacket over the shirt. He wore the classic black shinobi sandals on his feet since he was used to them. On his forearms and shins were bracers that were white with black trim. To complete his outfit was the cloak his father gave him, waving wildly behind him. Samui wore her old umbu outfit that looked the same as Naruto's, but she had to adjust her flak jacket a bit because of her well-endowed assets on her chest. But unlike Naruto, she chose to wear a mask over her face that reminded the nine-tailed fox's container of Kakashi's since it covered everything but her eyes. Yujito had also put on Kumo's umbu outfit, but hers had a slightly different color scheme. It was black like her two partners, but hers had dark blue tiger-like stripes that licked the edges of both her shirt and pants. She had also put two of the same marks on each of her cheeks, making them look like whiskers. The three looked at each other to see how they looked. Samui and Yujito both lightly blushed at Naruto's outfit because it made him look almost heroic in their opinion. Although, they were thankful that we couldn't see their blushes, thanks to Samui's mask and Yujito's face paint. Naruto was able to hold back his blush from the way his two female friends looked in their new gear, but it was only barely that he was able to. After all, they were two of the most beautiful women in Kumogakure and also two of the deadliest. Two things he liked in kunoichi who took their careers seriously. You look good in the outfit we got you for mastering lightning style, Naruto-kun, Yujito said with a smirk because she got the blush she knew he was fighting to hold back to come out on his whiskered cheeks. I agree with Yujito, Samui said with an unusual smirk of her own. It fits you well, she finished as she crossed her arms under her breasts, unintentionally lifting them up at Naruto, which made his face go even redder. Thank you, Samui-chan and Yujito-chan, Naruto stuttered before they all turned to B, who was still grinning at them, and waited for their orders. Killer Bee turned back around and had Haxabi try to find the largest chakra signatures around the village's border. He knew that Orochimaru and his henchmen were most likely masking their chakra, but they were still no match for the Haxabi's sensing abilities. It didn't even take a minute before the second most powerful of the nine-tailed beasts told him which direction to go, and then closed the mental link. Bee nodded and then made a gesture with one of his hands that told the others to follow his lead. He could practically hear them nod before he dashed in the direction he was given. Alright, so here's how it's gonna go down, Bee started as they dashed around the rocky paths around the village. He knew these borders like the back of his hand, so they weren't going to get lost anytime soon. We fight the people my bro told us to fight and help each other out if you finish your opponent early. Do you all dig? He said in regular speech, for once. That's fine with me, Naruto said with a determined expression on his face. I was planning on fighting Sasuke anyway, ordered or not. I've just been itching to finally settle things with him. Are you sure you'll be able to kill him, Naruto-kun? Samui asked, but her tone sounded slightly worried. You did say he was your old teammate, after all. Naruto nodded as he kept his eyes forward so he didn't accidentally miss a step and fall down one of the crevices. Mountains were dangerous like that, after all. Yeah, I had a similar discussion with the nine-tailed fox. I made a promise to bring him back to Konoha, but I'll kill him if I don't have a choice. Samui nodded at the whiskered Jinchuriki and then looked ahead as she continued to follow her former teacher. It was nighttime by the time Bee and the rest of the group got to the camp where Orochimaru was. The Haxabee's container was sure the snake was there because it had the same chakra signatures that his tailed beast had led him to. From what they could see from the cliff they had perched themselves on, there were at least 20 sound ninjas in the camp along with their 3 targets. And from their chakra levels, they were almost likely Haichinen to Jonin level ninja. This is going to be tricky, Yujito whispered to the others, who nodded in agreement. How are we going to do this? Naruto asked quietly as he surveyed the camp to try and find some infiltration points. He didn't just train in ninjutsu and kenjutsu all these 6 months. He was practically ordered to train in many different areas by the Raikage because the man wanted Naruto to be a well-rounded shinobi. Killer Bee hummed as he thought of their next step in taking down their targets. Any plan he came up with, though, would result in all of them having to fight the entire camp anyway. Yo, Naruto, he said to the whiskered blonde. Do you think you can take down all of the henchmen with your flying thunder god technique, bro? Naruto's eyes widened at what the man had asked. As far as he knew, he never met Killer Bee, but the man knew that he was able to use his father's technique. Then again, he was A's brother, so he figured that B was informed about him and his abilities. The blonde slightly nodded his head to the sunglass Jinhyuriki. I think so. It'll be easy to take down the sound ninja, but as soon as I do, I'm sure that Orochimaru, Kabuto, and Sasuke will know what's going on. So you 3 are going to have to distract them when that happens. Yeah, I figured that would happen, Yujito said with the same quiet tone, but then smirked. I'm ready. Samui nodded along with her. Her expression was unknown to the others, but under her mask, she was lightly grinning from excitement. I, too, am ready to begin the ambush. B grinned and then stood up, all of the others followed soon after. Time to get this show on the road, then, he said a little louder now since it didn't really matter. That was when Naruto threw multiple 3-pronged kunao at the camp and then disappeared in a flash of yellow. The screams of the sound ninjas followed not even a moment later, showing that Naruto was succeeding in taking out all of the Sunin's henchmen with the flying thunder god jutsu. The rest of the group began to get into their stances when they saw their targets come out of their tents to see the commotion. The battle with Orochimaru was about to begin. The sound ninjas didn't stand a chance when Naruto had ambushed them at their own camp. They were not expecting to be found out this quickly at all and were hoping to stay hidden from Kumo's forces so that their invasion went off without a hitch. Too bad they forgot that Kumo isn't known for being one of the strongest of the elemental countries for nothing. The sight that Sasuke, Kabuto, and Orochimaru came upon when they exited the confines of the main tent, where they were making plans, was a blonde blur cutting down all the security in the camp like they were flies. He was moving so fast that their eyes couldn't keep track of him, making it pointless to try and find out his identity. Orochimaru was clenching his teeth in anger as he watched all this happen. Those were some of his best soldiers that he was sure could at least give Sasuke a bit of a challenge, and this thing had taken them all out in seconds. Who is that? He yelled at the 2 remaining at his sides. Kabuto had a permanent frown etched on his face. If one of the Sunin isn't able to detect whatever or whoever has infiltrated their camp, this was bad. No, this is worse than bad. He slowly put a hand to his kunao holster in fear as he didn't know whether he'd be dead in the next second. The last of the trio, Sasuke, still had an impassive expression on his face. He didn't care about the shinobi being slaughtered, but he did wonder what the jutsu that was being used was. It seemed so familiar to him that it was unsettling. He then shook his head. It didn't matter, he would just kill the fool ambushing them and take that power for himself. Then, I will surely be strong enough to kill Itachi, he thought with a smirk. After the sound ninjas were all gone, the blur had suddenly disappeared from the camp, and none of them could trace where it had gone. They tried using chakra to increase their senses, but the attacker must have gotten out of their range. The group's hiding spot. Naruto appeared back to the group in the same flash of yellow that he used to attack the camp. He was surprised to find himself not even fatigued in the slightest. The blonde thought that it must have been due to the training he not only did in the village but with his tailed beast as well. The results were definitely worth it. Killer Bee was looking over the cliff to see the damage and whistled quietly when he saw all the bodies. It wasn't a gory mess like he was expecting from a person who was barely killed before. All of the spiky blonde's attacks were quick and precise, just how a ninja should be. He grinned up at Naruto and put a thumb up to say, "Great job," without having to actually say it. They were still in hiding, after all. He looked back to find the remaining enemies in the camp when he saw Naruto nod at him. Orochimaru was still searching for the culprit that had nearly taken out the entire camp within a couple of minutes. His expression showed anger, due to him gritting his teeth and the contorting of his pale-skinned face. B was enjoying seeing one of the Sunin in such a state. His right-hand man, Kabuto, looked more frightened than he did angry. He probably thought that he was also going to die along with the rest of the sound ninjas that Naruto had killed. Honestly, B couldn't blame the guy because the Flying Thunder God technique is a devastating technique, no doubt about that. And he heard that Naruto was still working on it as well. And finally, his gaze turned to the Uchiha. Sasuke was also looking around, but not as cautiously as he should have. He was turning his head in all directions, but at a slow pace that showed he was underestimating the enemy by a great amount. Wasn't he trained by a Sannin of all people? Wasn't he taught to never underestimate an enemy no matter the circumstance? All in all, he wasn't impressed by the Uchiha at all. Naruto is definitely going to kick his butt, yo, he thought, and then turned back to the group, who were waiting for his orders. Man, he loved being in charge sometimes. The Hakubi Jinchuriki nodded to them with a wide grin. Let's show them not to mess with Kumo, he said with excitement, and caused them all to feel the same as they nodded and jumped down the cliff to hide behind the rock formations that surrounded the camp. Killer Bee soon followed after them. The true ambush had finally begun. Orochimaru's camp. Now that the group was hidden, they just had to wait for B to start his attack to try and separate Orochimaru from Kabuto and Sasuke. The fights would be much easier that way. Divide and conquer was an excellent strategy for this situation. But, they were still dealing with one of the legendary Sannin here. Simple plans like that just won't cut it against a shinobi like Orochimaru, if he were in a rational state of being, that is. They were going to exploit his flustered state to their advantage. B jumped high into the air and morphed one of his arms into an octopus tentacle. It was one of the many things he could do since he trained in controlling his tailed beast's powers and abilities. He would have to get Yujito and Naruto to train on the island turtle when all of this was over. He made his new appendage grow to a larger size so that it could do some real damage. The tentacle was now twice as big as Killer Bee but was still being easily lifted by the man, showing his strength. After he enlarged his arm, he thrust it down to where Orochimaru and his cohorts were standing. Orochimaru, however, sensed the attack coming and shouted a quick warning to Kabuto and Sasuke, and they all were able to dodge the attack at the last second. And thus, the first part of the plan had been achieved. The three were now separated from each other, and taking them out would be much easier. The Hakubi Jinchuriki used his speed to appear where Orochimaru had jumped to and tried to hit him again so that he could do some serious damage to the Snake Sannin. But, Orochimaru was able to parry the attack, although the force of the blow still made him skid back a few feet. You, the pale-skinned man snarled at B. Were you the one who did this to my ninja? His teeth were gritting in anger now and his fists were clenched with just enough pressure to make his own hands bleed. B just smiled at the Sannin and replied in his usual manner, which was Enka rhyming. Yo! I'm Killer B and I am here to make you see that you cannot beat me. This is my domain you are trying to raid so for that you will meet my blade, S. He ended with a bit of a sheepish expression for failing to rhyme at the last part of his verse. Orochimaru was left so dumbfounded by the strange greeting he simply stared open-mouthed at B. He recovered moments after by shaking his head and assuming his Hebai-ken pose, the taijutsu method his summons had taught him. You want to challenge one of the legendary Sannin? He sneered wickedly at his foe. So be it, I shall grant you your wish. And after that, he shot at the man with sunglasses at an incredible rate of quickness. Near the devastated campsite, Sasuke had no clue about the identity of the attackers, yet they impressed him with the massacre of the Otonin that took place only moments earlier. Perhaps he could use his Sharingan to try and force the person using that immense jutsu to teach it to him. It would undoubtedly aid him in ending his older sibling's life. His gaze swept around him like a hawk, looking for any potential ambusher. When that proved unsuccessful, he was forced to sense with his chakra. This was a lesson he learned from Orochimaru, who said it would be useful to know where his future victim was. But he never fully perfected the skill. While he raised it to a respectable level where he could detect chakra signatures, it wasn't enough to pinpoint a signature. That was the reason he stood motionless with dirt swirling around him like a phantom cloak. The raven-haired shinobi had his Sharingan active to aid him in seeing through the dust, because it let him perceive chakra. All he could make out was Orochimaru being sent sliding to where he couldn't see by a male with a tentacle appendage. What sort of technique could that be? It was at the time of this brief distraction that he suddenly sensed a huge chakra presence appear right behind him from nothing. His eyes grew wide and he spun around to stop any likely assault headed his way. Unfortunately, it was already too late as the only image he saw was four knuckles barely a finger's breadth from his face. By pure instinct, he shut his eyes and attempted to lean away to lessen the force of the strike, but he did not sense a blow when he did. So he opened his eyes again, only for them to expand further at the individual behind the hand that was still extremely near his countenance. Surprised to find me, team, a certain whisker-marked blonde said smiling at his adversary. Sasuke leapt back some feet and entered a defensive pose. The Tomo and his Sharingan were rotating fast to imitate any skill tossed his way. Dope? It seems the rumors of you getting banished from Konoha were indeed true, he said with a sneer, hoping to enrage the blonde, make him lose his edge. Naruto merely scowled in response. If your goal is to make me angry, it will not work. I am not the same person I was 6 months ago back at that hideout, Sasuke. He straightened his body and his hands were at his sides as the dust completely dispersed. Sasuke's only reaction was his smirk vanishing and an eyebrow rising at the declaration. A few moments later that dreadful grin showed up once more on his face. Then let's find out how you fare against an Uchiha with nobody to assist you. He bellowed and started performing hand signs at an intense speed. At once, Naruto recognized the signs for the jutsu and entered the position he was taught by the Kyuubi, an act he was completely thankful for, the Kitsunken, Fox Fist. He then proceeded to make hand signs for a protective technique he acquired from his mother's scrolls. Katan Gukakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique. Sasuke hollered right before he formed a circle with the index finger and the thumb of his left hand and exhaled. Suten Tsujin Hiki, Water Release, Water Encampment Wall. The whiskered Jinhyuriki shouted and then concluded with a clap of his hands and water gathering around him in a ring. It did not take even an instant for the liquid to burst around him as a wall. As the fireball struck the wall of water, the outcome was an immense blanket of steam covering the combat zone. It was quite dense because of the size of the fireball. Sasuke still saw Naruto's chakra signature inside the steam thanks to his Sharingan. He was astonished to witness the dobe of all individuals using such a strong technique to counter his. Even worse, he was too preoccupied using his own jutsu to imitate it. These ideas on their own caused him to grind his teeth with annoyance. But he quickly composed himself by taking a deep intake of air, followed by letting it out. Evidently, it was accurate what Naruto had said about him not being the same since their last fight. He would have to approach this battle a little more seriously now. Naruto was using his huge chakra supplies to perceive Sasuke's signature, like that of a radar. Kyuubi had also instructed him in this technique since it would be extremely helpful in moments like this, where a person's sight is momentarily hindered and they want to avoid letting the foe get the jump on them. The blonde noticed that Sasuke hadn't shifted even a centimeter. He was certain the Uchiha would attempt to attack him with a move, but he had done nothing of the sort. I suppose I'll simply have to beat him to it. Naruto pondered with a smile and then began the hand signs for his most preferred technique. Rantan Riza Sakasu, Storm Release, Laser Circus. He shouted and the ebony and ivory beams discharged from his hands and created gaps in the steam as they went toward their Sharingan-wielding opponent. Sasuke's eyes expanded at a technique like this being aimed at him and he just had enough time to evade the assault. But, much to his astonishment, the beams had changed their path and were now coming for him again. He had no way to avoid the strike while he was airborne. He would have to return to basics. The steam had disappeared from the combat zone and Naruto was now able to see clearly. As soon as it had, he noticed Sasuke's body on the dirt, without any movement and smoking. He quickly went up to the form, though with caution, and checked for a heartbeat. When he placed his hand on the unconscious Uchiha's neck, the body vanished in smoke and returned as a log. Kawarimi, substitution. Naruto considered and bent his head to the side, just avoiding a blow from Sasuke. He seized the arm and then hoisted Sasuke into the sky, intending to drive him into the dirt. But Sasuke was able to regulate the force of his body and merely kicked Naruto in the torso with both his feet, leading his arm to be released and him landing safely to the floor. The kick did not appear to have harmed his blonde opponent though, only making him slide back a few steps. Quit messing around with him, Naruto. This is not the time for it. Kyuubi bellowed to its jailer from behind the seal which was on the blonde's abdomen. Upon hearing this, Naruto nodded and used one of his hands and bent it to reach behind his spine. When it came upon its goal, which was the hilt to his family's blade, he took hold of it and then gradually removed it from its sheath. Sasuke's eyebrow lifted in curiosity and he reached for his own weapon when he saw Naruto doing likewise. He was actually quite amazed to realize Naruto owned a sword. Had he committed himself to learning Kenjutsu? This idea made his head move from side to side and a grin surface on his lips. As if a person like Naruto could ever learn Kenjutsu. He agreed that he had gotten a bit better than he was at Orochimaru's hideout, but the blonde was still not on the same level as an Uchiha. They each assumed their own respective positions for their blade arts and looked at each other, waiting for one to start the action. The wind softly blew around them and a small path of dirt formed a line in the center of the two. The Uchiha began the first move by squinting his eyes and infusing Raiten chakra into his blade and making arcs of electricity to appear all around it. He then rushed at his opponent with a prepared slashing strike ready, hoping to finish this quickly. Naruto fought back by instantly changing to a defensive position and parried Sasuke's slash as the blow was pushed upon him. He observed that something had made the Uchiha's eyes expand, but he was not sure what it was. Thus, he utilized that short break in focus to his benefit and shifted his blade to the side, forcing Sasuke's sword and arm to follow in the same route. Next, he used the swiftness he spent months on enhancing to slash at Sasuke without mercy. They were just light cuts since even though he would not hesitate to kill the betrayer, he still had a promise to keep to one of his beloved people. So, at present, he would settle for merely taking the Uchiha down. Nevertheless, Sasuke had recovered his balance and started to deflect the blonde's attacks, though only barely. The blows of the dark blade were so swift that even his Sharingan, with 3 tomo to boot, had difficulty tracking the movements. At this moment, their swords were scraping against one another and the flashes of light randomly shot off of Sasuke's sword while this went on. The raven-haired Uchiha was grinding his teeth as he stared at the expression of his old friend, who was holding him at bay quite simply. Realizing he couldn't surpass the blonde in power, he shoved away from Naruto and created some space so he could compose himself. The nix that he was now covered with hurt and would have made him grimace had he not experienced worse pain. His sensei was Orochimaru after all. Being able to endure pain was a prerequisite for becoming his pupil. "Why are you so powerful?" Sasuke shouted in fury as his Sharingan was ignited. Naruto stayed quiet as he stood upright into a much more relaxed posture. "I said I was no longer the same since we last saw each other at the hideout," he replied. "Quiet. There is no way for you to be this powerful in a mere few months. I am an Uchiha. No one should be able to defeat me." The Uchiha yelled again as his breathing got more quick because of his rage. The blonde exhaled at this statement. "There is that arrogance again. Only being an Uchiha does not make you invincible, Sasuke. Your big brother knew this before what he did to your clan. Why can't you realize the same thing?" Sasuke bellowed in fury and put away his sword with a single fast movement. He then performed 3 hand signs and then aimed his palm to the ground and concentrated his chakra into his palm. Without warning, his whole hand became wrapped in electricity and a loud, piercing noise was coming out of it. It was one of his characteristic techniques, the Chidori. Naruto's eyes became narrow at this and he gently threw his sword from his right hand to his left and then created a Rasengan in the now free hand. "Do not do this, Sasuke. You realize I can defeat you," he shouted at the betrayer and got prepared to throw himself ahead. The Uchiha paid him no mind as he swiftly lunged at Naruto, who also moved the same, and their techniques smashed into each other. The two strong skills were fighting against each other to establish which one would come out on top. Back and forth the techniques had gone multiple times so as to prevail in this conflict of power. Sasuke was really certain that he would be victorious in this because he had done so all of those years past. His gnashed teeth became a crazed smirk as he pushed with all of his strength against Naruto's counter technique. At this point, the Chidori was only a few centimeters away from Naruto, who shut his eyes and then opened them abruptly to show up with deep red irises and split pupils. He snarled as he pushed the Rasengan with more force and chakra and absolutely overpowered the Chidori. With his technique defeated, Sasuke was thrown back in a pinwheel motion and only stopped thanks to the huge rock that was in the terrain, now with a human-sized indentation on it. Sasuke dropped out of the crater with an agonizing groan and fell onto his knees. He then started to breathe heavily because he was attempting to get air into his lungs, the Rasengan having impacted him in the abdomen. He glanced up to notice Naruto, who still had his arm outstretched and was now standing normally like earlier. He stared at the blonde in loathing, attempting to make a hole into his skull and kill him. His struggle was pointless though since his small desire was not fulfilled. The Sharingan user then rose to his feet and had a hard time doing so. He might not have truly liked Orochimaru whatsoever, but he was certainly happy that he was taught to take punishment. But he realized he could not keep enduring this amount or he would certainly be defeated. "Do you understand now, Sasuke?" Naruto asked while looking down at the Uchiha who was using his knees to keep himself upright. "The distinction between us? I could end your life right now and finish this. But I hold a vow that I made, and I do not back out on my commitments if it is possible." The blonde was now approaching his former rival/friend. Upon hearing this, Sasuke grinned once more. "This is what all this is for? You are trying to return me to Konoha." He started to cackle maliciously as his body was enveloped in black. Naruto stopped when he saw that and he internally exhaled. He knew what Sasuke was doing now. He was using the Ten no Juin, Cursed Seal of Heaven, to alter to his second state. Sasuke's complexion became a darker tone, much more like gray, and his hair grew longer while keeping the same style. His eyes were not black anymore but were a vibrant yellow with the 3 tomo rotating frantically like before. A dark, cross-shaped mark emerged on his face, right over his nose. The final thing that took place in the transformation was the 2 huge, hand-shaped wings that grew out of his shoulder blades and spread in a movement that made him look as if he was about to fly like a bird. "I will never allow you to take me back to Konoha, Naruto," Sasuke screamed and appeared to be as good as new in his changed form. He stood up straight and it was noted by Naruto that his earlier cuts and injuries had now disappeared. Quick recovery. That never happened at the Valley of the End. This was unforeseen. Naruto pondered to himself as he returned to his sword pose. "I can still defeat him, but I do not believe I will be able to bring him back to Konoha. My apologies, Sakura-chan." Sasuke went airborne and flew to a distant area that Naruto could not reach, even with his technique. What he was planning was the question the blonde was asking at that exact moment. Next, he saw the now changed Uchiha performing many katan jutsu into the clouds that had assembled in the heavens. Each cloud was absorbing the fire for some reason and was turning a dark color. Thunder could be sensed from them and lightning sparked around them at certain times after a few more moments of the same task that Sasuke was doing. By now, all the clouds over Naruto were storm clouds and he still had no clue why his opponent was performing this. Was it for one of his techniques? It surely was not one that he knew of. It had to have been during the 3 years of training with Orochimaru. In the air, Sasuke was chuckling to himself in a frenzy of madness. "This technique will end this fight and get rid of anyone near here." He then lifted his right arm toward the clouds and used his left to perform the hand signs. Single-handed signs were a skill he picked up after witnessing Haku do them back during his genin days. Kirin, Suzuki had shouted, and the lightning inside the clouds came together in a huge quantity and assumed the shape of a kind of animal that was not recognizable at that time. It roared very loudly and then looked down as Suzuki propelled his palm towards the blonde. That was the moment it propelled itself from the sky and went at its intended victim, Naruto. The whiskered Jinchuriki understood he only had a brief period to respond, but the other option was to get roasted in electricity. So, collecting his chakra around himself as fast as possible, he turned on his Raiten no Yoroi, lightning release armor. The armor appeared a golden hue with blue flashes of lightning dancing all over it. His eyes shone white as he stared at the beast and then stretched his arms and legs, which made him look like an eagle. When the lightning beast hit, a huge and mighty wave of energy spread over the mountainous area and sent any unsuspecting creatures to be thrown far away to regions unseen. Yet there was no explosion, which Suzuki observed even from the air. That now perplexed him. This was the most powerful technique in his repertoire and was incredibly destructive. So why was there no blast happening like it had when he trained with it so many times earlier? It was not long before a brilliant, white light shone over the spot where Naruto was standing and the wave of energy had entirely and unexpectedly gone away. Suzuki shut his eyes when the light arrived, as it was too intense for him, and waited for it to lessen. After it did, he opened his yellow eyes again only for them to expand at what he saw beneath him. It was solely because of his Sharingan that he was able to see this at all. There stood Naruto fully untouched from the technique and was still in his Raiten no Yoroi, only it was much more expansive now and formed a circle around him in a large area. He looked up at Suzuki with a mournful expression on his face as he put away his blade and aimed both his palms at the airborne betrayer. I regret it had to be like this, Suzuki. I hope you find serenity in the afterlife. He reflected and then screamed out as his armor shined, and then, in another gleam, the technique that Suzuki had flung at the blonde was now returning to its maker. Suzuki had no opportunity to evade the technique and merely watched it in bewilderment. How was this able to happen? How did Naruto send such a powerful technique back to him? His questions would remain unanswered as he realized this was his end. He shut his eyes as Kirin was no further than a few feet away from him. So this is my death. He reflected, and the jutsu totally encased him as he yelled one final time before his body vanished entirely from the heavens. Naruto turned off his armor and a single tear traced a path down his whiskered cheek. Although Suzuki was a betrayer, he was still the first friend that he had ever gained. He might not have displayed it back then, but he considered the Avenger a brother. However, that Suzuki was gone for a long time, ever since he attempted to kill him at the valley. He was not the same person. He had been substituted with a dark and killing individual only focused on strength. But he would still miss the experiences he shared with Suzuki before that occurred. With a sigh, he cleaned the tear from his face and then returned to a stern look. He went back to where he sensed the others were battling and started to move towards Samui and Yujito, knowing that he could handle himself. Killer Bee narrowly avoided the sword aimed at his head, ducking and rolling out of the way just in time. He was beyond frustrated he had been ever since the fight began. The reason for his irritation? The damned snake man wasn't giving him any breathing room to properly retaliate. If he could just get all of his blades out and use his Kenjutsu style, he was confident he could inflict some serious damage on Orochimaru, but the pale-skinned madman had kept him so busy trying to avoid being sliced to ribbons that he hadn't had the chance. Sure, he'd managed to land a few shallow cuts when he saw an opening, but they were ultimately pointless and did nothing to slow Orochimaru down. For now, he had no choice but to bide his time and wait for the Sunin to tire out before making his move. Even though Orochimaru was a Sunin, no one could keep up the pace the snake was maintaining for too long. No one except a Jinchuriki, that is. Having a Baijuyu sealed inside definitely had its advantages in that regard, and so he had to wait it out and try not to get killed by the homicidal Sunin. He hated waiting, it just took too damn long, especially in a situation like this, where he was up against someone with inhuman stamina. Fight! Orochimaru sneered as their blades ground against each other, sending sparks flying. Fight back, damn it! Give me a challenge before I end your pathetic life, he yelled at B. Yo! Say it, don't spray it, motherfucker. B grinned, using his strength to send Orochimaru skidding back a few feet. Finally, he had some distance from the snake man. He quickly took the opportunity to draw the rest of his swords, positioning them at various points on his body before settling into his stance. Now, the fight had truly begun. Killer Bee's grin widened as he finally got to use his Kenjutsu, giving him a much better chance at ending the fight. Seeing the shocked expression on the snake Sunin's face, he seized the moment and went on the offensive. He dashed at his opponent, spinning his body at a rapid pace, resembling a rolling ball covered in spikes. Unfortunately, Orochimaru was quick enough to react and jump out of the way, but only barely. He still got a few shallow cuts along the side of his right arm as he leaped away from the attack. When he landed, he saw B coming at him again with the same blinding speed. The snake-like man had no choice but to try and block as many slashes as he could with his sword. Orochimaru had to draw on all his knowledge of Kenjutsu to block the barrage of attacks. There were so many, and what was worse, they came from different directions with a speed he could barely keep up with. If he weren't sick, he would be able to, but his body was deteriorating, and he'd have to wait to transfer his soul into Suzuki's body before he died. B yelled loudly, opening a deep gash in Orochimaru's chest and sending him flying back, where he crashed through a large boulder. Yes, he finally got the bastard. Now, he just had to finish the job before Orochimaru could recover or escape. The Hakubi Jinhyuriki took one step forward before he saw a bright flash in the sky over a different part of the field. Wasn't that where Naruto was fighting the Uchiha? His mouth fell open when the flash faded, revealing a massive Raiten construct in the shape of an animal. He only got a glimpse before it shot toward the ground at a speed his eyes couldn't follow. He shielded his eyes as another flash appeared, so bright that his sunglasses didn't help. When it subsided, he was confused by the lack of destruction. Did the jutsu backfire? He got his answer when the same beast shot back into the sky at its original speed, likely returning to its summoner. B channeled chakra into his eyes to enhance his vision and saw the faint image of a dark-skinned teenager with freaky wings being disintegrated by the jutsu. He would bet that the Uchiha had just been vaporized and would likely win that bet. Killer B grinned, seeing that Naruto had won his fight. Which reminded him, wasn't he supposed to be killing a snake right about now? He began to head toward the spot where he saw Orochimaru fly. No. Orochimaru's voice echoed, but B didn't pause, continuing on. He couldn't help but smirk at the Sunin's current state. The snake was in a heap of rubble, with tears in his clothing and blood pooling from the deep gash on his chest. My body. Orochimaru continued yelling, completely ignoring B. That was to be my body, and now it's gone. All these years of waiting, ruined. He coughed and finally noticed the dark-skinned man. You! Who killed Suzuki? Who killed my perfect body? Killer B's smirk turned into his usual grin as he began to rap. Yo, it was Naruto who killed your bro, he started, using his arms to punctuate his rap. I know that it's a low blow, but I'm about to end your show. With the rap finished, he morphed his right arm into a giant octopus tentacle, just as he had when he attacked the camp. Orochimaru's eyes widened. He knew what that idiot was going to do, but he couldn't move. His body had sustained too much damage from crashing through the boulder, and the gash on his chest wasn't helping. He cursed at the man before closing his eyes and bracing for impact, which never came. He heard it in the distance, though, which confused him. Orochimaru also felt wind, as if he were running, but he couldn't move. He turned his head just enough to see that Kabuto was carrying him over his shoulder, making their escape. His second-in-command looked a little tattered but seemed well enough to perform a distanced Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique. Shunshin no Jutsu, Kabuto said, as if reading his master's thoughts, and they both faded away silently as they heard B curse at their escape. Now, B wasn't typically an angry person. When he got angry or someone pissed him off, he would go to a secluded spot and write more Enka-style raps. It was his way of dealing with that emotion. So it would be unusual for anyone who knew him to see him gritting his teeth and slamming his tentacle arm into the ground, creating a long crater. The next thing he knew, he felt Samui's and Yujito's chakra signatures appear via Shunshin right behind him, so he quickly calmed himself and turned around to face them. B's eyes widened at the sight of them with more than a few tears in their clothing but no bleeding, which was a good sign. What the hell happened, yo? B said, with only a slight hint of anger in his tone. He saw the two's faces wince at it. We're sorry B-sensei, Yujito answered before Samui could. He was more skilled than we thought with his chakra no Mesu, chakra scalpel, technique, and we had to distance ourselves from him. We tried using jutsu, but most of mine are close range, as are Samui's, and he was fast enough to dodge our range techniques. Samui nodded at her teammate's words. He isn't Orochimaru's second-in-command for nothing. Kabuto is a very strong individual, she said, and heard B sigh. Come on, we're going after them, B ordered, seeing the looks of confusion on the two Kunoichi's faces. What about Naruto-kun? Yujito asked as they all started to head toward where they had sensed the Sunin and his subordinate. Killer B didn't answer for a few moments. He knew they should have all just stayed as a group, but they couldn't let Orochimaru get away. Their mission was to take him out, and B had never failed a mission before. He'll catch up, he said to them, knowing they would reluctantly agree. Naruto was about halfway to his teammates' last known location before he stopped to confirm they were still there. It gave him a chance to recover the chakra he had lost redirecting Suzuki's Raiten Jutsu. It was no easy feat. He was actually amazed with himself once the adrenaline from the battle wore off. He doubted he'd be able to do something so risky again, though. The only reason he was able to send the Kirin back was his affinity for Raiten chakra. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to use his Raiten no Yoroi the way he did. Instead of using it as armor, as it was intended, he absorbed the Kirin into his own jutsu. It took nearly everything he had to keep Suzuki's chakra from overloading his own and killing him. Then, he had to use his own skill and Raiten manipulation to send the jutsu back at Suzuki. That part actually didn't take as much out of him. It was when his little stunt was done that he realized how much chakra he used to stay alive. Kyuubi had berated him for doing something so foolish and said he was lucky it had worked. He apologized to it mentally and, after looking back to where Suzuki was disintegrated, he ended up where he was now. This was when he felt the chakra signatures of Orochimaru and Kabuto disappear for a second before reappearing quite a long way away from their previous position. He guessed that they must have used a Shunshin no Jutsu because there was no way they were that fast. Naruto also sensed his teammates' chakra, now on their way to intercept the two. The blonde namikaze was about to join them when he felt the ground beneath his feet begin to shake. He deactivated his chakra sensing and turned to the epicenter, causing the tremor. His cerulean blue eyes widened at the sight of a large, bandaged, blade-like object protruding from the ground and heading straight for him at high speed. He was able to jump to the side with only a few seconds to spare. But his eyes widened even further when the blade erupted from the ground, along with the man wielding the massive sword. Naruto recognized the attacker as none other than Hoshigaki Kisame, one of the Akatsuki members tasked with getting Kyuubi. Kisame had a wide grin that showed his sharpened teeth, making him look very similar to a shark, as he easily raised the bandaged sword known as Samehada with one arm and swung it down at Naruto, intending to bisect him. Naruto unsheathed his sword and held it up horizontally to properly block the incoming attack. When their two blades connected, Naruto was surprised by the incredible amount of strength Kisame was using. What scared him the most was that it looked like the Akatsuki member wasn't even using half of his maximum power. Fortunately, Naruto was able to use his own increased strength to push Samehada to the side and remain unharmed. He then took this chance to strike the now open Akatsuki member with one of his kenjutsu techniques, Kumo Ryumakazuka Jiri, Cloud-style Crescent Moon Beheading. Naruto yelled as he swung his sword in a moon-shaped arc that left a luminescent white glow as it traveled toward Kisame's neck. The blonde was actually surprised to see his technique work as the blue-skinned man's head was severed from his shoulders and began rolling in the air. His surprise turned to shock, however, when the head and Kisame's entire body splashed into water. He used a Mizu Bunshin. Naruto landed back on the ground and immediately dropped his level to dodge another strike from Kisame's sword. He created a cage bunshin of himself after he was clear from Samehada, and it tried to kick Kisame in the chin. Its foot was grabbed by the Akatsuki member's hand, and it was picked up like a rag doll before being slammed down at Naruto. The clone exploded in his hand after Naruto rolled to the side and tried to slash him with his sword. Kisame simply brought Samehada in front of him, and its size easily blocked the attack. This made Naruto somewhat frustrated, but he calmed himself before he got sloppy. He stopped trying to win a battle of strength against Kisame since he was unlikely to win right now and jumped away from him, gaining some much-needed distance. "Not bad, Kaki," Kisame said to him, his grin never faltering. "You've definitely gotten better since the last time we met. But you're still not strong enough to beat me. So why don't you just make this easy on yourself and come with me before I make good on the threat I made 3 years ago of chopping your legs off? You can chop my head off, and I'll still fight you from taking Kyuubi," Naruto yelled back. He then sheathed his sword before going through a quick sequence of hand seals. Kisame had tried to stop him, but he was fast enough to complete the set. He then thrust his palms outward toward Kisame and shouted, "Ranten Senbon no Shoki, Storm Release Senbon Bombardment." Naruto's hands were enveloped in his Ranten chakra, one white and the other black, before a shower of Senbon made of his bloodline element fired out at high speed. Kisame knew they would do a terrible amount of damage if they hit, so he stabbed his blade into the ground in front of him and used it as a makeshift shield. He couldn't count how many times he heard the Senbon make a clinking sound as they bounced off Samehada and landed on the ground. To stop the annoying sound, he decided to turn the battle into something that would fit his element. Suten Bakuzui Shaha, Water Release, Exploding Water Colliding Wave. Kisame yelled after making a single snake seal, and water began pouring out of his mouth in extreme volumes. Naruto stopped his own jutsu when he saw the terrain quickly become surrounded by water. He was amazed at how fast the land was covered by the technique, but then his mind went back to the battle, and he realized how bad this was. He remembered from one of Kumo's bingo books that Kisame was an excellent user of Suten Jutsu. While not on par with the second Hokage, who could use Suten techniques without any body of water nearby, Kisame was still a force to be reckoned with. He used his chakra control to keep himself steady on the surface of the water as he looked up to see Kisame's still grinning face, who was standing on a pillar of water that he had made. It irked him how the man could always keep that predatory expression no matter what. He wanted to wipe the damn grin right off the bastard's face, but that was easier said than done. Not impossible, though. "Last chance before this gets ugly, Kaki," Kisame yelled to the whiskered blonde. "There's a reason why I hold back in my fights. When I go all out, people tend to not survive the ordeal. You get me?" "Yeah, I get you," Naruto replied, a fox-like grin appearing on his face. "But there's something that you don't happen to know about me." Kisame's grin faltered slightly, and one of his eyebrows rose. "And what's that?" "I was holding back as well." Kai. The Fuinjutsu weights on Naruto's body were released, and he could now move at his maximum speed. He hadn't needed to against Suzuki because of the difference in their skill levels, but now he was up against an Akatsuki member, and he needed to pull out all the stops if he was going to make it out of here alive. The former Kirinin saw the blonde disappear in a sudden burst of speed, and his eyes scanned the area to get a fix on him. He was able to block the strike that would have severed his carotid artery at the last second and slashed it where the attack came from, but only hit the air as no one was there. Kisame hated fighting fast shinobi. It was one of the reasons why he didn't fight Itaki all the time. That, and the fact that the Sherinan was a bitch to counter. So he quickly grew irritated trying to locate the Kuwabai brat. Making good use of honed reflexes from his years of battle, he predicted where Naruto's next strike was going to be and swung Samehada with both hands grasping the hilt. The blonde had no choice but to block with his own blade, but the force of Kisame's swing overtook him, and he was sent flying downward toward the water and plunged into its depths. The Akatsuki member then jumped down to the spot where he saw Naruto go under and put his palm on the surface of the water, channeling his chakra into it. Suten Gaso Kyuzumi, water release, 5 feeding sharks. He yelled as chakra poured out of his fingers and took on the forms of the vicious sea predators. Naruto opened his eyes to see the 5 chakra-constructed sharks coming at him with their mouths wide open, showing their razor-sharp teeth. Not wanting to lose any limbs, he activated his Raiten no Yoroi and electrified the water around him. He saw the creatures writhe in pain before disappearing from being electrocuted by his armor. When they were destroyed, he took his chance to swim back to the surface for oxygen. He saw 5 more sharks formed by the chakra from the tips of Kisame's fingers and coming at him to keep him underwater. The blonde didn't skip a beat, making his armor send another electrical current toward them, and the sharks ended up like their previous brethren. He surfaced with a loud inhalation, trying to get as much air into his lungs as possible. It was a good thing he did because he immediately had to dive back under to avoid a swing from Kisame that would have decapitated him. Naruto glared up at Kisame and began making hand seals to get a little payback at the fishman. Suten Tsugaden, water release, water fang bullet. Or at least, that's how it would have sounded if Naruto had yelled out the jutsu, but since he was underwater, it came out garbled and incomprehensible. However, the jutsu still activated, and he used his chakra to make multiple liquid, spinning masses around him and shot them at Kisame. Naruto instinctively dodged Kisame's attacks, but he knew they weren't meant to hit him. The jutsu was just a diversion, a way to distract Kisame so Naruto could escape the water. Successfully back on the surface, Naruto deactivated his armor. He saw Kisame was still easily dodging the jutsu, a fact he'd normally dwell on, but he had to get away. He was no match for Kisame, at least not at this moment. But first, a parting gift. Ranten Rizasakasu, he shouted, firing a volley of black and white beams from his hands. The beams weaved around Kisame's water jutsu and struck him directly in the chest. Naruto was surprised when Kisame didn't turn to liquid, confirming he'd hit the real one. Before Kisame could recover, Naruto threw a 3-pronged kunai at a nearby mountain cliff. Using his father's signature technique, the namikaze vanished in a golden flash, reappearing above the sea Kisame's jutsu had created. It was bigger than he'd thought. Alright, Naruto said to himself, grabbing the embedded kunai to prepare for another jump. I've got to get back to the others. That way, we can fight him together and hopefully beat the bastard. Just as he was about to throw the kunai in the general direction of his teammates a considerable distance, but well within the range of his flying thunder god technique, he felt the cold metal of a kunai against his throat. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Naruto-kun, a familiar, monotone voice said from behind him. Naruto craned his head just enough to see Uchiha Itachi, the older brother of the person he had just killed. This was the last person he wanted to see, not only because he killed Suzuki, but because he didn't have enough chakra to fight him, not at this moment. Drop the kunai on the ground and don't try any jutsu. My Sherinan will know, Itachi threatened, pressing the blade closer until a drop of blood trickled down Naruto's neck. Cursing to himself, the namikaze did as he was told, knowing he had no other option. Once Naruto dropped the kunai, Itachi bound his hands with a special chain. It slowly drained chakra from its captive, using the absorbed energy to become stronger and more difficult to break. These were designed for Jinchuriki due to their larger-than-normal chakra reserves, making them perfect tools for subduing the Baijuyu containers. Given Naruto's incredibly high chakra levels from the Kuwabai, he wasn't getting out anytime soon. Naruto's face contorted as the Kuwabai told him what the chain was doing, stating it was powerless to help. If the Kuwabai gave him chakra, it would only be absorbed by the chain, making it even more impossible for Naruto to break free. But he refused to give up. Surrendering was against his code, and he wasn't going to break it for some stupid chain. Before he could do anything, he was roughly turned around. His eyes met Itachi's, and he saw the Dojutsu evolve into its next stage, the Manjikyu. A shiver ran down his spine. The Kuwabai had told him about some of the Manjikyu's abilities, and he knew he wasn't going to be a fan. Tsukuyomi, Itachi said, and Naruto was plunged into darkness. Naruto's eyes slowly opened. He was lying on his back in a place he found all too familiar. He was in his mindscape, which confused him. He remembered being put under a Sherinan Genjutsu just a moment ago. So how and why was he here? He tried to stand but was hit with a sudden wave of vertigo. The world spun, even though he wasn't moving. He wondered if this was a side effect of the Tsukuyomi, but he dismissed the thought the Kyuubi had never mentioned dizziness as a symptom of that particular ability. Eventually, the vertigo subsided, and he was grateful. He tried standing again and was relieved when nothing happened. He looked around to get a sense of where he was, one of the many corridors he had traveled through while training with the Kyuubi. The blonde namikaze had gotten lost the first few times due to the sheer number of paths, much to the Kyuubi's amusement. The fox would laugh every time Naruto ended up back in front of it after only a few minutes of trying to navigate his subconscious. But getting lost so many times had taught him where every path led, and he could now expertly find his way, even though all the corridors looked identical. He began walking through the hall-like area, making the various turns at certain forks where he needed to. It wasn't long before he reached the central chamber, the room where the Kyuubi lived. Not much had changed in the past few months since Naruto completely altered its appearance so the Kyuubi wouldn't have to be stuck behind a cage. It was still a large grassy plain that gave the kitsune plenty of running room. He had even given the giant fox a den so it could sleep comfortably. The blonde had lost count of how many times the Kyuubi had thanked him for it. Naruto had expected to see the Kyuubi somewhere in the altered mindscape, but instead, he saw the person who was responsible for his presence here in the first place, Itaki. His cerulean eyes narrowed, and his hands clenched into fists. "What the hell are you doing in here?" Itaki ignored his question and reached behind him with his right arm. Naruto heard a yelp of pain, and his eyes widened. Itaka brought his hand back, and in his grip was a handful of crimson hair. Naruto's mouth fell open at the sight of the woman and guessed she was the source of the yelp. The namikaze wondered who this woman was. The only occupant of his mind was the Kyuubi. So who was she? He channeled chakra to his eyes to get a closer look, hoping he might recognize her. When he did, he literally gasped. She was a beautiful woman, on par with or even more beautiful than most of the women he knew in Kumo, which wasn't an easy feat. Her facial features were soft, but she also carried an expression that showed she shouldn't be trifled with. She had long, crimson hair that, if it wasn't in Itaka's grip, would flow like water or a slow-moving flame down to the middle of her back. Her attire was what really got his attention, though, since it wasn't what he expected. She was wearing shinobi clothes, that was definite, but they looked custom-made since he didn't recognize them from either Konoha's or Kumo's uniforms. He could tell with a few glances that underneath her clothing, she wore a fishnet bodysuit. Over that was a greenish-gray outfit that fit tightly against her perfectly proportioned body with a zipper running down the middle of it. Naruto tried to hold back a blush as he saw how much of her cleavage was showing. He also saw that she wore a belt around her waist holding a couple of satchels he assumed contained weapons and black elbow pads for protection. All in all, it was the type of outfit a kunoichi would wear to distract her opponents by showing off her body. He forced himself to look back at her face before he got too distracted by her womanly figure. This was when he noticed something he hadn't before, which surprised him because they should have been the first thing he noticed. On each cheek, she had the same whisker-like marks as him, only they were thinner and not as dark. Naruto also noticed her eyes and saw that they were a dark red with slit pupils. The namikaze's eyes widened as he realized who this woman was. "Kyuubi? Is that you?" he asked. She would have answered if not for Itaka's grip on her hair. "Yes, this is the Kyuubi, Naruto-kun," Itaki answered for her. "This is her true form. I wasn't expecting the Kyuubi to be a woman, but it is of no consequence. You and I are going to talk, no fighting. Otherwise, I will sever her head from her shoulders." "But you can't do that," Naruto yelled back. "I thought the Akatsuki needed the Baijuyu for their plan. You wouldn't be able to complete that plan without her." Itake nodded. "That would be true if I were planning on staying with them any longer," he said. Both the Kyuubi and Naruto were shocked. "Now, promise me you won't fight, and I will let her go." "What's the matter?" the Kyuubi suddenly said to Itaki. "Afraid he's going to beat you." Her outburst made Itaki yank her hair, and she gritted her teeth in pain. The Uchiha ignored her and waited for Naruto's answer. Naruto quickly unclenched his fists and nodded in agreement. Itaki released the human-formed fox, and she got up and quickly joined Naruto's side. When she did, Naruto whispered to her, "How was he able to get you like that? I know you're the strongest Baijuyu for a reason." His voice was low enough to stay out of Itake's hearing range. The Kyuubi looked a little angry at the question. She answered back while glaring at the man who dared to touch her hair. "It's the genjutsu that is Sharinan cast, Tsukuyomi. I was able to keep you from being trapped in the world created by the caster and the victim and got you both sent here. However, it seems he can still control the mindscape as if it were his own. The control you and I are supposed to have here is no longer a factor." The namikaze took on a grave expression. "So, until he releases the genjutsu, we're pretty much helpless against him." She nodded. "But then why would he have me promise not to fight him? It doesn't make sense since he has control." "It's because if you fight me, Naruto-kun, I may not be able to control myself from either hurting you badly or killing you," Itaka said, interrupting them and receiving shocked looks from the two. "And I do not wish for that to happen." The Kyuubi raised an eyebrow. Why exactly would you not be able to control yourself? You look pretty calm to me right now. Itachi shook his head. That is because of years of being a konoha captain. I did not get to that position by not being able to stay calm under duress. As to why I would not control myself in that regard, it is because he killed the only family I had left. He killed Sasuke. Naruto hung his head in contrition and remorse. But then he looked up at the brother of his deceased friend with a hardened expression. I had no choice, he said. I didn't want to, but the Sasuke you and I both knew was gone. All I saw when I looked into his eyes was a hunger for power. He would kill anyone and anything as long as it made him strong enough to fight and kill you, Itachi. The Kyuubi nodded in agreement. It was that hunger for power that reminded me of Uchiha Madara. Sasuke was a lot like him, and that is not a good thing. Had Naruto-kun not killed him, he would have caused needless destruction on his path to get to you. The former captain listened to these words and wanted to disbelieve them, but somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew they were right. He had always feared Sasuke would lose sight of everything and everyone around him and focus solely on revenge. He blamed himself for this because he was the one who told Sasuke that he would only become strong enough through hate. But still, Sasuke was his little brother, the only family he had vehemently refused to kill on the night of the Uchiha massacre. He couldn't help but want revenge on Naruto for what he did. However, he knew better than to do such a thing because then he would just end up like the rest of his clan, a bunch of revenge-driven people who didn't care who died to get their vengeance. I will choose to believe you, Naruto-kun, Itachi finally said with a sigh. It saddens me that there was nothing that could be done for him. I never meant for him to end up like that. The Kyuubi gave a condescending raise of one of her eyebrows. You kill his entire family, tell him to hate you, and that being alone is the only way to become strong, and you tell me you didn't want him to end up like that. Itachi actually hung his head as he looked at the floor, wearing a pained expression, as if he were reliving a horrific memory. And he was, for the mindscape had suddenly changed to what the Uchiha district looked like on the night of the massacre. The sky was black with no stars. The only light came from the moon, which cast an ominous red glow, a color similar to blood. Naruto and the human-formed Kitsune looked on with open mouths as they watched Itachi relive the entire night, kill by kill. He was ruthless and unflinching, no matter who his victim was. Even the children and elderly were not spared any mercy from the prodigious captain. It was execrable to the two, to say the least. Then, the worst part came, the scene where Itachi had just killed his own parents and Sasuke saw it all. Itachi tried to escape, but Sasuke chased after him. He stopped running away and told Sasuke to hate him. It was then that Sasuke gained the same eyes as him, and he would be ready to face him. Next, he activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and used Tsukuyomi on his little brother before disappearing and leaving Konoha. The mindscape reverted to its original form after that, and Itachi looked up to meet their eyes again, as if nothing had happened. My reasons were my own. Had I not killed my clan, they would have committed treason against Konoha and possibly become the catalyst for the Fourth Shinobi World War, he said, breaking the silence. Naruto was the first to speak. What do you mean by all that? How could a war be started by your clan betraying the village? The Kyuubi shook her head and said to the blonde, it would have caused a civil war, Naruto-kun. It would give the other villages a chance to attack Konoha in its disrupted state and cause a war between all the major countries of the elemental nations. Naruto nodded, understanding what she meant. But something still confused him. He turned his attention back to Itachi. Then why were the innocent ones killed and not the true conspirators? They didn't deserve to be punished for the actions of those who were actually planning the treason. I was ordered to buy the advisors of the third Hokage, Itachi said with a hardened expression. Sandaime-sama had been trying to negotiate with my clan to reach a peaceful solution but failed. They had told me to kill the ones behind the whole thing, but Danzo, a person revered for his ruthlessness, gave his opinion that I should eradicate the entire clan to show what it means to trifle with Konoha. But Grandpa would never allow that. Naruto shouted back in shock. That's not how he thinks about decisions like that. The order came from behind his back, Itachi said, shaking his head. Danzo was able to convince the advisors that I should kill all the Uchiha so they would no longer be a problem for the village. I had no choice but to follow the order, for a shinobi cannot refuse a mission from their superiors. Naruto gritted his teeth in anger. Then that should have been the first one you disobeyed. The innocent shouldn't have died because of some misguided old man's idea. His fists clenched, and his chakra began to flare. The Kyuubi put a hand on his shoulder, and his head snapped to her. She asked him to calm down in as soft a tone as she could muster. After a few moments, his chakra receded, and he calmed down. It won't do to get angry about something that happened in the past. What happened is something we cannot change. He nodded. I know that, but I can't help but think that if the innocents were spared, Sasuke might have ended up differently and not have led a life focused solely on revenge and hate. He sighed and exhaled one last calming breath before asking Itachi a question that had been plaguing his mind. What will you do now? Itachi contemplated for a moment. I do not know. My brother is gone, and I have no reason to stay in the Akatsuki any longer. The only thing I know I must do is stop the Akatsuki's true leader. You're talking about Uchiha Madara, the Kyuubi said. She saw Itake's eyes widen and smirked. We know he's alive, and I've been training Naruto-kun to prepare for when we fight him. He's making progress, but he is not ready to face him yet. I see, Itake said intelligently in reply. The mindscape suddenly began to blur, and Itake frowned. It seems I've reached the limit of my Tsukuyomi. I must cancel the jutsu before I blind myself from overuse of the Mangekyu. We will have to continue this conversation in the real world. Naruto nodded. The last thing he saw was Itake disappearing in a fading motion like the rest of his mindscape. He felt himself about to wake up, but before he did, he turned to the Kyuubi and said, "We are definitely going to talk later." The namikaze disappeared before the kitsune could say anything in return. Mountain cliff. Both Itachi and Naruto returned to the real world without incident, except for Itachi's eyes bleeding from the use of his Mangekyu Sharingan and Naruto feeling a little nauseous. Their symptoms passed quickly, and they were now debating what they should do next. Naruto knew Itachi was no longer with the group trying to capture the apparently female Baijuyu inside his stomach. He wondered if he should offer Itachi a place in Kumagakure so they could both plan how to take down Madara. To him, it sounded like a good plan since Itachi couldn't really go back to Konoha without being executed for who knows how many counts of murder. You have nowhere to go, but I can try and get you asylum in Kumo, Naruto said, his hand searching for a Hiraishin Kunao. He knew he had to leave before Kisame could find them. That is kind of you to offer, Naruto-kun, Itachi said without emotion. Perhaps I will take you up on it after I am done dealing with some loose ends in Akatsuki. Until then, I will remain in contact with you with one of my crows. The namikaze nodded in agreement. Be careful, Itachi, Naruto warned him. They won't like you leaving so suddenly. And you know more than me just how powerful they are. Do not worry about me, Itachi replied. I've lived my whole life being careful. By the time they realize I've left, it will be too late. His eyes then narrowed for a second as he felt his soon-to-be former partner's chakra signature. You should leave now while you have the chance. Naruto also noticed Kisame's massive signature and knew Itachi was right. So, he got hold of a Hiraishin Kunao and threw it in the direction he had last sensed his teammates, using chakra to make it go even further. As soon as it reached far enough, he disappeared with a flash of gold, leaving Itachi alone. Itachi stared at the spot where Naruto had just been not even a second ago. He always did find the Yandame's infamous jutsu interesting and couldn't help but marvel at its ability. He was brought out of his thoughts when the blue-skinned, shark-like man who was his partner appeared next to him in a swirl of water. He looked to be very angry, and Itachi guessed it was because of Naruto. The blonde did have a way of pissing off his enemies. Then again, it wasn't that hard to piss off Kisame anyway. Where is the brat, Itachi? Kisame growled as he looked around the cliff area. He was here just a few seconds ago. There's no way he could have gotten away with you around. The Uchiha turned his head to his partner and then activated his Mangekyu Sharingan again. He knew he shouldn't have used it right after using Tsukuyomi, but he needed its power right now for what he had planned. Kisame, I think you should know that I plan on leaving the Akatsuki. Kisame's eyes widened, and he was about to get ready to fight his raven-haired partner, but he soon found that he was completely surrounded in darkness. Instantly, he knew it was a genjutsu since Itachi specialized in them and his Sharingan made his use of them very difficult to deal with. Luckily for him, he had a large enough chakra supply to break out of this genjutsu, just like all shinobi are trained to do. He formed his hands into the ram seal and used his chakra to break free from the illusion. Or at least he thought he did. When he had done so, he noticed that the jutsu was still in place, and Kisame wondered how that was even possible. You are in a genjutsu of my own design, Kisame, Itachi said to him, answering one of the questions that were going around in his head. I made this particular one so dense that the only way a person can break free from it would be if my victim were given chakra that only a Jinhyuriki would be able to produce. And you do not have such luck, even if your own reserves are higher than most shinobi. Itachi then walked over to Kisame and was now in front of him. Kisame could do nothing as he was frozen still, another effect that Itachi had added to the genjutsu. I will need someone of your strength when I leave the organization to help me with my plans. You're an idiot if you think that I'd betray the leader for the sake of your plans, whatever they may be, Kisame snapped, baring his sharpened teeth at the stoic man in front of him. The former Umbu captain sighed at this and closed his eyes. He then reopened them and formed a half-tiger seal with one of his hands. I did not think that I would be using this so soon, but if I must use it to make you help me then so be it, he said, and a flock of crows began to appear around the two. They were hard to see because of the darkness, but anyone would still be able to tell where they were because of their constant cawing. One, in particular, stood out among the rest as its eyes were not like its avian brethren. No, they were Sharingan eyes, in the Mangekyu stage to be specific. That crow landed on Itachi's shoulder, and its eyes bore into Kisame's, who found himself captivated by the gaze of the bird. Koda Amatsu Kami, he heard Itachi exclaim a little louder than he usually would. His mind was being flooded with images that he knew weren't real, but the longer he kept staring at the crow's eyes, the more he began to believe in those memories himself. 1 mile away from the border to Shimogakure, Kabuto and Orochimaru were relieved when they saw that they were so close to getting out of the country to where they couldn't be pursued. The plan for the invasion had gone horribly, so they had to regrettably make a retreat so that they could make a better strategy in getting revenge on Naruto for killing Sasuke. Well, that was more Orochimaru's prerogative since Kabuto really didn't care much for the brooding Uchiha, but all that would have to wait as Orochimaru now had to find a new body to use before this one deteriorated. From how he fought against the jabbering idiot with the scarf, he knew that this body only had about a month left, maybe less. As long as he didn't do anything strenuous in the meantime, he would be able to recover fully and then show that buffoon why he was one of the legendary Sannin. The snake-like man also made a note in his head to find a way to reward his silver-haired subordinate somehow for saving him from dying a most humiliating death. Kabuto always was hard to please as he only seemed to like to do his bidding. Maybe find a way to give him a bloodline? Yes, that would do nicely. Before he could continue his internal musings, he felt Kabuto stop and stand completely still. Orochimaru looked ahead to see why his subordinate would do such a stupid thing, and he grit his teeth in anger when he saw that the Kumonin were able to catch up to them and stood in front of them, in battle-ready position, and effectively blocking them from reaching the border to Shimo. "Set me down," Kabuto, Orochimaru ordered while his eyes narrowed at Killer Bee. "I have a score to settle with that imbecile over there." "But, Orochimaru-sama," Kabuto exclaimed with shock, "your wounds have not healed yet and you are in no condition to fight. Our only option would be to try and get away from them at this moment." Annoyed at the one time Kabuto chose to be disobedient, he opened his mouth wide above him. A large snake slowly came out of his mouth, causing his throat to enlarge sickeningly. The reptile then opened its own mouth, and all that were present saw the snake regurgitate another Orochimaru, with no signs of injury and looking as if he had never fought Bee in the first place. Kabuto dropped the old skin of his master to the ground as soon as he saw this happen. It was a technique that even made his skin crawl, despite the horrors he had done while aiding Orochimaru in his experiments. The snake's son grinned evilly as he licked his lips with his abnormally long tongue. "Ah, much better," he said with a sigh. "I have been waiting until I got enough chakra back before I could use that jutsu. It is so very handy when in tight situations. Now, I think that it's time to show you bothersome Kumo pests why you shouldn't back a snake into a corner." With that said, his lower body mimicked the tail of the reptile he was famous for using and slithered at them at a very high speed. He headed straight for Bee as he wanted to hurt the man that had severely injured his previous skin. His kusanagi slid out of his mouth and stopped at the hilt, and he used it to slash at Bee at an upwards angle. Bee was able to dodge it, fortunately, by hurling himself to the side just in time. He rolled on the ground and got back up on his feet before he yelled to his teammates, "I'll handle the snake man, yo. You two go after Kabuto." He rapped at them, and they didn't even bother to get annoyed with his terrible rapping as they charged at the Mednin. He turned his sunglass-covered eyes back to Orochimaru and saw that the man was going after him yet again, with a maniacal grin as he tried again to slash him with his sword. He quickly took out one of his 7 swords and blocked the attack while putting Raiten chakra into his blade. When Orochimaru saw that the kusanagi wasn't cutting through Bees, he was internally surprised. His sword was supposed to be able to cut through nearly anything, so why wasn't it able to do so with his opponent's blade? No matter, he could always ponder about this later. Right now, he had an annoying man to slash to pieces. While their 2 swords were grinding against each other, he quickly formed a few seals with his pale hands. "Futon, Daitapa, wind release, great breakthrough," he yelled, and a violent gust of wind caused Bee to be pushed off his feet and sent back a few meters. Luckily, he was able to regain his balance as he was in the air and landed on his feet, sliding on the ground before stopping. Bee narrowed his eyes behind his glasses and took out the rest of his swords so that he could beat down the snake Sannin like he did before. Placing them at the various bends in his body, he then began to spin rapidly and headed towards Orochimaru, intent on severely injuring him again. The Sannin retracted the kusanagi and grinned as Bee was headed toward him at a very fast pace. He went into a prone position with his whole body hugging the ground as he widely opened his mouth, and a torrent of snakes practically erupted from it. He called this his Mandara no Jin, formation of 10,000 snakes, technique. It was one of his most effective offense/defense type jutsu. The snakes formed a wall in front of Bee and, due to their vast amount, made it dense enough to stop Bee from spinning as soon as he hit it. They then took this chance to sink their teeth into his flesh to poison him. Others in the wall protruded small, but similar to kusanagi, blades out of their mouth and proceeded to stab him in very vital areas of his body. As soon as they did though, Bee's body turned into a large piece of what looked like an octopus tentacle. Bee was at a very far distance from the mass group of snakes and Orochimaru. He knew that if he hadn't done that kawarimi, he could be dead from the venom from all those bites or all those fatal injuries that he could have sustained from them stabbing their swords into his body. He grimaced when they all began to head to where he was and prepared to do something he hadn't done in a while, transforming into his full Baijuya mode. He took on the form of the Haxabi and roared as the snakes came closer. He pounded the middle of the snakes with one of his massive fists and knew that he killed at least a good chunk of them, but there were still thousands left that were able to slither up his giant form and bite their fangs into his skin, which broke when they tried to. His skin wasn't that of a human's after all. "There's no way that you can hurt me. That's why they call me the Killer Bee," the transformed bee yelled in Enka. "Now, it's time for me to show you all not to mess with my home." He spun around in one quick revolution, and the snakes that were on him flew off and fell to their demise. Orochimaru growled as he looked at Bee's new form and formed a few seals before slamming his hands down on the ground while yelling Kukios no Jutsu. A seal formation appeared on the ground, and a giant cloud of smoke plumed around him as the boss to the contract he signed was summoned. "Orochimaru, you worm," yelled a booming voice as the smoke slowly began to fade and revealed the form of Manda, the boss of the snakes and a deadly opponent to anyone, even to the one who summoned him if he was not given a proper sacrifice. "I told you that you not to summon me without a proper sacrifice. You're not living up to the contract that I made for you." The Sunin chuckled from his position on the purple-skinned snake's head. "Forgive me, Manda," he said as he licked his lips, "but I thought that a fully transformed Jinhyuriki would be enough of a sacrifice for you." Manda turned his attention away from the snake Sunin and onto Bee's raging form as he continued to slaughter the snakes that Orochimaru summoned, his brethren. His green eyes narrowed as he hissed at seeing his kind being killed left and right. "We will discuss how you blatantly send my kind off to be killed after I deal with him, Orochimaru." The Sunin grinned evilly and replied, "Of course, now let's go," he yelled, and Manda shot off toward Killer Bee. Meanwhile, Kabuto was fending off Samui and Yujito with his chakra no Mesu technique as they tried to use teamwork to defeat him. He smirked at them as they were trying to regain some breath after he came so close to hitting some of their organs. "I didn't think that Kunoichi from Kumo were so weak," he taunted as he fixed his glasses with one hand, temporarily deactivated his jutsu before reactivating it after he did so. "Even when it's 2 against 1, your attacks are useless. I'm disappointed by the lack of challenge." Yujito growled at him and Samui frowned as she held up her sword. "You should not underestimate us for simply being able to dodge some jutsu," she said to him as her sword began to glow with Raiden chakra. "Otherwise, you will end up dead." Bring it on then," Kabuto said as he held up his palms and pointed them toward the two blondes. "Maybe after I am done killing you, I will be allowed to experiment on your corpses." "No way in hell that's going to happen, sicko," Yujito yelled as she began using Nibi's chakra and forming a cloak of her Baijuyu chakra around her, taking on the form of a cat as it surrounded her body. The pupils in her eyes also formed into slits, and her nails grew longer and sharper, becoming even more of a feline. "Ready, Yujito?" Samui asked and got a nod in reply from her transformed companion. "Good, try not to let him kill you." Yujito smirked when she heard this, showing that her teeth had sharpened as well. "I should say the same thing to you. Now, let go. I've wanted to wipe that smug look off his face," she said and made a dash at Kabuto, running on all 4 of her limbs and making her go faster than she would if she just ran on her legs. Kabuto narrowed his eyes as he quickly went into his taijutsu stance and prepared for a frontal assault from the Nibi container. She had tried to slash him with her nails, but he was able to dodge it easily enough and retaliated by striking her chest. His eyes widened though when he felt his palms feel warm for a second and chose to bring his hand back and jumped away from her. He looked down at his hand and saw a small burn on one of his fingers and even saw it smoking a little. "I didn't even touch her for 1 second and I got burned. Her Baijuyu chakra must have properties of fire. I won't be able to touch her as long as she has that cloak activated." He looked back up and frowned at his realization, but he kept his composure. However, his danger senses were going wild suddenly, so he instantly dropped his level to dodge a slash that came from behind him by Samui. If he had not been trained to anticipate sneak attacks like that, he most likely would have had his spinal cord severed. But he used this chance to place a strike on one of her legs to make her immobile. Samui jumped up to avoid his obvious intention and then held her blade over her head as if she were going to chop something, or in this case, someone. "Kumo Ryu, Judo no Danto, Cloud Style, Severe Guillotine," she yelled as she swung it down, and a blade of chakra shot out of her sword and headed towards Kabuto's neck. Without any time to hesitate, Kabuto made use of his elemental training as he sank into the ground. He made sure to go deep enough to where her attack did not touch him as he felt the earth around him shake, and he was sure that there was a crater just above him. Thanks to the jutsu that he used to go underground, he was able to sense the magnetic forces around him and pinpoint exactly where his 2 opponents were. Kabuto targeted Samui since he thought it to be foolish to try and touch Yujito again since he would not come out unscathed if he tried to attack her again. So, he used his chakra to help him get through the earth very fast and got right under where Samui was, which was just outside the crater that was made from her attack. He smirked as he erupted from the ground and was prepared to strike at her lungs, but his eyes widened when he came to the surface. He was surrounded by a cage that was made of blue fire, and he knew that anything that touched those flames would most likely be incinerated. Kabuto made a move to go back underground via his Doton Jutsu but was stopped when he heard Samui yell out a jutsu. Raiten Katsugo Kanken, Lightning Release, Binding Imprisonment. And rope-like tendrils shot out of her body and coiled themselves around Kabuto, restraining his limbs so close to his body that it was even hard for him to breathe due to the pressure on his ribs. He squirmed as he tried to at least form a one-handed seal, but even his fingers were immobilized by her jutsu. Samui actually smirked as she looked down at him and felt satisfied that they were able to beat him this time. He was too overconfident after their last fight and now he was paying for it. You're wasting your time trying to get out of that particular jutsu. It was designed to hold B-sensei when he was training to control the Haxabi's chakra, so there's no way you'd be able to escape from it, she said to the medic nin who rolled his body to his side to look at her. It seems I grew rather careless for falling for such a simple tactic, Kabuto said to her as he breathed slowly as sharp breaths seemed to make the jutsu constrict tighter. Samui couldn't help but nod at this as she made her way to one of the walls of the blue-flamed cage that was around the both of them. When she was in front of it, a hole opened up that was just the perfect size for her to walk through, and so she did. She then walked over to Yujito who was holding a hand seal to keep the prison up. Yujito smiled at her before turning back to Kabuto and narrowing her eyes. Should I kill him? She asked Samui, bringing down her chakra cloak as well since she didn't need it. The busty blonde shook her head at the question. No, we should bring him in to Reikage-sama. The information he would have on Orochimaru would be useful to both us and our allies. With luck, we'll be able to track down any of his bases and shut them down. Kabuto's lips curled into a smug smirk as he thought what they said was amusing. You really think that I'd give up that information? Did all your brains suddenly go back into those watermelons you call breasts? He asked, only to wince in pain as the binding jutsu got tighter and was now struggling to get some air in his lungs. Oh, you really shouldn't have said that, Yujito said to him with a grin. She really doesn't like it when people make fun of her breasts since they're the reason why she keeps getting sore shoulders. The last guy that did so ended up staying in the hospital for around 8 months due to how injured he was. With a slight twitch of her eyebrow, Samui flicked Yujito's forehead. Don't say things like that to a captive, Yujito-chan. Her voice held a note of annoyance as she looked back at Kabuto, her eyes narrowed. And you're lucky that we need you both alive and conscious. Samui then loosened her jutsu just enough to let him breathe properly. Now, enough playing around, she said, looking up to see Manda and Killer Bee in his Haxabi form fighting. We need to help Sensei with Orochimaru. However, we can't just leave him here like this, so only one of us will be able to go. Yujito frowned, contemplating the situation. She could go, but Samui couldn't maintain her jutsu forever. If Samui went, Kabuto could escape with his Doton jutsu, as her Kanpiki no Kago, Azure Cage, was only a surface jutsu. It was a losing decision no matter who chose to go. Her thoughts were cut short when a kunao landed on the ground. She instantly recognized it as one of the three-pronged kunao Naruto used for his father's jutsu. A second later, the whiskered namikaze appeared in a golden flash, picking it up. Naruto-kun, both Samui and Yujito exclaimed in unison. He looked up, noticing the state of their shinobi wear and frowning for a moment. He then saw the captured Kabuto and assumed he was the one responsible. I see you guys were able to get the snake bastard second in command, Naruto said with a congratulatory tone, satisfied at the scowl on the silver-haired medic's face. The ground suddenly shook, and he noticed be fighting Orochimaru's boss summon. We need to help him. Samui nodded in agreement, crossing her arms under her chest. Yujito and I were discussing who should go, but it seems that neither of us would be able to, seeing as both options would eventually lead to Kabuto escaping. Naruto hummed for a second in thought, a wide grin slowly spreading across his face. I've got just the thing, he said, making the two blondes raise an eyebrow. He walked over to Yujito's prison. You think you can let me in? With a cat's curiosity, Yujito opened a hole in her jutsu, just as she had for Samui. Naruto stepped in, kneeling on the ground in front of Kabuto. He rolled up the sleeve of his right arm, revealing a sealing array on his forearm. With his left hand, he focused chakra into his index and middle fingers, placing them on the sealing array. A large scroll popped out in a puff of smoke. The namikaze unrolled it, placing Kabuto, who was squirming again to no avail, in the middle. Fune, seal, he said, slamming his palms onto the scroll, and Kabuto was sealed instantaneously. Seeing this, Yujito released her blue-flamed jutsu. She and Samui walked over to Naruto as he put the scroll back into his forearm. I didn't know you put arrays on your own body, Naruto-kun. I put them on for just-in-case reasons, Naruto replied, standing up and patting the dirt off his pants. You never know when you'll need to transport a prisoner. At least, that's what Kyuubi always says. Anyway, let's go help B and put an end to that pale-skinned psycho. The two Kumo kunoichi didn't need to be told twice. They followed Naruto as he ran toward the colossal forms of B and Manda. The trio appeared on top of Killer Bee's head. He was holding off Manda from biting him, with one hand on each side of the snake's mouth, finding it a bit difficult to keep the summon away. He looked up at his forehead and saw his three teammates, grinning. About time you got here, Naruto. I need some help with this stupid snake, yo. B rapped as his body was pushed back a little. Naruto nodded, focusing chakra into his eyes to see Orochimaru standing on top of the opposing summon's head. He was annoyed to see the Sunin smirking at him, flailing his tongue as he usually did. He also noticed the snake man in a battle-ready stance, prepared for any of them trying to jump onto Manda's head to face him. The blonde namikaze looked at Samui and Yujito without turning his head before saying, "Let's take him down." With that, they all used their own variations of the Shunshin no Jutsu and appeared in front of Orochimaru. They were immediately put on the defensive as Orochimaru quickly closed the distance and began slashing at them with precision. Naruto retaliated, unsheathing his own blade and blocking Orochimaru's strikes as fast as they came. Sparks flew as the colliding metals met in intervals that lasted less than a second each time. He waited for an opening but saw that Orochimaru wasn't giving him any, which was expected from a Sannin. This was definitely going to be tougher than all the Kenjutsu spars he had with Samui, Yujito, and everyone else in Kumo who practiced the art. Orochimaru was actually quite surprised that Naruto's sword had not broken when it blocked the Kusanagi. It must have been made of a very strong and durable metal. As soon as he killed the foolish blonde, he would take the sword as his own. A blade that could stand up to the Kusanagi was something worth keeping. And then I shall get my revenge against him for killing my body, the snake's Sannin thought. He then opened his mouth and shot out another sword at high speed to catch Naruto off guard. He saw an opening when Naruto dodged by sidestepping to the right and prepared to make him pay, stabbing his blade at the blonde. However, his sword was stopped by a rope that looked to be made of Raiden chakra, diverting his intended target and causing him to miss Naruto completely. Orochimaru growled in anger, seeing Samui on the other end. He used his sheer strength to pull at the rope, causing a shocked Samui to head straight for him. He then lengthened his tongue, wrapping it around her neck and beginning to choke her. Samui tried to free herself by cutting the tongue off, but her sword kept bouncing off it. She realized he was covering it in chakra and grimaced. While her sword was stronger than many others in Kumo, it could not cut through a chakra defense made by a Sannin of Orochimaru's caliber. "Let her go," Naruto yelled at the Sannin, getting an evil chuckle in return. "How about I squeeze the life out of her?" Orochimaru said, increasing the pressure on Samui and making her gasp for air. Naruto growled, his eyes flashing crimson red for a split second before he began forming hand seals at a rapid pace. "Ranten Rizasakasu," he yelled, and two black and white beams of his signature jutsu fired themselves straight at Samui. Just an inch from her, they quickly changed their path, going around her and right at Orochimaru. The now wide-eyed Sannin retracted his tongue, freeing Samui, and began trying to dodge the jutsu Naruto had used. He had to jump back dozens of times to avoid the beams. However, his body suddenly froze, and he began coughing violently, showing that this body was failing rapidly. He was only able to get out one cough before he screamed in pain as the Ranten jutsu hit him, electrocuting him. But to everyone's shock, his body turned into mud, putting them immediately on alert. Naruto's eyes snapped open before he spun around, putting his sword horizontally in front of his face, blocking an attempted sneak attack by Orochimaru. He tapped into Kuwabai's chakra for just a second to push Orochimaru off, sending him back a few feet to create distance. "Not bad, Naruto-kun," Orochimaru said. "You've gotten better since that little incident at Tenchi Bridge. However, you're still nowhere near my level. So, why don't you and your two whores just give up and let me kill you and save you the humiliation?" Yujito growled at the insult, and Samui narrowed her eyes. Naruto gripped his sword tightly and got into his clan's Kenjutsu stance, but this time he held the blade in reverse. "There is no way in hell you're going to get away with calling my friends that," Naruto said coldly, narrowing his eyes. "Samui, Yujito, leave him to me." They knew he was serious since he didn't use his usual honorifics for them. "If anything goes wrong, we're stepping in," Samui said, sheathing her sword and crossing her arms under her breasts. The way she said it left no room for debate, and she knew Naruto knew better than to argue with her. The whiskered blonde nodded without looking away from the snake Sannin, then dashed at the highest speed he could muster, phasing out of sight. Orochimaru was impressed by the speed but was still able to block the multiple attacks that seemed to be coming from all directions. Orochimaru then elongated his tongue, lashing it out in front of him in a coiling motion. Naruto was now visible, the slimy appendage wrapped around his waist. He brought up his sword, preparing to swing at the tongue, which made Orochimaru's eyes widen as he knew Naruto's sword would be able to cut it. So he quickly loosened it to get away from that possibility, but his eyes widened when Naruto caught his tongue with his hand and pulled him toward the blonde. Naruto had a smirk on his face, relishing the chance to do what Tsunade had done to the snake bastard. He hit Orochimaru with a chakra-infused punch that sent the Sannin flying. Naruto disappeared in a burst of speed and met Orochimaru in the air, flipping over with one of his legs extended. He slammed it down on the snake man's sternum, causing him to lose his breath and sending him flying down to Manda, impacting hard against the summon. The blonde landed swiftly just as Orochimaru was slowly getting up. "Still think that you're going to win this, Orochimaru?" he asked, pointing his sword at his opponent. "Shut up," the snake man snapped. He began emitting chakra from the fingertips of his right hand, making a slicing motion at Naruto. Knowing what the bastard was using, he clapped his hands together and yelled, "Futon, Kaze no Kiba, wind release, wind fang." He made a vertical slash in the air, creating a blade that looked similar to a sharp fang. It immediately met the jutsu Orochimaru used, the Kaze no Yaiba, Blade of Wind, and the two opposing techniques fought against each other, trying to overpower the other. Naruto used the jutsu again to double the power of the previous one. It worked, as the two combined and completely broke through Orochimaru's wind jutsu, now heading toward him. The snake's son grimaced for a second before transforming his lower body into a snake's tail like he did against B and slithered to the opposite side of Manda, avoiding the jutsu completely. Yujito and Samui had to dodge Naruto's technique, or they would have sustained horrible damage. Orochimaru quickly appeared in front of Naruto thanks to his increased mobility. He attempted to bite Naruto on the neck. Not wanting a cursed seal like Sasuke, Naruto lowered himself, avoiding the lunging face of Orochimaru, and thrust his sword at him. However, his attack missed as Orochimaru's body bent to the side, exactly like a snake would. Orochimaru grabbed his arm with an iron grip and coiled his tail around the blonde's body, immobilizing him. He grinned, seeing how helpless the namikaze was. "You've done well, Naruto-kun," the Sannin said, licking his lips and creeping Naruto out. "But like I said before, you are not near my level yet. And now I think that it is time for you to die. Goodbye, Naruto-kun." He opened his mouth wide and plunged his teeth down at Naruto, who could do nothing to avoid the bite. Naruto's lips curled into a grin just before he was bitten, and he disappeared in a golden flash. Orochimaru was shocked to see the blonde disappear the same way as the man he hated for taking the Hokage position from him. He had no time to try and find out where the whiskered blonde was, as a sword protruded from his chest. He looked down at it, seeing Naruto's black blade covered in his blood. Orochimaru then felt a pull, a feeling he couldn't explain, except for the fact that he could just feel himself being absorbed into the sword. He had no time to scream out any last words as his body was completely gone. Naruto couldn't help but blink in confusion at what had just happened. "Since when can your sword do that?" Yujito asked, unknowingly speaking one of the questions he was asking himself. "No idea," he said back, looking at his sword in wonder. "I'll have to research its abilities when we get back to the village." Naruto turned back toward them and saw that Samui was about to say something. However, she was unable to because the summoned Manda disappeared in a giant plume of smoke, and they were all falling rapidly down to the ground. Naruto was trying to get a high-Reishin Kunao out to get them all to safety, but he also had a fear in doing so. He'd never used the jutsu with anyone or anything else, so he couldn't predict the outcomes, but his protective nature overrode that fear, as he didn't want his friends to be hurt. Finally, grabbing one from his pouch, he looked to where he saw Killer Bee last and targeted the top of his head. He threw it as hard as he could, and when it landed, he grabbed the two blonde females by their waists and flashed over to the fully transformed Haxabi container. All of them landed safely on B's head. "Phew, thanks for the save, Naruto-kun," Yujito said, wiping her forehead with a hand. "When they say that cats always land on their feet, they don't mean from this height." Samui smirked, thinking the joke was a little funny, but it soon disappeared when she heard a cough followed by a splatter of blood. She snapped her head toward the source and saw Naruto hunched over on his knees, covering his mouth with a hand as he coughed profusely. Her eyes widened as she went to his side in an instant. "Naruto-kun." Samui had never been the type to show her emotions. She didn't want uninvited, or untrusted, people getting too close to her if they found her too friendly, but she also didn't want to drive people away by being too cold. So she settled on staying indifferent with the people she met, and her opinions of said people would go from there. It would depend entirely on them how she would act around them. And since most of them were men, both shinobi and civilian, who were only interested in trying to get a feel of her breasts, she would end up being cold to them. But there were a few that she would, at least, actually smile and be herself around. Her brother, Etsui, was of course one of them, as he was her only family member. Then there was Yujito, a person she grew up and trained with. Onwa and Karui were her students. They had somewhat annoyed her at the beginning, but she got used to their bickering and eventually grew to like them. Killer Bee, she was a little iffy on him, mostly because of his terribly incessant rapping, but besides that he wasn't a bad person to be around. Finally, there was Naruto. Many thought it was unbelievable how he was able to get her to be so friendly with him in the short 3 months since he'd come to Kumo. Even she was amazed at it, but the blonde had wormed his way into her heart and she gladly welcomed him in. Why wouldn't she? He was exactly the type of man she was interested in. Naruto was strong, loyal, interested in Kenjutsu, and was very fun to be around. Not to mention how handsome he was, which was a plus in her book. That and he didn't ogle her breasts every time they met up, another plus. But she couldn't help but frown right now as she thought of him. It was because she was worried for her fellow blonde. More specifically, she was worried for his life. "How is he?" Samui asked when she saw Bee finish checking on Naruto, who was tucked into a sleeping bag to keep him warm during the night. Killer Bee shook his head before he answered. "He'll live," he said. "For now, at least. He's in such bad shape I don't even know where to begin. First, his chakra veins have been strained, so it will be a while before he's able to use chakra again without bursting them. Then he has pretty bad internal injuries that will take a while to heal, even with Kuwabai's help. He's going to need to be treated properly once we get back to Kumo, since we don't have either the training or the equipment to heal him." He then looked over his shoulder at the blonde, then turned his head back towards Samui and Yujito. "It's actually a miracle that he's survived," he said. "Anyone else would have already been dead by now." "Thank Kami for the kuwabai then," Yujito said from her position on the ground. Between her and B was a single campfire that burned with only a decent amount of light, so no wandering otonin could spot it, but it still provided the perfect amount of illumination for the Kumo squad. "It's probably what's keeping him from dying right now." A slight shake of Samui's head made her bangs sway. "No," she countered. "Naruto-kun's willpower is formidable. I've seen him train. He'll push himself to exhaustion and beyond just to master a single technique. I'm sure he'll survive this, even without the kuwabai." Yujito's lips curved into a soft smile as she nodded. "Yeah," she agreed warmly. "It's one of his most appealing qualities." B's eyes darted between the two kunoichi behind his sunglasses, observing their expressions. After a moment, a wide grin spread across his face, and he pointed at them both. "I get it," he declared, and they looked at him. "You too like him, don't you? Did my students decide to share the new guy while I was gone?" Yujito's hand instantly connected with his head in an annoyed smack. Her eyebrow twitched as she fixed him with a deceptively calm smile. "You should keep stupid questions like that to yourself," she said, her tone eerily cheerful, and B winced. "Or you'll be eating all your meals through a straw from now on. Got it? Got it," B squeaked, nodding fearfully. "Good," Yujito said, patting his head like he was a dog. "Glad to know you're not a complete idiot." She then returned to her spot by the fire. Samui was privately amused by the exchange but didn't let it show. Still, B's question lingered in her mind. She knew that if she pursued a romantic relationship with the blonde namikaze, she'd likely have to share him with other women due to the Clan Restoration Act. Personally, she saw the act as nothing more than an excuse for some men with rare bloodlines to have their own personal harem. However, she felt that with Naruto, it would be different. She'd always seen him treat every woman he met with kindness and respect, and he always turned down propositions from even the most beautiful of Kumo's civilians. When she'd once asked him why he refused, he'd confessed that he hadn't yet gone that far with a woman. He wanted his first time to be with someone he loved, not just a pretty face who only wanted one thing from him. Her respect for him had definitely grown after that, but her mind returned to her original thought. Would she be okay with sharing Naruto? It was a question she would have to consider, but not right now. For now, they had to get Naruto back to Kumo to be healed, and when he was, she was going to tell him how she felt. The invasion by Oto had taught her that anything could happen without warning, so she decided that before anything else happened, she wanted to at least make her intentions clear to Naruto. That night, the trio took turns guarding the camp, alternating every couple of hours to regain their energy. Because B and Yujito were Jinhyuriki, they needed less sleep, but Samui was not, and she savored the blissful darkness of slumber. If they were going to make it back to the village, they would need all the energy they could get. The reason for their caution was the Otonin, who were likely heading towards the epicenter of the battles from earlier that day. None of them knew the enemy's numbers, and they decided now wasn't the time to find out. Not with Naruto injured and unconscious. So they silently agreed to avoid any unnecessary skirmishes and travel around the Otonin. All of them knew the terrain of their home by heart, making it easy to travel to the village unnoticed. Of course, this also meant it would take longer, but they had no other choice. Just an hour before dawn, they packed up their camp, extinguished the fire, and continued their journey home. B was the one carrying Naruto as he led his two kunoichi students through the various mountain pathways that crisscrossed Kumagakure. These paths proved extremely useful for dodging a few Otonin squads they spotted heading towards their previous battleground. The enemy wouldn't find anything there that would tell them what happened. The ravaged landscape only showed that a huge battle had taken place, a result of B transforming into his full Baijuyu form to clash with Orochimaru's summon, Manda. It would have been the perfect opportunity for an ambush, but they had Naruto to worry about. No matter what the other villages thought of Kumo or its ninja, they never let a comrade die if there was a way to save them. Hours passed slowly as they periodically stopped, carefully choosing the next path. Those hours stretched into days, about 2 in total, and they had gone undetected the entire time. Naruto remained unconscious and showed no signs of recovery, which confused them all. The Kuwabai's healing should have kicked in long ago, mending at least some of his injuries, but it hadn't. Occasionally, the blonde namikaze would cough up blood, increasing Samui and Yujito's worry. He wondered if it was because Naruto had used the Hiraishin with other people. However, he wasn't a medic nin, so his knowledge was limited, and he couldn't find an answer. The Haxabi told him to wait until they got back to the village and see what the medic said. He hummed in agreement and returned to thinking up new rhymes for his Enka-style rapping, much to his Baijuyu's annoyance and exasperation. The main gate of their home came into view, causing the two kunoichi to sigh in relief. B, meanwhile, grinned widely and cheered at finally being back. They picked up their pace to get Naruto to the hospital so his injuries could be treated. As soon as they passed the gate, they began jumping across the rooftops as a shortcut to their destination. Fortunately, the hospital was built very close to the main gate, making it easily accessible in case of injury. It only took them a few minutes to reach the hospital. They quickly went inside, calling for medics and telling them they had an injured teammate who needed immediate help. A small group of medic nin instantly appeared, taking Naruto from B and carefully placing him on a gurney before wheeling him into an empty healing room. One stayed behind to ask them how Naruto had gotten his injuries, which they promptly answered, as it would likely help the medics treat him. When they were done, the medic nodded and followed his colleagues to relay the information. Both Samui and Yujito looked worried, hoping Naruto would be alright. B nodded to them, silently signaling that they needed to go see his brother and give their mission report. They reluctantly nodded back and followed the dark-skinned container out of the hospital. Raikage Mansion. The Raikage's office building was the largest tower in the entire village, easily overlooking the populace. It housed hundreds of high-ranking shinobi who worked in various divisions. Their work, ranging from enemy tactics to perimeter defenses, was all aimed at protecting their village 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they all took their jobs seriously, not wanting to disappoint their Kage. Samui had been here many times over the years as one of Kumo's elite kunoichi, but she still couldn't help but be amazed by how many people were running around as if the world was ending. Well, except for a few of the younger male shinobi who stopped dead when they saw her, or more accurately, her larger-than-average bust. Their lecherous leering disgusted her, but she didn't let it show. She wouldn't let them make her lose her composure. Yujito, however. Hey, she yelled angrily. Stop staring and get back to work. This snapped them out of their hopeless fantasies, and they immediately obeyed, blushing with embarrassment. Yujito crossed her arms, muttering to herself. Haven't they ever seen a woman before? The question wasn't meant to be heard, but B heard it and grinned before giving her an answer. It's because those pests like big, bouncy breasts, yo, he rapped, causing the nibby container's brow to twitch. She then punched him on the top of his head with enough force to send him sprawling to the ground on his stomach. B grunted as he landed, then groaned as he rubbed the sore spot. What did I tell you about being an idiot? Yujito yelled, stomping on him a few times. The scene caused everyone in the room to sweat drop as they watched B get mercilessly beaten by the angry, feline-like kunoichi. Only Samui was able to resist the urge. After a few minutes, Yujito was finally done. She patted her hands together a couple of times before smirking down at a twitching killer bee. Maybe this time you'll finally learn your lesson, she told him. She then headed for the stairs to the top floor, where the Raikage's office was located. Samui sighed as she followed her teammate, grabbing the scarf B wore around his neck and dragging him along as if she'd done it 1,000 times before, which she had. Sometimes she wished her sensei would learn not to say such perverted things in front of Yujito. It would save her from having even more shoulder problems. Maybe Naruto could give her a massage once he was healed? She shook off the thought and focused on what she would say during the report. After a few flights of stairs, they were on the Raikage's floor. The door in front of them had the kanji for lightning written on it in black ink, just like the larger versions on the outside of the building. By now, B had recovered enough to walk on his own, and Samui was eternally thankful she no longer had to drag him around like a ragdoll. He was still groaning, however, from the comical bumps and bruises covering his body and face. Samui was about to open the door but stopped her hand an inch away from the knob. She could hear yelling from inside. The busted blonde looked at her teammates, who wore the same curious and confused expressions as her, and wondered what the commotion was about. Before she could say anything, the door abruptly opened. An old man with grizzled hair stood in the doorway, facing the Raikage, his face contorted with anger. Samui recognized the man as Yatsuki Kamura, an elder member of Kumo's most prominent clan. You're making a mistake, Kamura yelled at the heavily muscled leader. We need to keep our weapons close to the village in case of an attack. Sending them out on some pointless mission based on flimsy information is both irrational and stupid. The Raikage, who was standing behind his desk, slammed his fists down, making the wood creak and nearly break. Shut your mouth, he yelled at the elder. What I order my ninja to do is none of your business, or your clan's. Now, get out of my sight before I have you hauled away by Umbu. The old Yatsuki clan member scoffed in clear disapproval before turning around and meeting the eyes of Samui, B, and Yujito. Out of my way, he said, rudely pushing past them. I have no desire to speak to any of you. Kamura then disappeared down the stairs. Yujito narrowed her eyes as she watched him go. She had never liked that old man. Every time she had the displeasure of talking to him, he would only refer to her as weapon or something similar. He had never once called her by her name, and that infuriated her. Yatsuki Kamura was of the old generation of shinobi, who believed that Jinchuriki like her were nothing more than tools for the village. In her eyes, Kumagakure would be far better off if he just went ahead and kicked the bucket. She was cut out of her thoughts when she felt a hand on her shoulder. The nibby container turned to see that it was Samui. The busty kunoichi gestured with her head for them to enter the office. Come on, she said. You can think of ways to kill him without being caught later. We still have to give our mission report to Reikage-sama. Right, Yujito replied with a nod. The blonde trio then walked into the office, where it was just barely calming down thanks to a few words from Abby. It had been a while since she had seen the Reikage get so angry that his assistant had to calm him down. They stood waiting for a few moments as he composed himself by taking deep, slow breaths. It seemed to do the trick. He became more relaxed inside as he sat back in his chair. His eyes then looked up, and he grinned when he saw his brother, Samui, and Yujito. He frowned immediately afterward, noticing Naruto's absence and wondering where the blonde was. You're back, Ace said to them. Good. Things have gotten hectic since you left. But that can wait. Where is Naruto? He was supposed to be part of your mission squad. He was badly injured after fighting Orochimaru, Samui answered, trying to keep her tone even and not sound worried. He used the Hiraishin to save Yujito and me from falling to our deaths, and it caused him to suffer massive internal damage. We got him to the hospital as soon as we arrived in the village. A's eyes widened at the news, and Mabi gasped, a hand over her mouth. He knew Naruto was still working on perfecting the Hiraishin, but only for solo use. He hadn't yet started training to use the technique with other people. Do you know how long he'll be there? He asked. Yujito shook her head. The doctor said they need to assess the full extent of the damage before giving any estimates, she replied. But from the looks of him, he's going to be out for a while. Her voice grew more concerned at the end of her sentence. The heavily muscled Cage sighed, shaking his head. He's going to get himself killed if he keeps being so reckless, he said to them. I'll have to wait for his report, then. But since you three are fine, I need you to tell me what happened during your mission. Were you able to succeed? Samui, Yujito, and B took turns explaining what happened. They began with their arrival at Orochimaru's camp, where they quickly devised a plan to eliminate most of its occupants using Naruto's Hiraishin Jutsu. After that, they split up to take on their respective opponents, Naruto against Sasuke, Samui and Yujito against Kabuto, and Killer Bee against Orochimaru. They described their own fights and what they could of Naruto's. All they could tell was that Naruto had killed the Uchiha.